The Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush through the like the gaming king. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge. Where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, go to the game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge. The game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge. The game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge. The game The Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush through the like the gaming king. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the borough.
What up, y'all? What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, CJ the DJ, coming at y'all with another Game Lounge episode, season 3, episode 3. I almost forgot because GK is not here, so I had to be him and forget, you know what I'm saying? Today we had a special guest here, our guy. I'm not going to say his name. We're going to let GK introduce him there at the other side of the studio. But if you did see the caption, you definitely know who this guy is. If you've been all through Twitch, you definitely know who this guy is. But other than that, I'm going to pass it around the room. This is my guy, Brooklyn Jeff. Give it up for Brooklyn Jeff. Give it up for Kelly Monet. And my guy, Cash. But GK, you ready? Okay, they said they're ready, so we're going to kick it over to GK over there and let them do their thing in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, it's your host, Golden Press 200, a.k.a. Mr. 200, and y'all see the setup. You see what's going on. You see what's good. You see the craftsmanship going on.
It's fresh right now. Huh?
Today we got a very, very special guest in the building. Somebody who I've been following for a while, supporting. Y'all already see. I got the shirt on,
hey,
and I didn't just buy the shirt.
Make sure y'all go get
Wasn't
that
the
shirt,
first
by the
time
way.
wearing the shirt, so I'm
cool.
representing. So, like I said, let me introduce Just Kit. Just Kit, talk to the people.
Yo, what's going on? How y'all doing? I'm Just Kid. I'm sure y'all know me by now. And I'm here on the Game Lounge.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Chilling
sir.
with the homies today, about to have an interview.
And thank you for being here. You are actually our first interview and special guest since the anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So you're the first one here on the new set.
That's awesome.
What do you think?
It's dope. It's dope. I really like it. Yeah, it's nice and clean and all that.
How was getting it in the front?
Yeah, it's smooth.
Was security good?
Yeah.
So we fired the last guy.
Yeah.
Fired the last guy. He wasn't good. He wasn't good. So let's get right on into the swing of things. First thing we like to do is take a shot. and me as the host, I will pour you your first shot. After that, you can pour your own poison.
All right, cool. Let's do it.
Real quick. We got the bottle right here.
Mm-hmm.
So you see an array of shot glasses, my friend.
Yes, yeah, you got some nice ones too.
So
let's go.
it's a shotgun shot glass.
Oh
it's crazy.
yeah,
it's
I
a
like
bullet.
that.
It's a bullet.
I like.
It's a bullet.
I like the.
It's
Matter
a
of
bullet.
fact, let me take this one.
Everybody, all the niggas.
Yeah.
All the niggas. Show the camera. He picked the boobies. Like
The boobies.
I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at
I
you.
don't know if you can see it, but yeah.
I'm
Nice little shorty.
and I'm going with dun 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 dun. I told you.
Now how the Superman.
I'm going with the Superman. So
All
y'all
right.
already know I'm not coming off that Superman. It's staying like that.
Yeah.
My boy CJ the DJ blessed me with that
Hey,
one.
dark voice, what up? Foxy Eye,
Right
baby.
then and there. So
What's going on? Yo.
you already know how that go.
Yes, sir. Nakibata.
I'm gonna do my due diligence
Right.
and be a good host.
That's
You heard that right there?
Right.
That's professional.
professional.
That's professional.
Yeah.
Now hold on now.
Of course.
When I went to, I don't really advertise other people's shit, but when I went to the liquor store, cause I go there every week, cause we got a show every week and we drink over here. I said to my man that popped out, I was like, "Yo, my man, you drink whiskey?" Cause
Yeah.
we did talk,
Right.
and you told me
Whiskey
some whiskey.
is preferred.
So
Absolutely.
got what you want.
Yeah.
I'm not a liquor connoisseur like that.
Yeah.
So I took the man's suggestion, because I go there all the time, whatever. I
Mhm.
took his suggestion. He said, this should be good.
Right.
Now, I've never had this brand before. So let's try it out.
All right. Feel like, let's see. I'm excited.
I'll put that in the middle. You do your thing after that. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Thank you for being
Yes.
here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. That's pretty damn good.
That is really good.
I would say that's pretty damn
That
good.
is really fucking good.
That is genuinely
Wow.
pretty damn good.
That
Genuinely.
was super smooth.
That was smooth.
Yeah.
And it had flavor
Ain't
to
got
it.
even no burn or nothing.
That was pretty
Alright.
damn good.
Holy shit.
Wow.
What? Buffalo Trace?
Buffalo Trace.
Okay.
All
That
right,
was
now
really
Buffalo.
surprising.
Shit.
Yeah, that was surprising.
No, that was a hit. All right. Just Kit. Let's get into the interview side of things.
Absolutely.
So I've been following you for a while. I met you through my man Cliff,
Okay.
aka the Godfather.
Yeah, the Godfather.
That's the OG. That's the OG. I say it all the time. That's the OG. And that's how I met you.
Epic beard.
Yeah, yeah. The Beard King, you know?
I know.
That's how I met you. And, you know, I met you. First of all, we're going to get into the type of games that you play just now. But I'm going to hit you with our Game Lounge interview questions.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let's get into it. So here we go.
All right.
What was Just Kitt's first system? First system.
My first system.
That was yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was 5 years old. Man.
Damn, he took it way back. God
Yeah,
damn.
I was 5, man. That's a long time. 35
5
years ago.
5 years old?
Yeah, 5 years old.
What system was it?
It was Nintendo. Classic, man. Classic Nintendo.
I'm not
man.
shocked though. I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised
I
at
mean,
all.
like, damn near everybody was a Nintendo baby around them times. 85.
Sega.
Yeah, Sega. Really?
Yeah.
You just skipped it? You just skipped Nintendo?
I didn't skip it. I wasn't in America yet.
Ah, fair enough.
When I got here, Nintendo was presented to me.
Oh, yeah.
I ain't know no better. Mom Duke said, hey, this is what I can afford for Christmas.
Right.
For you and your brother.
Yo, Genesis.
Sega Genesis,
What?
so-
That'd have been great.
Yeah.
Back then. Same Nintendo.
So your first system, when did you get it? Christmas, birthday?
It was Christmas.
Christmas?
Yeah.
Yeah, back then we all got systems for Christmas, didn't we?
Yeah,
Back
hell
in
yeah.
the good old days,
Hell yeah.
boy.
It
Mom
was
Dukes used to hook a
epic,
nigga up.
epic,
Yeah.
Nah, they did. My dad definitely came through. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Anything I asked for, he gave me. You know what I'm saying? So
Shout out to your pops.
yeah, shout out,
course.
shout out.
Okay.
He did. He tried. He wasn't there, but he tried.
Well, hey, he got you a Nintendo.
He got me a lot of things. Yeah.
And now you was a streamer. And
I
now you
know.
on the Game Lounge.
Yeah, right.
Shout out to Pops.
Yeah, shout
Pops
out.
started the legend. Yeah.
Definitely.
So you said Nintendo is where you started, right?
Yeah.
What's your favorite game you could think of playing from that system?
From Nintendo?
From when you first got it?
Mm.
What game were you spending most of your time rocking? Like,
God, that's
what got you into it? Like, wow.
That's hard. I was playing a lot of games, but I you know, Damn.
What's a lot of games? All right, so tell us
All
something.
right, so Excite Bike. You never played Excite Bike?
No.
It's like a side scroller motocross kind of game. We're in a race. We're not really in a race.
Right.
You just gotta finish. You know what I
Obstacle
mean?
shit.
Yeah, obstacle shit. A lot of jumps.
Mhm.
Excite Bike was crazy.
Usually when people say Nintendo, they don't start out with shit like Excite Bike.
Yeah, I know. Of course, Mario, but you know, obviously. But yeah, we're just gonna skirt past that. It goes without saying.
like
You ever
that
heard of
answer.
Ikari Warriors?
Akari Warriors? I have not.
That's a good fucking game, and it's hard too.
What do you?
It's like
That's a
Contra.
Nintendo game?
It's like a top-down Contra.
Okay, one of those.
Yeah,
Okay.
where you're like Rambo, you got a gun and you shoot.
Just
and you
Nintendo
get
though. That was
upgrade.
exclusively Nintendo.
Yeah, all Nintendo games. That was my first system. That's what I had. And the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game for Nintendo.
That's classic.
Yeah, the good one. The good one.
What do you mean the good one?
Not the bad one, because the bad one, you know, the one that everyone complains about, that has that water level that no one can get
Nobody
past.
liked water level.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, if you're a gamer kid from back then, water level traumatized.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's Sonic. Blah, blah.
Oh yeah.
With the
yeah.
bubble, you
The
gone.
bubbles,
As
yeah.
a kid,
Yeah.
I crashed the fuck out.
Yeah.
Watching Sonic drown every time got me every time, son.
That's
Even as an adult now, you put me on a water level, I start sweating. I don't want to do it.
You
I don't want to do it.
I don't want. Yeah, it's kind of like that even now. Even when I play like Kaizo hacks, and if I get to a water level, I'm kind of like
water level, because the physics change now.
Physics change.
The physics change. It's not the same anymore.
Yeah, physics
you got to
change.
adjust for the being in water bullshit, basically.
Right.
Okay, so boom. Here's my other question.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite gaming franchise?
My favorite gaming franchise.
Oh, if you want to say your
I
favorite
would
game of all time.
say of all time, that's so hard. I'm too old for the question like that.
What you mean?
Yeah, it's so hard when people
you
pick
mean?
one game. I'm like, you haven't played many games.
That's not true. It's not true.
It's so
It's
hard.
not true.
There's so many good games.
It's a lot.
Like think about Marvel vs. Capcom. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like that's a great fucking game.
It's a great game.
That's a lot of people's
Wasn't really for
best
me,
game.
but
you
it
know
was
what
a
I'm
great
saying?
game,
But that's
yeah.
a lot of people's best game.
It is.
And it's a great
Call of
fucking
Duty,
game. That's
Grand
high
Theft
up there,
Auto.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's hard, but like I don't know.
Okay, so give me top three.
Of what for what? That's a period?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say all right, Super Mario World.
Super Mario World?
Yeah.
Why Super Mario World?
It's just a great game. The physics is great.
All right.
Mario control is great.
All right.
It's
That's number one.
I feel like it's a perfect game aside from the jank. But
Okay.
yeah. That's Legend of Zelda. I would say A Link to the Past.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm currently playing Zelda, and fuck you.
Which Zelda is it?
Ocarina of Time.
Nice.
Is it Ocarina of Time?
Yes.
Wind Waker.
Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, it's not. Okay.
Thank you from down the hall.
I said, yeah, no. That's
I'm doing plainly.
It's funny.
Wind Waker.
Wind Waker.
Yeah, it's too much going on.
Okay, I like Wind Waker. When
No,
I
you
was
don't. You don't like Wind Waker.
Nah.
You
What?
don't.
Wind Waker's a great game. What
Let
you
me
mean?
ask you a question. You's a real yard nigga. Some nigga calling you Swabby is cool.
Nah, that's not good. I don't give a shit about who the hell cares.
Some calling you Swabby and telling you go
said
swing
no
on the
Swabby.
pole is crazy. It's crazy in 2025, bro. I got beef with Nintendo because of that shit. You know?
That's funny. Their characters are so great.
So what's the third one? You gave me Zelda,
Yeah, I gave you
Super Mario,
Link to the Past.
Link to the Past,
Super Mario.
Super
World.
Mario. What's the third one?
That's game. Damn, son. It's Splunky 2.
What?
Splunky 2.
That's one of your Kaizo
No, that's a game.
Spelunky.
Yeah, Splunky 2. You see me, I play it in the mornings. I do the
seen
Splunky dailies.
Splunky, yeah, spelunking and shit. It's The only other time I heard that word was in Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, Splunky is great, man. Come on.
Here's one of my favorite questions.
Mm.
This question is made out of legends.
Okay.
If you could only play one game for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
only one game, or if you want to say one franchise, because say whatever game you pick, you can play whatever the game gives you, online, offline, campaign mode. If they come out with a part 2, part 3, 4, you can always upgrade.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
Or you can play the old ones, which can only play that game, and no cross franchise. You can't be like Marvel vs. Capcom. That's a cross franchise.
What about mods?
Nah.
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 Why not? Why not? Why no
Mod
mods?
is breaking all the rules.
Alright.
This is the only game you can play for the rest of your life. Or franchise, whatever have you.
World of Warcraft.
World? Wow.
Yeah. If it was just one game for the rest of my life,
That's a real
that's
answer.
a lot of content.
That's a real answer.
That's a lot of fucking content.
But why World of Warcraft?
Because it's a lot of fucking content.
When you say a lot of content, what do you mean exactly?
I mean, like, it's like, you know, they have so many expansions. You know, you said if it has online service, I can play it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, whatever it holds, you can do.
When you play World of Warcraft right now, this like, you familiar like with?
I've seen it, I've never played it. Koja plays it and
like
shit like that.
9 or 10 expansions. Every expansion adds like 10 more levels.
Can you really sit there and play World of Warcraft for the rest of that shit?
Bro, then you want to know a funny story?
Yeah.
So World of Warcraft came out. Me and my boys, they introduced me to like Warcraft and shit. So we were Warcraft fans from Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, a real-time strategy. So Frozen Throne came out. We on Frozen Throne. We playing the fuck out of Frozen Throne. And then they announced World of Warcraft comes out.
All right.
So, you know, I get it. We hype. And like it took me a while to adjust to that kind of game because it's different. It's always online. There's a currency, like it's a whole network, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like people getting money, trading. It's like a whole kind of game. It's way different. So the first time around, it was a little rough. Niggas was broke. And I didn't like that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So when the expansion came out, we had a whole plan. I was like, we're going to the midnight release. Get the midnight release. I go to the pharmacy. I don't drink coffee, so I get caffeine pills. So I play
Caffeine
that game.
pills is crazy.
Son, I was
So you
playing
took
that
caffeine
game.
pills so you could just stay up?
Son, 30 hours, son.
Straight?
Yeah.
No way.
Me and my boys.
No way.
Yeah, we was up, boy. What do you mean?
Playing what?
What? What?
Playing World of Warcraft
Son,
for 30
what?
hours, bro?
Son, we was racing. Yeah. It was just that
That's
was the thing back then.
madness, son.
Son, you don't know half the stories on WoW. Son, relationships ended on World of Warcraft. Son, we run a guild, right? Son, I wish my niggas was here right now. Son. So we running a guild in this game, and we got this girl. And shit, her name, I ain't gonna say her name, but he got this girl in our guild, and she's like super flirty and shit. So we young niggas, we all flirting with the bitch.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? So it ain't
Why would
nothing.
you not?
Yeah, we flirting with her and whatever. But all this time, she married. So she get her boy. Her husband joined the guild. So we all like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is weird.
Bro joined the
let's not
guild.
do this. You know what I'm saying? So, like, we were raiding with them for like a year. You know what I'm saying? Everything was cool. She was just like, oh, I'm kind of bored with my husband. All these complaints, right? Yo, there was this other dude on the server on the other side because there's Horde and Alliance.
Right.
This Alliance character, he was a night elf and he became like High Warlord, which is like one of the hardest things to get in that game. So he's like when you see this nigga, you kind of run away from him. You know what I'm saying? Yo,
Son is the final
she
boss.
slid in that nigga DM, son. Left her husband, went to that nigga, and married him, son.
Because he was the final boss. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Because he was the final boss. Let me tell you
son.
something. Let me tell you something.
I'm telling you,
What
bro.
what did Bulma left?
Oh yeah,
Yamcha. When Vegeta showed up, right? You go to the nigga who could fight. That's crazy. You lost your girl over World of Warcraft. It's crazy. Not even your girl, your wife?
bro.
Yo, that's wild, bro.
Right, bro. Son, and she like they still together. Like they got kids and all that.
Oh, so they really lasted.
yeah. So it's like, what can you say?
Son was on the higher power levels. What I'm trying to tell you.
They found each other.
They
you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
What
wow.
can you say?
So boom. Let's get into it now.
Mm-hmm.
So you're Just Kitt on stream,
Yes.
right? When did this whole streaming thing start?
Damn, my streaming anniversary was a couple of days ago. It's 7 years ago.
Oh shit.
Awful.
You're a 7-year vet?
Yeah, 7-year vet.
What's the journey been like from beginning till now?
7
7 years is a lot. Tell us something between that 7 years.
Yeah, no, it was cool. I didn't really know. I kind of just came into streaming just to do it. The person that really influenced me was Pooh, Grand Pooh Bear.
Mhm.
Yeah, he influenced me to stream. You know what I'm
Shout out to
saying?
Grand Pooh
Yeah,
Bear.
shout out Pooh. I love that nigga. You know what I'm saying?
What,
But,
and what do you mean he introduced you to streaming? You mean
like
What was streaming like
Nah,
7
he didn't
years
really
ago?
introduce me, but I would watch him. You know what I'm saying? And I was just like, yo, I think I could do this.
Right.
I saw a rivalry in him. You know what I'm saying? And I was just like, I could do this shit. I always tell him when I met him first,
Right.
when I saw him, I was like, yo, I ain't like you when the first time I saw you, man. I tell him that all the time. But now I love him. I love that dude so much, yo.
Right.
So much. He's helped me so much, man. So, yeah.
So when you first started streaming, how was it?
It was kind of low quality, as always.
That's why I kind of said low quality, but like 7 years ago. I was streaming like 7 years ago.
Man, it was
What
bad.
was you
I had
streaming on?
I had like a $20 mic.
What was you streaming on?
What was I streaming on? My PC. I built my own PC.
Was it Twitch?
Yeah. Streaming on Twitch.
What was the setup like?
It was garbage. I had like this green, like I don't know. I didn't even know. Like it was just like a sheet, like actual green like bed sheet. I hung that shit up, pinned it up. You know what I'm saying?
What you did with the sheet, bro? What you?
That shit's in the garbage now.
No, I mean, what you doing with the sheet back then? Like that was your green screen?
Yeah, I just bought a green sheet instead of buying a green, because the green
But did
screen
it
was like
work?
$100 and something.
But did it work?
Yeah, it should work. Oh yeah, it should work. You
That's
know what I'm
crazy.
saying?
You can get green screens now for $30.
Yeah, I know.
$30.
But I use a collapsible one, so it's like, yeah, I like those because they save space.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah. So yeah.
What game did you start streaming?
Well, Pooh inspired me. But I ain't look. Pooh inspired me to stream, and then I did it for the first, the second year, and I really didn't think nothing of it. And then when I started playing Grand Pooh World 2, no, Grand Pooh World 1, that's when Barb rated me. And that's when
Who rated you?
Barbarous King, you know him?
Barbarous King, shout out.
Yeah, shout out Barb. You know what I'm saying? He's like, if you think of the Mario community, I would say he's the head of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Shout out to him.
He probably wouldn't say that he's in the Mario
But you saying
community.
it. You saying it. You get it. You saying it. We listening to you right now.
Yeah.
Shout out to him.
Yeah, I would say that. That's what I would say. That's my opinion. But,
And when you first started streaming, what was your first game you were streaming?
Kaizo. No, it was Smash. It was Smash and Kaizo.
Smash. Which Smash?
Smash Ultimate.
You good at Smash?
Yeah.
You play Street Fighter?
No.
Alright.
I play Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Like those kind of Street Fighters. I don't play the new ones though.
You can't see me in no Street Fighter.
And then you think
That's
so?
what I'm trying to say. No Street Fighter. You got it in
No
Smash.
Street Fighter.
I always want the fade. You
Yeah.
know?
No Street Fighter. Probably.
No Street Fighter.
Probably.
If it's Street and Fighter in the titles.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, possibly. Possibly. I know. I'm not that good.
What has changed from
Yeah. Oh,
shout out to
Gluttony.
Gluttony with the raid. We appreciate
Gluttony.
y'all.
What's
Everybody
going on,
this
man?
is Just Kit,
What's going on, y'all?
our special guest of the day, and we are going through our interview right now. We're getting to know Just Kit, so welcome in everybody.
What's up?
What would you say have changed from 7 years ago? That's good, look. That's closer to 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What would you say has changed from 7 years ago? Take us along the journey of certain changes that whether maybe good or bad, that you like, you dislike. What's been a difference from 7 years ago to now 2025 in the world of streaming?
Shit, what has changed? That's such a loaded question. It's a lot of things. Like you could say visibility.
Visibility?
Yeah. It's really hard to be seen right now. You know what I mean? If you're just gonna use Twitch as an example without using any other outside social media, I would say visibility on Twitch is hard.
Okay.
You know,
So how
you'd have to go and search for like not the top streamers in a sense. You know what I mean? They don't really recommend that.
So with that being said, how did you was able to survive in that harsh environment and be noticed and be recognized for what you do? Because we know who you are in the front. I mean, we know who the fuck Just Kid is.
Right.
Got the goddamn shirt on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, it was two things. I started speed running. I did a speed run of Quickie World, and I got like a pretty good time. It's like top 8 at the time. It's like 24 now, but it was a pretty good time, top 10. That, and I was playing Grand Pooh World, and Barb rated me. what I was saying. And he has about like 3,500 people watching him.
Ooh.
So they just come stomping in.
No, that's some real watching.
That's when I meant
Not
a
even
whole
following. You
bunch
said
of-
watching.
Yeah, just
that's
watching.
That's crazy.
Just watching live
That's
right
crazy.
now. Yeah.
That's
it's right.
crazy.
Yeah.
Watching is crazy.
So for him to see me, that's kind of crazy.
And
Because
recognize.
that mean he was like, you know, I would say a few things in his chat sometimes. He banned me one time, which is mad funny.
What?
That's
nah,
like
you
the rite
can't
of
just
passage.
say that. You gotta tell us why
Yeah.
you got bad,
It's
bro.
it's a rite of passage because sometimes he gets frustrated in games. and I thought I was saying something good. I was like, he was frustrated.
Kilo Predator said, "What did Kit do to get
Yeah,
banned?" I want to know too.
right. So he was frustrated. So I said, "You got this, Barb. This is easy." He said, "Oh, it's so easy, just Kit." Banned.
Oh, wow.
I was like,
Son didn't appreciate the
I
tone.
said, wait.
He didn't appreciate the tone. He didn't appreciate the tone.
Yeah. Nah, he was not a fan of that. He was not a fan, son. But,
So what kept you coming back for 7 years of streaming? Because I know a lot of people, they started, then they a couple months in.
It's
a
fun.
year
After
later.
the bar braid, like I would go live and people would be there. You know what I mean? Like even before, like I would still go live and just, you know, stream for like, you know, a little few people here and there.
Right.
But when after bar braided, I would go live and people would be there expecting because they, you know, they fuck with me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that was a major factor. You know what I'm saying? Even when I was just like, damn, kind of tired. I don't want to, but I was thinking like, oh shit, then what are people gonna have to watch? Like people show up and watch and interact while they at work. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like,
you be at work, you don't realize that you going on live is 2-3 hours out of somebody's day where it's just like, I'm chilling, I'm vibing. You know what I'm saying? You get that little relaxed mind thing going on right there. So let's dive deeper into you're a part of the Kaizo
community.
Kaizo community.
Yeah.
You gotta let us know what that is. Tell the camera what that is.
Kaizo community is well, it's a lot of how can I say it? Well, it's really mostly about the Mario games, Super Mario World. You could say Mario 64, Sunshine. There's a lot of people that mod these games and make new levels and whole new games. And they're called Kaizo hacks, or more so they're just mods. You know what I mean? But Kaizo hacks are more of the harder type of games, being that they rearrange so much. Kaizo just means to rearrange.
Right.
That's the definition of it.
Oh, that's what Kaizo means.
Yeah. So yeah. I love hard games. I love playing really hard games.
Well, what it is to be a part of the Kaizo community? Like, what is?
It's just to support the community, you know, to show up for one another. The community is super loving. Like it's a loving community. Like, I watch other communities of people, like when like Call of Duty or first person shooters, and there'll be streamers, these big streamers who are playing, and when they end stream. They don't raid anyone.
Yeah. You gotta raid.
I don't know why they do that. They think it's they're afraid that people might leave them, and I think that's the dumbest thing you can, like, that's super dumb.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like if someone gonna leave, they gonna leave.
Right. Regardless.
They like you because they like you.
Right. Now facts.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like you should always raid. It's always encouraged to raid. At least in the Mario community. And that's what they taught me. That's why I raid every time I'm ending. I'm always raiding. And that's how we get eyes on each other.
Well, that's how you know more people.
Right. You know what I mean? And then when we do events where we're saying, hey, we're coming all together to raise money for X, Y, and Z, they're like, oh, this is awesome. I love this person and I love this person. I get to see them interact in real life. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so cool.
Just like right now, I'm just my first time meeting justkitt in real life. You know what I'm saying?
Likewise.
It's glad to meet you, man.
Yeah.
What would you say? Like, how long have you been part of the Kaizo community?
Say like 6 years. When did Barb raid me? I don't even know. No, because that was a lot of Smash. Maybe like 5 years. 5, yeah, I would say 5 years.
Okay. Now there was this thing that you did. It was like a college thing. I saw you streaming it. It was a Kaizo thing. It was like
yeah. We were raising money. It was raising money. Well, the first 2 years I went, we were raising money for direct relief.
Mm-hmm.
But this last year we raised money for Wings for Life.
Wings for Life.
Yeah.
What is Wings for Life?
Wings for Life is a charity that helps people that suffer from spinal injuries,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually like puts the money to research to help these people walk again.
Oh,
Yeah, it's really amazing.
that's really amazing.
Really, really
Yeah,
amazing.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Shout out to that.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, Wings for Life. I love it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when we're not streaming, we're not content creating. What are you doing? Let the people know what you do when it's just you time. What do you watch? What do you do for what's your hobby apart from streaming?
Yeah. I like to watch anime. Yeah.
Tell us.
I like to watch what kind of anime?
Mhm.
Certain anime in general. I don't discriminate. I'm not one of those.
Do you have a
people.
favorite anime?
Death Note.
Yeah, why?
It's the best anime.
It's boring.
No,
That's pretty true.
no, you're just not exciting.
Take a shot.
Oh, I love light. Yeah, I love light.
Mm.
Light,
So, I
Light-
mean-
light only lost because of Mikami. That's you.
You say Death Note, right?
Mhm.
But I'm like, like a book.
It's not a book. This
Death
shit mad
Note.
exciting, bro.
My guy.
Did you watch it?
I seen enough to know I don't want to watch it.
No. Okay, so that's why.
Motherfuckers is writing stories to beef with. You will die next week.
You know why? It's the intellectual game of cat and mouse that I really love.
Yeah, that's boring.
No.
Yeah.
You never watch Catch Me If You
I
Can?
watch Tom and Jerry all the time.
Nah.
Yeah.
You ever watch the movie Catch Me If You Can?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a hot
That
movie,
was
right?
that Leo
Yeah.
and Tom Hanks.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a hot movie,
Fire.
right? Fuck. You should watch Death Note.
Nah.
I don't understand.
Okay,
Like,
I do understand.
yeah. He's like, I don't
You watch
understand.
Twilight?
No, I never saw
Okay.
Twilight.
All right. People who watch Death Note, they're Twilight people.
Nah.
Yeah.
Nah, Death Note is the best, bro. Death Note. I don't understand, bro. It's the concept. I like the world. I like the mystery behind the fact that it's like Shinagamis and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
So apart from Death, okay, you know what, motherfucker?
but if we wanna like knock
No,
out
let me
Death
ask you a
Note-
question though.
Yeah, sure.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Superman or Goku? You gotta pick one.
Okay.
You gotta pick one of these motherfuckers.
So normally I would say Goku,
Right.
But I'm like super uninformed in Superman. And mad people was like, oh no, Superman. could
so
go
you
to
just
the
don't
sun.
know
He
who
could,
the
like,
GOAT
absorb
is.
The sun. And
Yeah.
he could like I don't know.
Yeah, don't say it like that, like it's fake.
I don't know. They was talking about like, mad nonsense. So, all right, I guess Superman could beat Goku. So,
Yes.
I don't know.
Let's take a
I'm
shot.
not
Come
willing
on,
to
come
die
on,
on that hill.
pour a
For
shot.
sure.
For a shot.
Yeah, I'm not
Unless
willing to
you
die.
sleepy already.
Nah.
You know?
I'm chilling.
Superman wins again. Yeah.
I'm not willing to die on that hill.
So all the other people on the
Sure.
other side of the studio, fuck you.
Mm-mm.
They got your back in the audience with the Death Note though.
Of course.
Cola
'cause
said
they
GK
know.
lacking for real. Death Note is top. Nah, I'm just trolling. I've never seen it though.
Yeah.
I've never
You
seen it.
should really watch
Apart
it,
from
man.
Death
Like,
Note,
you should
though.
sit down, don't do nothing,
Oh wow,
else,
wow.
and just
let me tell you
watch
something.
it.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. I'm a busy man. All right, and I'm gonna come on your stream and tell you that you had me waste 5 hours of my life, and this is some bullshit. All right, I'm telling you right now, I'm pulling up to the stream. All right, I'm pulling up to the stream. You understand what I'm
mad
saying?
funny.
No, I'll check it out though. I'll definitely check it out.
it's good.
But apart from Death Note,
Yeah.
what other animes do you watch or you're up to date with?
My Hero. We're currently watching My Hero.
Okay. You watch Naruto?
Yeah.
So I got a question for you.
Hmm.
Guy Sensei versus All Might.
That's a hell, son. All
Come on.
Might, bro.
No.
Yes.
With all the
You
gates
don't-
open. The dude who was fighting Madara. Bro,
That's how I feel.
you bugging.
Son,
Madara said you the man.
he's not like.
Bro, you
Yo, how
Nah, I
long?
definitely think you
yeah,
wildin', though.
even
Nah, you definitely want.
Nah, even if
I'm
he's
turning the mic off
if,
'cause you
nah,
wild.
even if he's like fighting him, right? Let's say he's fighting him and he's beating
Little
All
Broke
Might.
Nation say Guy Sensei. YN tapping in.
Nah,
I got connection with YNs.
can't.
You know what I'm
He
saying? What you
can't,
nah, you
bro.
wildin', bro.
Because he
You
can't keep that
definitely
form.
won.
He's
You know
dying
what?
after
You know
that.
what? This is
He's
a-
opening that.
Yeah, but you're
and
gonna
he's
be dead
dying.
first. So I won, then I
Oh
died.
my,
That's
it's
crazy.
not
What you
dying,
mean?
bro. Oh my, it's
What
not
you
dying,
mean?
son.
You know what? We're gonna save this conversation
Yeah.
for the couch because
And
you're
I
wilding right now.
fuck with Guy Sensei.
No, you don't.
I
No, you
do.
don't. No,
I
you don't.
do,
No, you
yeah.
don't. You're fake.
Yeah.
You're a fake Guy Sensei fan. You want you one of these
Bro,
niggas. You know, you're not real, bro.
that whole world is just using chakra, bro.
That's
just
but what I
mad
need to.
different,
And your
son.
world is just using quirks.
Son,
It's the
that's
same
mad
shit. What you
different,
mean?
son. That nigga can't even kill fucking All For One. If he, all right, fine, he can kill All Might.
All Might
He's not
going
killing
down.
All For One,
All
son.
Might going
Son,
down.
he can't kill Shigaraki, son.
What you mean?
He
All
can't
I'm saying
kill
is-
Shigaraki.
All I'm saying is, I
Y'all
said,
know who Shigaraki quirk, right? All he gotta do is this. Done. GG's.
I didn't say Shigaraki.
And
I
he
said,
said
I said
Shigaraki.
him versus All Might. What we talking about Shigaraki for?
Nah.
You know?
Nah, he's not.
What we
being-
talking about Shigaraki
He
for?
not being All Might.
All right, I don't agree, but okay, let's move
Ah,
on.
nah, we can agree to disagree. That's fine.
No, I don't know.
No,
It's
agree,
just-
agree to disagree. That's fine.
I don't want to agree with nothing.
Mm.
But what I want to know is, since we're getting to know you a little bit, what's the dating scene looking like? Married, single, in a relationship, or you just out here fucking niggas, baby mamas?
I'm in a relationship, man, and
You
that last
in the
one too.
relay?
Uh-huh.
You in a relationship?
Yeah.
Shout out to Miss Kit.
Yeah. Miss Two.
Mrs. Who?
Two.
Mrs. Two.
Mrs. Two Kids.
Mrs. Two.
If you want to say that like that. Yeah, I have 2 girlfriends.
What? You can say that publicly?
Of course.
What do you
It's
mean?
not illegal.
What are you talking about right now?
I do.
What do you mean?
I have 2 girlfriends.
They know about each other? Because
Yeah.
you're saying this live. What are you doing with your life? Okay, so what did I do wrong in life?
I don't know.
And they're both fire too. So you guys, how does this work? You said it, so I gotta know. Now, how does this work?
Nah, it just work. It's not like nothing.
You live with
complicated.
anybody?
No, I live with Seb and Foxy Cat. Yeah, you know, that's my baby. I say it all the
You
time.
can't drop heat like that. You can't drop. You can't fuck my head up like that. Wait a minute now.
Mm-hmm.
The show must go on.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, I've never been this shocked on an interview a day in my life.
This is the first one, right? It's probably gonna be.
Hey, Miss Foxy.
Hey, baby.
Drop a bomb, cause this nigga's the man. Just go and drop a bomb. Yes, sir. I mean,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yo, you stunned. My guy's stunned.
Drop the mic. Wait a minute. Okay, so hey, listen. I have a question about that situation, though, if you don't mind. And I don't get rude. I don't do no crazy shit. Do you have a girlfriend, and then you and your girlfriend have a girlfriend, or do you have 2 girlfriends?
I have 2 girlfriends. Yeah.
How old are you again?
40.
CMOS, right?
That's a lot more than that. I can tell you some more though.
Son eating all the vitamins.
But yeah.
Hey, okay, so
yeah, that's how it goes. You know.
all right,
Yeah.
and you live by yourself.
Yeah. Me and Seb live together.
You and Sev live together,
Yeah.
right? Okay. I just really have to ask this next question.
Of course. Wait, what's the question? You said no words. I'm not a telepath.
Press the X, nigga. You said we all know the question.
Oh man.
Okay, all right. Next question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got.
Yeah.
Okay, so they all cook. They all.
Yeah. They both cook. They both talented. You know. Yeah. Foxy's. She worked for the state.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of documents.
A lot
and
of
shit.
documents. Right.
Yeah, we're processing and shit.
I've noticed a lot of processing.
It's
going on.
important work, baby. I know.
Well, he said yes. I'm jealous.
The work is important.
He got 2. I ain't got 1. This is crazy.
Mysterious.
I gotta hit the gym tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
important. Gym is
For
very
you, it's
important.
very important.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, if I had known this before you got here, I would have ordered you some vitamins and sea moss to go home with, nigga. Cause you need that motherfucker.
Word.
No, but that's what's up though. If that
Yeah.
works for you and you get two ladies, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
That's a blessing.
Yeah, it's a blessing.
So you're always tired.
No. Yeah, no, I have energy. I don't know, I dig deep for it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's good.
Are you a father? If you don't mind me asking.
Nah.
No kids.
I have no kids.
No wantings to have children. Only if you don't mind me asking.
No, that window kind of passed.
You think so?
Kind of old. Son.
You know what? I can rap with you on that. I have two.
Kind of old. You have 2 kids?
Yeah, I have 2 kids.
Oh shit! I didn't know that, son.
I got 2 boys.
What?
My son is 19.
What? Like a real Jamaican man.
You know what I'm saying? Come on now, don't leave me hanging. Go on now. And then my other son is about to be 14. I've always wanted a daughter, and I still think at 40 I can make it happen.
Yeah, you could, sure.
But I'm single, so it's dwindling. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't have no oven
Yeah, I see.
to start easy baking. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
So,
Yeah.
but I still think at 40 it could definitely still happen.
You can make it happen at 90, technically.
That's crazy business.
That's
crazy business right there.
That's villain. That's villain, son. Son, that's a villain. Son.
That's
You a
villainous.
villain, son.
That's villainous activities right there.
You got at least 5, son. At least 5 years, son.
Now you ain't gonna know that kid nothing.
Yeah, that kid
ain't gonna know you. That's
He
crazy.
don't know you.
He said, Coulter said, that's hella sea moss for real. Bro, that's why I went to get sea moss last week. They were sold out. They were sold out.
I'm a wild dude, man. I'm
Clearly.
I'm a real wild dude.
Clearly.
A lot of people don't even know that.
So what is this called? Is this a polygamous relationship?
Yeah, it's polyamorous. I guess,
Polyamorous. What's the amorous for?
The love part, I guess.
I don't know this life.
Amorous love.
Amorous.
Poly.
Poly.
You can
I know
have
poly is
multiple
multiple.
Yeah.
Right. So is it a triangular effect or is it?
No, not so much triangular. They cool, but they love each other because, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I like that, but it's not like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So you guys like do simple stuff. I don't care about your extra shit.
Hmm.
Like watch movies together?
We watch movies together. Like, yeah, me and Seth watch movies together. Me and Foxy watch.
No, I mean as a three.
Yeah, we'll
That's
watch.
dope.
We'll watch
That's dope.
shit. Watch
That's dope.
shit. Yeah, we watch like Severance together. Severance is dope. You watch Severance?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, Severance is
This
so
nigga always
good.
on his
You watch
soft-
Lost?
He always in his soft boy
Not
era.
Lost.
Right?
Not Lost.
Tell me about Severance.
You watch From? From? See?
So wait,
Ah.
you guys all watch together and
Yeah.
go to dinners together and stuff
Yeah,
like
we'll
that.
go to
That's
dinners
fire.
together.
That's very mature. I can honestly say
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Not a lot of people can handle, that type of shit. That's fire.
Mhm.
That's fire. So when it comes to the content creation and streaming, which one don't like it?
No, they both support.
They both support it?
Yeah.
Are you Jesus?
No. Yo, you gotta be mad cool in life, yo. You gotta just be chill and just be mad understanding. And I don't know. It's not hard, yo, to be a cool, nice person. You just have to be nice and kind and understanding. That's all you have to do.
Kitty cat say love Severance. That's what's up, though.
You know, but yeah, even when I wouldn't even say arguments, it's more disagreements happen. You just talk about it.
Discussions.
Yeah, it's a discussion. You talk.
I always say
you know
too.
what I mean?
I'm the type of person who's like, if you can approach me properly by any subject, we can talk about it. The approach is what sets the tone of how we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Because if you approach me disrespectfully, I'm not gonna like that.
Right.
But if you approach me with proper manners and shit, I could even say, "Ah, my bad, I'm wrong."
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just
Absolutely.
it's just really that simple.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say if somebody didn't start streaming yet or content creating and they're looking at you like, can you give me some advice? Can you tell me something? What would you say to an up and comer, a youngin, even me? Because
God.
you're
Please, I beg of you, please do not jump in playing Fortnite or any first-person shooters.
why is that?
Because it's oversaturated.
I actually agree with that.
Nobody is looking for y'all. Not a single person.
The people. So you're
Stop
basically
playing
saying
those fucking games. You can play them, don't stream them. Do not stream those games. play other games, go in other communities. If you want to gain followers, go in a community. Like a great community to jump in would be like Terraria. Terraria is a great community. You know what I'm saying? People would sit down and watch you and help you, especially if you're like, hey, first timer looking for help and suggestions, you know what I'm saying? Like lure them in.
So you're saying the community helps build you up.
Yeah.
You got to be a part of a community that supports you.
Right.
And shout out to our community, me, Glut, Kitty, Poser, CJ, the DJ. We got a wonderful community growing here too. I'm not gonna lie, we support each other a lot over here, and that's the only way we able to right now have 23 people in this chat.
Yeah, word. That's what's up.
So I actually agree that having a blessed community is
the way.
It's the way.
It's the way.
And going back to
and
my community started with Cliff.
Right.
And Cliff pulling me into this circle,
right,
which included you, Koza, Kid, Kitty, and we blossomed out from there. So busy. We can go on base window. We can do it. We can keep going. You know what I'm saying?
And another way to do it is if you are going to go, if you're gonna go the way of Call of Duty and first person shooters, find a big streamer, not like 10,000. You want to find like 800, like around there. Watch their streams, participate in chat, give out gift subs, become like something in their chat. So when you pop up, say, hey, they like, yo, what's up, man? You know what I'm saying? When you get to that
make
point,
yourself memorable.
Then you could be like, yo, I just finished streaming. You don't want to just come in there and be like, yo, I'll stream too. No.
Right.
You're a fan. You come in, you know what I'm saying? And go find people you actually like.
Right.
Not like just to do it. Like you like him and you want to support him. You know what I'm saying? That's the way. You make yourself known. You stand out from the 600 who's not giving out gift subs. You know what I'm saying? You got to spend money to make money.
No, but listen.
Same way.
Like I said, I'm humble. You're a bigger streamer than me. You know what I'm saying? Every time I met you, you've been you actually wanted to catch that I wanted to come on the show, talk and stuff like that.
Right.
But when he said you gotta spend money to make money, he ain't playing.
Yeah.
Just putting on this game live and keeping up the upkeep every week. CJ the DJ from the other side of the studio, he knows.
Right.
Sometimes motherfuckers gotta put a couple dollars together and get some shit going and get some props up and get some noise makers and
right.
There times I gotta call CJ 12 in the morning, like, yo, listen,
where can we get this?
Where can we get this? Remember to put this on the list, and 2, shit ain't working. What do I press, nigga? You know? It ain't working as usual, nigga. What do I press? You get what I'm saying? Right. So I understand having a community and having backing. You can't, from my small journey, because you're 7 years, this is year 2, whatever for us, whatever the case may be. From my small journey coming up, you can't be afraid to sometimes just pop in on another motherfucker's stream and say, yo, what's up?
Yo.
Or the motherfucker that you don't know. And you know why I say that?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people that's my regular friends now, part of the community, they've been the nights where it was just me streaming
and they're the ones
not even that. A dude to pop in my room and say, hey man, I'm a small time streamer too, you trying to link up? And they still with me now.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And I met more friends fucking with them. They met more friends fucking with me, and they met more and more and more.
Right. And that's how it's gonna grow.
And that's how it grows.
It's gonna keep growing like that.
Like me and CJ always say, we don't do the crabs in the barrel shit here.
No, man. I'm trying to help
whoever
make it. Cause if y'all make it, then I make it.
Damn right.
It don't matter. You know what I'm saying?
As
long as people got the right mentality, bro.
That's what I'm talking about right there. So being a 7-year streaming vet and one of the MVPs of our bubble, because everybody knows Just Kitt. We're just gonna keep it a buck. Everybody knows Just Kitt. From your streaming journeys here thus far, 7 years, what are you looking forward to going forward? What do you want out of this? What do you project?
I have a plan.
Do you mind sharing that with us?
No, I do mind.
You do mind? Oh, it's a secret plan.
Yeah. It'll pop when it pops.
It's
gonna pop like during the spring.
Well, do you see yourself as somebody who could say no more 9 to 5? This is what I do.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping this spring does. From spring to fall, 2026. I'm hoping that'll do it.
What kind of support? We got a few people in the room. What kind of support do you need from us? Because if we're gonna talk about communities, how we can help make that happen for you.
Well, I mean, fuck it, we're not gonna say it. So I plan
We got him to
So,
say it, chat. We got
you
him to say
motherfuckers
it.
got it.
Hey,
You see how he fucking cast the debate? He fucking cast the debate. Debate.
I'm a professional now, niggas. Year 2, niggas.
Got me.
Talk to us, kid.
All right, so I'm going to well, I'm gonna buy like a stand for a TV. I'm gonna buy a TV, like a 55-inch, one of those foldable ones, and I'm gonna set up outside, set up at Times Square, and just play games outside.
That's fire.
Yeah, I'm gonna just play my Kaizo outside because a lot of people don't even know this shit exists. They don't even know the name of this shit. But if people could stop and see me and watch me, which way they will, then
Would you let people pull up and stream, but stream you?
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't mind. I would probably be streaming when I do that.
No, you're gonna be streaming. But if somebody else wants to pull up and stream you, streaming,
we can do that.
We can do that. So you know why I said that, right?
What? Do an interview out there?
I'm pulling up.
He's like, I'm pulling up.
You talking about? I'm dead. Look at this nigga right here. You know?
So I want to.
No, that's a fire idea.
Square, I want to do Williamsburg.
When do you want to start that idea up?
14th Street.
That's fire.
When it's warm, because I need my hands, and I'm susceptible to the cold. That's why I'm really glad you're Jamaican, and it's very warm in here.
You see that, right? My mom's got the heat on hell.
I love it.
Time. It's too hot, bro. It's too hot.
No, your mom's is
I sleep with 2 fans, and it's wintertime, bro. It's crazy.
I see you have fans here, and I'm just like, why? This is perfect. Why would you need a fan?
Foxy, thank you for dear one sub. I appreciate you so much.
Kitty with the gift sub. Hey.
I appreciate y'all so much. So I do also see myself as somebody who I would like to do this content creating thing.
Yeah.
Permanently. Yeah. But we can't do that right now. But my main draw right now is this show right here.
Yeah.
Because my show is not just for me.
Yeah.
It's for look at us. You live right here in Brooklyn. Pull up, nigga.
Exactly.
You know where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? It ain't hard to find. Pull
this
up.
Is only gonna get bigger.
You see that? You see that? And by getting bigger, what I want to do, me and my crew, because it ain't just me. You know what I'm saying? So I got a whole crew here. We want to put people on. We want to be the platform that put you on. You got something to talk about? Pull up. You got some a talent? You got something you want to showcase? Hell, you may be the motherfucker that got all straight A's and valedictorian of the fucking best high school in Brooklyn. Pull up. Let's talk about it. You know what I'm saying? That's an accomplishment in itself. You get what I'm saying? So that's what I see for my future going forward. Ooh. I see this as a show that's going.
Someone has a question for me? Yeah. If
What's the question?
If y'all got a question for questions for me.
What's the question? I got a BT Gamer.
Definitely.
I got a question for him. What's the question, BT? GK, we see you, BT. What's the question? We're gonna get ready soon to kick it on over, and we're gonna walk down the hallway to the next side of the Studio 200.
All right. Cool.
And then we're gonna go kick it on the couch and have some fun with the rest of the crew. BT Gamer, what's your question? Oh shit. Oh shit. Hold on. Tap into the mic. CJ the DJ from the other side of the hallway. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
500.
I know. I was waiting till
we hit 500 followers.
Hey,
my man.
Congrats.
That's one of my biggest goals. One of our biggest goals. We gonna get on the other side of the couch and we're gonna talk about it. Oh my God, chat. We finally hit 500. We finally hit 500.
Big congrats, man.
That's one of my first real big goals. We celebrated every 100, but my real big goal was when I first started was to see if I could get to 500. Yeah. And we just made 500 today with Just Kit right here on the show. This is amazing. Right here on the Game Lounge, I got my crew with me because they part of the success too. Oh my God, this is amazing.
Hell yeah.
This is amazing. We finally hit 500. From 500, we're looking for 1K, baby.
Hey.
And like you just said, we ain't going up, but going up. You know what I'm saying?
So,
So, what else would you like to say to the people? Anything that's important that I missed that you'd like for them to know? Let's talk about your branding some more. Just Kit, let the people know. Twitch said, got it right there on your shirt.
I'm gonna have some new merch coming out soon that I'm working on. I'm gonna have Cliff working on some stuff just now, but.
You gonna have Cliff the OG, the Godfather, working on some stuff?
Sir, yes, sir.
You see how the community stay work? We talking about it, but it's also happening. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, BTA asked what was my favorite Pokemon.
What is his favorite Pokemon? That's what BT Gamer wants to know. What is your favorite Pokemon? Can I answer why you think? I know he asked you, but I want to tell mine.
Yeah, sure.
Charizard, you go ahead.
Charizard, you're so basic.
I am basic. So I'm an old nigga. You want to come with one of these new niggas?
Predictable.
Yeah, Charizard is classic. Fuck you. All right.
Nah, that's bad. That's your favorite Pokemon too.
And
Kilo
it-
too.
it-
That's
it
y'all
ain't never-
Charizard niggas, yo.
It ain't never gonna change ever. I like Mewtwo too, though.
Nah, it's shit. I would say Umbreon.
Umbreon.
Yeah,
That's a good
that's
one.
my favorite.
That's
That's the dark one.
that's the dark one. That's the dark. That's the Eevee evolution, right?
Mad dark, mad, yeah.
It's the
it's
EV
a toss-up
evolution.
between Umbreon and Espeon.
All right, so here's what I got planned. We're gonna go into the other side of the couch. I got a brand new game that I bought,
Oh shit.
and we're gonna have a versus match.
Okay.
You're the special guest of honor, so
All right,
I'm gonna call out the queen on this one.
All right.
Black Girl Magic versus Just Kitt.
In this game.
Look, this game right here. Black Girl Magic versus Just Kitt. I don't know if she's prepared, but it's the Game Lounge versus you, you know? So let's get ready to go on and kick it on the other side of the couch. CJ, the DJ, let us know when we can kick on out, please.
Right. You say you're gonna give me shit for liking my boy Charizard and you're gonna pick an evolution. I knew you was gonna
Facts.
say
He's
that
gonna pick
shit.
an evolution like as if
Well, what you, yo, nah. What you want me to say though?
like as if that's some exclusive shit.
Nah, what you want me to say, Kilo? You picked up the 151. It's alright. It's not much of a difference. I fucking picked out a Johto anyway.
Yes, let's kick on. We're gonna kick it on the other side of the couch. It's gonna
Yes,
take us about a
sir.
minute to walk across the hallway. So you ready?
Yeah, we're gonna take a quick break.
All right, cool.
Yo, the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden crust with the liquid gaming king. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world it means. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge. Where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, go to the game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge. The game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge. The game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge. The game Yo, the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden crust with the liquid gaming king. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world it means. Pixel warriors Losing games, we break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix, dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roller Dash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, go to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge. The Game Lounge. Welcome to 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 the Game Lounge. Yo, the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crust with the liquid gaming king. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix, dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roller Dash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, go Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush goes under the gaming king. CJ the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the game lounge. Welcome to the game lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix, dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Used to roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw.
Welcome back. Now we about to kick it. We got my man justkitt right here. Your boy
Yes,
Golden
sir.
Crush 200. CJ the DJ. We got the back panel loaded up.
Sir. Yo, Koza, you're mad funny.
Yo, Cozy, you silly. We was chiefing though.
I fucking hate that you predictable.
he-
You predict.
he
Yo,
is
that's
right.
alive.
Yeah, that's good shit. Perfect. But he's so right though.
I'm so light. I'm so light.
White skin back here, man.
Yeah.
White being dark.
Sharon the Red, welcome in, brother. First of all, shout out to
Welcome.
everybody for being here right now. Appreciate y'all for being here. Appreciate y'all for
there
showing up
we
for
go.
justkitt. But now we about to hang out and have some fun.
Mhm.
So, the first thing we about to do. Oh, this is gonna be a good one right here.
Wait. Before we do stuff,
Mhm.
let me. I actually had a question because you.
Do your thing, do your thing, do your thing.
I had a question for him.
Yeah,
I had a
do your
question.
thing, do your thing.
justkitt,
Yeah.
got a question for you,
All
brother.
right. What's the question?
All right, so I said when I was designing it, because I knew you was coming, I was designing the fly. I was like, okay, justkitt, the gamer, the streamer, 420 connoisseur,
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Kaizo master.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Question is, if you had to describe yourself to a new fan, what would you say?
Yeah, I like
New
that
fan.
question. I like that
I'm
question.
just a chill dude that plays games. I always say that. I'm just a chill dude that plays games, and I play hard games. You know. If you-
Okay.
you know. Yeah. Like I don't know. I don't really. It's hard to sell myself. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, they heard a lot that you were talking about,
Yeah.
down the hall, pretty much about the relationships and
Yeah.
first game and stuff, so things like that. But I just was
Right.
like, if you had to not even so much to sell yourself, but just wanted to
Yeah.
describe
Jeff,
the
you got my
the
back?
brand,
Got
just
your
get
back.
to someone.
Okay. The justkitt brand is more so just a cool brand.
Mhm.
I would describe my brand as a cool brand.
Okay.
Like you just chill, laid back kind of brand.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you need something to pass the day. You throw up my stream.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Cool.
Like it's cool. You know.
Mhm.
I'm
And
not
I
really
agree, because
like-
I'm on the stream.
Yeah,
I agree.
like, cursing
I agree.
or
Everybody-
raging.
you on stream.
I'll be there in
Yeah.
the morning. I'll be there.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool,
a lot of
cool.
people watch me and they be like, they don't understand how I could just stay so calm and playing like such frustrating games, and it's just like, I don't know, it's just not that serious. Like I feel like I've been through a lot.
Okay.
That's a lot more
Yeah,
serious
that's a
than
whole
just
lot more, yeah.
dying to Godric.
Let me get a segue
over and
real quick.
over. You know what I'm
I
saying?
just remembered something.
Yeah.
Just pass me the.
As customary for Game Lounge, if you didn't know, a lot of the times our early shows, we had our guests come and we blessed them obviously with our lovely
Layup.
drinks
Mhm.
and I would love the community, but we also sometimes like to send our guests home
Mhm.
with a memorabilia for the Game Lounge. So GK,
I got something for you, my brother.
Oh shit! Yeah.
I couldn't have justkitt pull up and not get my boy something.
So that's really cool.
I hope you like it. I got
That's
him
really
a Funko.
cool.
I'm not gonna show them. You gonna show them.
Yeah.
Clap on that.
I got you a
Yes, for
Funko
sure.
Pop.
You know, that's my first Funko Pop, and I've been avoiding them.
Oh, man.
Hold on. And we present the Just Kit that first of all from the host, co-host, whole crew.
Mhm.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for making time for us. We appreciate you coming out.
Yeah.
I got a little something for you, and I hope you like it.
Nice.
That's so sweet, man. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. For real. It's a Mega Man retro.
A retro Mega Man, y'all. Retro Mega Man.
Yeah, the light is drawing it
Yeah.
out, but you can see it kinda. Yeah.
Retro Mega Man.
Appreciate
Really cool.
you for being here.
Nah, thank you guys. Thank
You
you.
know what I'm saying? I definitely appreciate that, my brother.
Mhm.
Thank you.
This was the first, not the first, because we had Cliff.
Yeah.
Cliff is big.
Yeah.
But you one of the streamers that I could really say we in
Yeah.
our circle, we know Just Kid. Everybody know Just Kid's the
Yeah.
beast.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know it's been crazy. And for the fact that me and CJ and the Queen and Ash Ketchum and all that Brooklyn Jeff, we made it this far. We can have you pull up
Yeah, nah,
and be
definitely.
proud to be here. I like the energy.
Nah,
and we appreciate
absolutely.
that. You know what I'm saying?
That's all love, man.
So-
That's
so
all
it's
love.
well
If
appreciated
y'all
here at the
following me
Game
from
Lounge.
my chat, please make sure y'all following Golden Crust. Please.
And like I said, we hit our goal of 500.
Yeah.
We hit our goal of 500.
Yeah.
Definitely appreciate that. It's a wonderful night.
Hell
It's a
yeah.
wonderful night.
Hell
So
yeah.
we're going to wait till CJ the DJ sit back down.
Sit down. Give me 1 second.
He always fixing something.
Yeah.
Nah,
That's what he do.
It's the tech guy.
He's the tech guy. He
tech
he
guy.
behind
You
the
know
scenes
what
right
he
now, chat fixing shit.
do. I understand.
And I thought it was perfect. You know?
Oh man, reminds me of Kaiser Coliseum. It's so funny.
Looks good, CJ. Looks good.
It's not too bright. This is hot shit, bro. Give me a second.
Don't worry, chat. We gonna get this party going.
He
We
said
waiting
I'm
on
about to
CJ.
have a wall of Funko Pops now. Sam.
My collection is in the hundreds.
I know, right, babe?
Mm-hmm.
You go, you Gucci.
That fan is gonna be killing the mic, huh?
No,
Oh, it doesn't.
no. So we
Show up,
presented.
man.
Ah,
Sure.
I see. I
That was
gotta
a
get.
gift
I gotta
too.
get a
I
show.
got a lot of people
Mhm.
that support me.
Yeah, I gotta
I got
get
a lot
a
of people
show.
that believe in us. You know
So you
what
have a
I'm saying?
mixer?
Yeah. No,
No.
it's a built-in mixer for it, but I'm using the software to muffle out with the
Okay, they get.
sound barrier.
I see. So I will. So it connects to what?
USB-C to the computer.
Oh
directly.
shit! Really?
Mhm.
Oh, I gotta get that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. You gotta send me that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Send me
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Send me
yeah.
that.
I
Send me
got
that.
it.
Yeah. I did. Yeah.
I got
I
it.
didn't know.
Show go
I thought-
on, nigga.
Yeah,
This nigga about to travel time.
Excuse us, tech people.
Yeah.
Hold on now.
You are officially a tech person. You are
I
the
am.
Illumination LED specialist
That's me. I hold the light.
with the LED certificate. We got you in.
But we presented you with a gift.
Yeah, man.
But I have another gift for somebody.
What?
And this person is well deserving of this gift. This person is one of the reasons why we're here. It plays out. Nigga here fixing every goddamn thing.
Oh.
So CJ the DJ,
Yeah.
I picked you up something too.
Oh, my man.
I picked you up a little. I hope you like it. I know my man. I don't know if you already got it. I don't know.
Man, come, I don't give a goddamn.
But I want to say thank you.
Uh-huh.
Big production.
Right.
Anniversary show.
Right. Clap, goddammit.
We do a
Clap,
lot-
goddammit, clap.
we do a lot here. And everybody know it's not even a secret. GK wouldn't be able to do all this without CJ the DJ.
Right,
You know what I'm
right.
saying?
I appreciate
All
that.
right, relax. Relax, calm down. He ain't said nothing all night. That's a fact. He said it with his chest. Kevin Hart woke up like, what the fuck?
Oh, my God.
But
That's
thank you.
Right.
Well appreciated.
Yes.
And the first person to bring me a gift on my show.
Right.
So I got a little something for you.
Oh, my man. My man. Oh, shit. The golden boy.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's fine.
yeah. The golden boy, Chuck. God damn it, clap it.
We got the super
I got
flame.
the bullshit. Look at him.
The light too bright.
That light too
You
bright.
gotta turn that light.
There they go. They can see it right
They
there.
can see it right
They can
there.
see it. Super
Super
Saiyan
Saiyan.
Goku.
Yeah, buddy.
He got the Hadouken, the Kamehameha. I'm about to say
Yeah,
Hadouken.
let me-
That shit's a flashbang for chat.
Yeah, it's a flashbang for you. I'm sorry, but it's goddamn Super Saiyan Goku with the Kamehameha. Look at this shit, bro. Thank you, bro. I appreciate
Come
it. The
on
golden
now.
boy. Look at
so
him.
cool.
gotta add it to the collection.
Hell yeah, he going up on top of the arcade machine as soon as he go in the house.
I need you to stop calling him a golden boy, though.
That's the golden boy.
The golden boy.
You got him. It's your money. That's the golden boy.
He's like, I can name him.
He could be the golden boy today.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll take my wins. Small wins. Small wins, goddammit. Small wins.
Much appreciated to you, my brother.
Right. Thank you.
man.
Thank you. I so
Damn,
appreciate
now I gotta
it.
get the rest of the Mega Man series. Oh,
Yeah, this was this. You're not finding this on the racks no more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This is
It's
something right here.
Retro shit
So-
right there.
This is your first one.
This
Yeah.
was my
His
first one.
Funko.
I gotta keep going.
For your first one, we started out strong.
Yeah.
We started out strong. See what it said right there? You got a that's not a
man.
comment.
I heard they're going out of business on Twitter.
You
Oh, really?
understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
that sucks.
Hold
I don't
on to
want to
this.
shout them out on
Hold on to this right here. You
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So, CJ the DJ, there is one trailer
Yes.
I want to check out.
Yeah, well, we got some. We got some.
Before we go into swing of things.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been a while, so let's do how much trailers we got.
About 3.
Okay.
We got.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Trailers.
It's not.
Let's watch some trailers.
Ooh,
Because I
watch
know
some trailers.
I want to get into
All of them be like that.
this right here.
Yeah. Put you, yeah, for sure.
We'll get into this right
Yeah,
here
we
real
don't-
quick.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Real quick.
Good
He's
stuff.
ready. He's been sipping.
Yeah. Of course.
You know what I'm
Of course. Let
BT
me.
Gamers, I got a favor to ask from you and GK. Go ahead.
So yeah, let's jump right into the.
Let's jump out. This is a trailer coming out. We have to watch this trailer.
Yeah,
This trailer has to be watched.
For sure.
The Mario
Oh, I can't wait to that.
the Mario 2 Mario trailer for the
Yeah,
the new movie.
Mario Galaxy.
and I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I love that fucking movie.
Oh yeah.
Yo, first
Nah, the
one.
first
I'm a
one
big
was
fucking-
good.
40X? We took our kids.
Yo, I
really
love
good.
that fucking movie.
We took our
And
kids.
what I love about it is
No, we went
they portray my man Luigi
That's for
on
this one,
point.
this one. Oh, for this one.
Luigi got Mario back, nigga. You fuck with the red, the green coming.
Right?
We might have to spin back on 40X
We
again.
might have to spin back, bro.
Yeah.
We might have to spin back, bro. Some real shit. We might have to spin back, bro. 'Cause this is looking clean right here.
Ready, Ash?
You might want to tilt the camera better. Undead Mario.
You wanted to see us?
Don't move, I'll be right up. Sipping the soup, cleaning the paint. Boodle-doo, boodle-doo, and also trim the bonsai bush. Here we go. Hey, Luigi. What's up, Mario? Behold, I made a masterpiece for Princess Peach. What do you think?
Love the colors.
Look at the abs though.
It's trash.
I ain't mad at him.
How dare you
Since
look
it
at
is
my
trash.
masterpiece
The
and
beef
say
is real. The beef is. I like that they did that. The beef is real, nigga. I don't fuck with you.
that?
Bullshit painting. Fuck
That's
that.
Still working through my demons, I suppose.
Tiny.
This is
Anyway,
hilarious.
I need my 8 hours or else I really turn into a monster.
Oh, stop.
I'm mad they let him have his own castle.
I mean, he gotta live somewhere, right?
Yeah, I'd have put him in a shoebox. Put that nigga in a shoebox.
Nah, this movie was amazing, son. I can't fucking wait. Look at this. Real.
Dang, who sliced it up?
And I'm gonna be taking my father.
Boosh.
Now.
Mario ready.
Man, you put that thing around his body, that's it.
That's it. That's
Yeah,
it.
he coated his body with the ink.
Rosalina.
She got her smash, yo.
Princess Rosalina, you're coming with me.
Nah, no, I'm not. The body.
Oh, she looked like a Naruto character.
Nice.
That
That was
shit
hard.
look fucking fire, nigga.
That was
On her
hard.
That
smash
shit
it.
look fucking fire, nigga.
That was hard.
That shit look fucking fire, nigga. I'm excited to see that shit, nigga.
That was hard.
He said
got so
after
much to
Geneva
do with this,
Convention,
That shit look fucking fire, nigga.
we doing cruel and
Yes.
unusual
That was hard.
punishment.
R.I.P. to Kazuko Motoyama.
Yep.
Super
So, yeah,
Mario
rest in
creator.
peace to Kazuki
That's a goat
Motoyama.
right there. That's,
He's
Yeah.
one,
that's a
he's,
goat right
he's
there.
one of the creators for Mario, but he's one of the manga creators, not
goat.
the actual
Don't matter,
character
he's a goat.
creator. He's one of the goats, yeah. Because a lot of people were saying, no, that's not the real one. No, he is. It's just not
Don't
the
matter.
original. Is the manga
At
character
this point, don't
that he
matter.
created.
see.
If he
I
contributed to that whole
Miyamoto is
lore,
what people know as.
69, right?
Right.
Damn, that's crazy.
R.I.P. bro.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
It
a
might drop
goat.
off on his birthday, April 12th.
That's not
April.
nice.
Yeah.
It might drop on his birthday.
It might.
Yeah, facts.
It might
facts.
just to pay homage.
Facts. Facts.
It might.
You're crazy how you peep that. You watching numbers over here.
Right.
You work for the feds.
I know.
So-
Rest in peace, man. That
Nah,
sucks.
Yeah, rest in peace to him. Condolences to his family and all that good stuff. We got Black Ops 7 actually dropped, and everybody's on it.
And I will be
Clearly,
playing that this week.
you will be playing it this week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Game Pass, nigga.
Oh,
I
shit.
don't
Is it
even got
crossplay
downloaded
yet?
it. Cloud play.
It-
Nigga.
It's automatically crossplay.
I don't
Okay.
give a fuck.
So
I'm
it's
just doing
out.
Campaign.
So
It's
yeah,
out
we
now?
need to play because I
Yes.
got it too.
You got it too?
Yeah,
So
I
let's
got
get
it.
on-
We
get
all
on it.
can get on there and get it playing. So.
I don't know about
I just played a zombie.
rank mode. I'm trash, but yeah, we do campaign
I,
over here.
I don't need. Yeah. Damn, you don't play zombies?
Nah.
Damn, zombies is so
I
fun.
might try zombies, but I tried ranked. I can't keep up.
No, that's why I play zombies because it's more fun.
I might see you some
Yeah, it's
I
more
might
fun.
see you.
The beginning. Melinda's
And it's
already
out.
caused
It's
enough
already-
suffering. That's not gonna happen again.
I'm definitely going
I'm tempted. I'm tempted.
Game Pass. I always do the campaign stuff. You know what I'm saying?
This is actually the launch trailer for it. So it's a little bit laggy because I'm using YouTube.
Our YouTube lag is weird.
It might be the.
Yeah, hold on. Let get your shit together. All right, get your shit together. There we go.
Taking a That's
Yeah.
probably why.
Yeah, it don't need. Why we running on store
That's
K?
part right here.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, that's going on. Yeah, there we go. Much better. Let's go back. This says the best
Yeah,
part.
let's go back.
Go back right there. Yeah. 18 signature multiplayer maps, some of the ones that we all know, like Hijack. Nuketown is always a golden map.
Yo, Nuketown? They got Nuketown?
I hope they gonna do
It looks good. I like Nuketown. That's one of my favorite ones. I know, right, Kitty?
all new co-op
Play
campaign.
COD and not play zombies.
I want to play campaign.
You know, they play
I wanna play
campaign.
I like the story mode.
Now you can do co-op
Zombies.
campaign.
I'm not good on rank.
Zombies has a amazing story. That's a great story.
Never tried it.
You gotta run with us. You gotta run with us.
Hey, now we got a couple of
Right, 502.
We all up in the 5. Damn, we got a lot to talk about.
Very cool.
We got a lot.
Here's some the Vault Edition
I don't know. I'm tempted,
DLC
man.
stuff.
I don't know. It's been a long time since I played Call of Duty. Man.
Yeah, Call of Duty is forever goated. I mean,
know. I'm just like,
the
I don't
fact
know.
that you're able to play, because I was playing it because of Broke Nation copped it, and copped it for your boys. So, you know, it's all good. Shout out to Broke Nation.
Why in general?
Well, yeah. But because of that, I realized that you're able to play with some of the zombie characters on multiplayer, like the Rick Toppins and the Dempseys and all them people. You're able to play multiplayer,
Right.
and they look dead. Like you can see in their face, they look like zombie,
Right,
zombie
right.
eyes or whatever.
Right.
Still running, doing multiplayer shit, running on the wall and whatnot. So it's cool. It's really,
Right.
really dope.
Koza said looks almost as good as Arc Raiders.
Arc Raiders.
And
Nice.
Arc Raiders is $40. It looks great for the money.
Oh my
So, and
god.
since we, are segueing into
I know they waiting for me to get Arc Raiders.
since we're talking about Arc Raiders, a segue right into that. And real quick, Arc Raiders, I got to give a big shout out to my guy BK Jeff back here for sure. He hooked your boy up with some Arc Raiders.
Oh, he gets it?
Yeah, he gifted. I was like,
And
nigga, let's go.
A nice steam.
I was like, yo, shit is a little rough. No, I was gonna get it, but you know, I had to pay some other bills and get shit together. He
Life
was
be
like,
life.
life be life. He was just like, bro, I'm gonna Apple Pay you right now. I said, say less, bro. Soon as he sent the money, PlayStation had it, and I put it all on the Discord. That I was like, I gotta
I'm in
send
there.
me some shit.
I'm in
Hell yeah. So let's jump into it real quick. This is Arc Raiders. It's an introduction trailer about it for those that are not familiar of it, but it's the launch trailer with it too.
Yeah. I still don't really know what this game is about.
Almost looks peaceful.
Loot game.
And
What
you're
I like
fighting
about
some-
it is
and you're
top
fighting
side.
AI, right?
AI. You run across other teams that's live.
Wasps,
Yes, you run across other live players.
bastards.
Oh, so
I don't
this
care
is
what
an
you've been
online
before, you
service.
ain't seen nothing like the Rust Belt
Yes.
kid.
But selling
Yes.
those bastion parts kept us
tell
afloat
other
for a
people,
month.
yo,
Sure,
I'm
a
trying to
month,
fight.
but you can't make money unless you know what you're doing.
Or niggas come blah 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 blah. Take your loot.
Run down.
Keep your eyes in
That's
the
what Az said. He
I
wants to
kind of want to stay away from it. I'm not good on these.
Rule 2, know when to pick your battles. There's no shame in hiding or throwing a grenade and running.
It's like risk. It's just like risk, yo.
I like that aspect of it. You
Yeah.
can run into other random players.
But people
I
go
like
running
that
your
about it.
people
What's
go
that
running
thing
your
always
base and
saying?
shit, right?
It's not really a
No,
base.
no,
Once you go on mission, once you get to the end of the mission, you know
Bingo. Keep
what
on your
happens
feet,
in
kid.
between is-
You'll be
Oh,
fine.
okay. I thought it was okay. So
It's not just
Yeah,
Ark
I'll
though. I
play
mean,
that.
that topside
I'll
ammo's
play
cheap and trust is expensive.
Hey, come on. Some Raiders are good stock.
Yes, some, but every raid has been burned once. You gotta learn to trust your gut up there.
It's not just being quick on the draw roll. It's about improvising with everything you
Even
have.
the best plans fail sometimes, and some are just too loud.
Hey, Raiders, do you mind?
Hey, we were just talking to our friend here.
Listen, here's reality. Speranza needs hands, brave ones. Every day there are jobs to be done. Farmers, families, life here
Yeah, codes
depends
are
on
beyond.
Raiders going up there and coming back. The traders know that better than anyone.
Hey, check this out. I bought this bad boy down at Tianguan yesterday. She's got the best iron in the city. It's not cheap, but it's worth it.
If you want to stitch yourself back together, go see Lance. He's got meds and parts. Though he's a little...
Come on in, sit down, take your pants off.
You can be more than just another scavenger. You can help keep Speranza running. You could carve out a home here, a place that's yours in all this mess.
Not like Pope Shock with a hole.
Ventilation, thank you very much.
You'll need to hone your skills, figure out what kind of raider you want to be. Bottom line is, I need people I can count on. Ones that are going to stick around.
You don't want to get on her bad side.
I was going to. When you said it, I was just like, what? Delete. I don't want to do that. So that's Arc Raiders, y'all. That's Arc Raiders.
What we got next? I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to
That's
do
Arc
this.
Raiders.
You see, she ready. The queen is ready.
Damn, they just got One Piece
And,
subbed on YouTube.
Hugo, what's going on with you, Hugo?
Like I said, shout out to my guy BK Jeff for blessing me with the Arc
Yes,
Raiders.
of course.
And we ran the games with Koza. Shout out to Koza. Woo! Yeah. So I had one more, but we could just leave that for at the end.
At the end, right? We can do it.
Leave it at the end.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it at the end.
So, that's what we're here for. Our first game that we're gonna play. I'm choosing Melanated Monet to play for the house.
Okay.
I accept the challenge.
She ready. She ready. So our queen, as you know, is the queen of the show.
Okay.
The queen of the show is going to battle for the house. Versus our special guest, Just Kitt.
Okay, I'm probably gonna lose.
So what we're gonna play is, if you can't see it because of the light, it's Hood Feud. Very much like Family Feud. Okay?
But hood.
This is some nigga shit.
Some nigga shit.
So boom, I'm gonna shuffle it up. Each question got a certain amount of points.
Okay.
So let's say we got every question I ask have a few answers. If you get the most popular answer, it's worth more points.
Okay, example.
Read that one.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Example, Hood Feud.
Yeah.
Melanated Monet's fighting for the house.
Yeah.
Versus the guest.
Yeah.
Just Kit.
Right.
So boom. Every question, like he said, for example, name, I'm gonna read the question. The question has, on the card, has 5 answers. Each answer is worth a certain amount of points. So if you get the number 1 answer, it's 43 points.
Okay.
If you get the number 2 answer, it's 29 points. Basically Family Feud. If you get the number 3 answer, is 15 points.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first question is,
And
let's play for everybody, for example.
Yeah,
This is a trial. This don't count.
Yeah.
Let's play for everybody, for example. Everybody. Ash.
Yeah.
Name a popular breakfast cereal.
Captain Crunch.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Cocoa Puff. Fruity, what's this shit called?
Fruity Pebbles?
Rice Krispies.
Number 1 answer, which is worth 43 points, is Cheerios.
Oh,
Damn.
Number two, and I'm shocked. Not much more people say it, but a bunch of niggas here.
Applejack.
Frosted Flakes.
I said that.
Yeah,
You
she
said Frosted
that.
Flakes?
Yeah.
29 points.
Right.
Number 3, Corn Flakes.
Mm.
Number 4, Fruit Loops. No, I said Fruit Loops. Number 5,
Oh, when they say hood, they mean hood.
they mean
hood.
hood. Number 5, Lucky Charms.
Food stamps, government cheese.
Okay.
Hood.
Okay. So here's what I want to do.
Okay.
Pass that for me, right? The paper.
The paper? Got
Yeah.
you.
Well, you got to do the math.
We got to keep record.
Yep.
We got to keep record. It's for you. Just hold the book.
Got a clipboard, no? A book. Clipboard.
Just write your points down when you get them.
Okay.
She need a clipboard or something.
She'll be all right. You Gucci? I got you right now. Sis.
I said, no, don't give me something to read.
We're gonna talk about this later on.
Oh.
We're gonna talk. We got more shit coming up. We got more shit coming up.
I saw a little picture.
Yes, sir. All right, so let round 1 begin.
Okay. How many rounds?
We're playing Hood Feud.
How many rounds?
CJ, how many rounds you think? 5?
5 rounds is cool.
5 rounds is cool.
5 rounds.
You want a 5-round shoot off?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Sis.
I got this.
Hey, sis.
All right.
You the queen.
Want to shoot up.
You the queen.
I got this.
She got this?
She got
We're
this.
against you right now.
I know.
Because you over here trying to act like you the shit. You know what I mean? All right. Hood Feud, everybody. I'm going to ask a question. There's a couple of options on the card. Whoever gets the highest number, you write your number down. After 5 rounds,
tally it up.
Keep track of the rounds.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shuffle it up. Y'all can see me shuffling it up. Hood Feud is about to bust right now.
Right. For
Okay.
sure. That's not right. It's like round 1, right?
Round 1. Here we go. Y'all ready? What is a famous African American slang term for the term or phrase that has become mainstream? Let me read it again.
What? I know, right?
What is a famous African American slang term or phrase that has become mainstream?
What year did this come out?
What year? This year?
I don't. Just don't worry about the year. That's
My nigga. That's the phrase right there, my nigga.
We got 5 options on here.
Damn, like.
I'm gonna read it again. I'm gonna read it again. Oh, she said read it again. What is a famous African American slang term or phrase that has become mainstream? I kind of understand the question. That has become mainstream.
That has become mainstream.
Damn, they got some options over here too.
This shit is such a weird.
Number 1 is crazy. Y'all age group number 1 will make sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Real talk.
Oh. Damn, that's crazy. Okay, so.
It's our age group?
So yeah, for the fun of it, I tell you what. After they answer, the three of us can answer.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Afterwards.
Okay.
You going first?
I'm gonna let the queen go first.
You good?
You going with you good?
Yeah, I'm going with you good.
Okay. What you going with? What you got? What you got?
Yo, this shit is such a.
I know it's so broad. Like
It's so broad. Like
it's such a
that's
broad
just like.
question.
I tell you what. If nobody gets it, that's on the card. We go to the next one.
Yeah.
That's 0-0.
Yeah.
What you get?
And what she said, wait?
You good?
Are you good?
Nigga, you good?
Yeah.
What's good?
What's good?
What you think?
My nigga.
My nigga. You know what my nigga?
My nigga.
I feel like my nigga was.
I think after we reveal this one, you guys will get to grasp more better.
Right.
What you got? Chat. Check in.
I don't know.
What it do?
What it
What it
do?
do? Okay.
What up?
You thinking. Ash, what you
I
got?
say bread.
Bread. Ooh.
Bread.
My boy.
Bread is a good answer.
He thinking.
Yeah.
None of y'all got it.
None of y'all got
Nobody
it.
got it. But I like that. I like Ash.
Ash
You
was cool. He
you
was
understood
cool.
it better. Number one is bling bling.
Bling bling.
Oh, that's
Every
so-
time I come around the corner,
That's
bling,
early
bling.
2000s.
But it didn't say the year. It said
Who the
it said
fuck
phrase
says
that
bling
became
bling?
mainstream.
Who the fuck says that?
Number two, Bay.
Oh, babe.
And
Absolutely.
Koza said
Absolutely.
Jiggy.
Good the Jiggy. Okay. Okay. BT had said something about visiting. Can you read that for us, CJ?
He said,
Now you gonna be in New York sometime.
he said something before that real quick. He said, did you guys see the favor?
Number three.
I wish
I
I could play
agree with
this.
number three. Dope. That's dope. Come on now. That's commonplace.
I say dope all day long.
That's commonplace. That's
dope.
but that's what they
Yeah,
said.
that's dope.
Mainstream. It's
Yeah.
normal now.
No, but I mean,
Damn, I feel like it's my
Number four, I agree with as well. Y'all all, no matter what age group, should be ashamed of yourself. Swag.
Oh, okay.
So old.
It's
Nah,
old.
that's mainstream. No matter how old you are, you
I
understand what that
know,
means.
it's mainstream, but it feels so.
Number five. Number five.
Nah,
Number five.
just like Brawler King.
Holla.
This is old.
That's
Holla.
old. Okay, all right.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So everybody's still on an even playing field.
Yeah.
Nobody lost.
This is
So now
old.
we understand more.
Right. He said,
Kinda.
I am going to be in New York sometime in 2026. Can you guys give me a tour of New York when I'm there in 2026?
Yes, we can.
Hey,
Yeah.
Of course we can.
Yeah, we got you, bro. We got
If
you.
you come to a
we
hometown-
ain't going to take you to the hood where they, they're
Nah,
going to rob
if
you.
you come in a
man.
hometown gonna take care of you. Wait. What Cole said?
Because said Hood Feud.
2003 edition.
2003 edition.
Like, what the
Why you
fuck?
acting like you young?
What
Walk
is
out of
this?
here, Unc.
Hey,
I got another one.
That was round
I'm gonna
one.
put from the middle from this time.
Round one was 0.
There we go. All right, here we go.
Round 2.
Wow. Thank you.
Appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all. I don't know
That
why it's
you want to do like a, okay, I like that. I really like that. That's nice. Okay, so that's what we're going to do from now on. Even if the answers aren't on the board,
Yeah.
we're going to vote on which one of the answers is better.
Okay.
And then we'll give 10 points.
10 points?
10 points.
Okay.
Okay?
Cool.
All right, cool. That's fair?
Yes.
All right. Here we go. Question. Name a... Remember, guys, I just opened the game. I don't know either. So
Okay.
cool. We're going on this.
Cool.
Name a black-owned media company.
BT.
A black-owned media company? Damn.
Black-owned media company.
I don't know.
TP, Tyler Perry Studios.
is that what it's called? Tyler Perry Studios? Yeah.
I think I know
50
one.
guys own coming out too. Yeah.
Black-owned.
Yeah.
I'm going to fight all y'all.
Tubi.
What is?
Oh, Tidal.
Tubi.
Tidal's owned by Jay-Z, right? So I win, baby.
What is Ice Cube?
Nah,
Thing?
I don't think Jay-Z owned them. He sold it.
No more?
No, he just was partnered with same thing with like the Barclays. He doesn't own the Barclays. He has shares.
Oh yeah. So you don't own the
I'm
Barclays?
gonna
Yeah, he's a
fight you.
shareholder.
This
say
hood.
All right.
I don't know.
What's your pick?
What's
a black-owned media company? Revolt. Somebody say Revolt. It's by Diddy.
That's
all
what
right.
I was trying to get.
Okay. All right. What you got?
I said title, but they said no.
Title.
Bad boy.
You looking it up, dude?
Yeah.
What you got? They're both wrong.
It's a media company.
Yeah, he's just a shareholder.
I said Tyler
He
Perry
was
Studios.
the owner though.
Tyler Perry Studios.
Ooh, New Line Cinema.
That's black owned.
What you got?
Good question. Ain't shit no black movies on there. All of the boys in the hoods and the presidents and Fridays.
She said it first.
She said it.
But I changed it because I didn't.
Nah,
Now.
that's Warner Brothers.
Oh, see, they changed it. Wow.
She making me so mad. She said it. BT's number one. That was 39 points.
Black Entertainment Television.
Number two is Essence.
I don't know what that is.
Essence Magazine.
Oh,
okay.
I forgot about them.
TV One. I wouldn't have got that one.
Is TV1?
I know TV One.
TV1 been off the TV.
How old is that,
Wait. Oprah Winfrey.
Oh.
They don't have two people.
Oh.
Wow.
Oprah Winfrey is a media company.
This one I've never heard of.
Yeah.
Lavidity? Never heard of it.
I'm so glad I next time I'm going with my answer.
So who we going with? We going with
Zero.
All right, so what did you say?
I
Wait,
said-
hold on.
I
What
said
did you
title.
say? Title. No, what was your answer?
Tubi.
I would vote Tubi is actually black owned.
Is it?
It's owned by a black guy.
It
Yeah.
is.
I'm gonna vote for Tubi.
Tubi.
Come on, y'all.
Tubi. I'm gonna vote Tubi. Honestly, that's a black owned thing.
10 points.
Rockefeller.
10 points. You want Tubi? Okay. Come on, man.
Tubi is owned by Fox. That's white people.
Nah.
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 That's a zero.
Nah.
That's a zero.
Nah.
If I can say title, then that means title is
So
there
who
too.
owned title?
Jay-Z
Jay-Z was.
used to own it.
You still don't count.
Nah, but
Tubi
Fox
was used to be
Vision,
owned by
that's
black.
what
So
it
it's the same. We're going back to
Nah,
square
exactly.
one.
So it's the
I'm
same
still voting
shit.
Tubi.
Nah, that's bullshit.
Nah.
That's cheating.
He would have got politics.
So Koza had a couple. Koza said Death Row Records, The Root, Urban One, Q
Death
Vision.
Row.
Did
The
whole
Root is
project.
black, but it's not
What's that-
published
what's
on
that-
Black
what's that,
Network.
Yeah.
That social media.
Fox.
The Shade
Fox
Room?
ain't black.
Nah, Fox ain't black. So
Fox
Tubi,
white as fuck.
yeah, Tubi is owned by
Yeah,
Fox.
but Fox was Tubi was started by a black guy
Oxygen,
for
and
black
you
people.
got Hip
Yeah.
Hops.
It's on Tubi now. VH1.
Zeus, yes.
Oh,
Zeus.
Zeus.
Hold on. So you got 10 points.
Yes.
The House voted that Tubi.
Zeus is black.
All right. Watch this.
Oh,
Watch
Lamel.
this.
Who's Lamel Plummer?
Let's go into our
Is
next
that
one.
Lamel Plummer, yeah. He's
That's
the lead Zeus.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's I
Let's
got
hop into
that.
another
Who
question.
said Zeus? But that's too late.
You ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
CJ,
For my answer this time.
I'm gonna let you choose this one.
Please.
Right.
A good one, baby, 'cause this shit-
A good one, babe. Stop it. I'm gonna shuffle.
Yeah,
She can't do that. She
stop
cheated.
it.
A good one. What about the kids, CJ?
Yo.
I'm gonna shuffle. Shut up. Pick a good one, babe. No. No.
Damn.
I can mad I said 18 and change it.
Yo,
CJ
bro.
gotta stay biased.
It's like if I pick a good one, then I get to sleep in the bed.
Yeah.
If I don't pick a good one, I gotta sleep on the couch.
You your boy. This is it for you right here.
Damn, this
Pick
is
this,
crazy.
pick this for CJ the third.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, you picking? I can play because I can't see the answers.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's better. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Question is, what's often said about dressing up for church?
Gotta be fly on Sundays.
Okay.
Your Easter Sunday outfit gotta be fly. Something on Easter up there.
Put your best Sunday outfit on.
Okay.
Oh, your best.
Something with Easter. I don't know what it is.
You say Easter.
I'm going something with Easter.
Okay.
The
What's your
church-
best Sunday
the
outfit?
I want to
Church
change.
steppers.
I want to
Church
change.
steppers?
I want to change, sir. Let me change one more time. Your Sunday dress.
The church
Okay.
step zone.
Sunday dress.
Sunday dress.
And you said,
They want to hear the
and you
chat. Want to hear the question again?
Oh, okay, chat. Here we go. What's often said about dressing up for church? Yeah. What's often said about dressing up for church?
Wait, hold on. Wait.
That's a hard
You
question.
said-
No, I say you put on
what
your
do you
church
say?
steppers.
Put on your church steppers.
Wear your Sunday's best. Okay. Let us
You
know.
said Sunday dress.
Sunday dress.
BK Jack.
Put on that good suit.
Put on that good suit. Ash. He said skip this. I don't know about it.
Yeah, shit, I don't know about
So
it.
what is it?
So for number one, wear your Sunday's best.
Oh, got that. Look at that.
How many points? How many points?
45 points.
45 points.
45 points.
Number two, dress to impress.
Dress to impress. Wow.
Number three, come as you are, but bring respect.
Damn, come as you are. Damn, I should know that.
Yo.
I got that one.
Four is looking good is good manners. And then five, y'all, God deserves your best attire.
I've never heard that one.
Boy,
Wear your Sunday's best.
Wish I went to
So what you
church.
got, like 50
And church steppers? No, put your church steppers on. No,
All right,
that-
so what we
that's
gonna do
common.
is, you want to see who get to 100 first? Because you on 0.
I am.
Well,
No,
these
you gotta
numbers-
vote on the. Oh yeah, I guess.
No, she won.
Yeah, she won.
Hers was number 1.
So
So you just
that was
Oh,
round
so I don't
three,
get
right?
no points.
That was round
Three.
3, yeah.
Damn.
Son. It's not looking
0.
good. It's not looking good.
We can still come back though.
Brooke and Jeff.
We still
I'm
have
gonna let you do your thing.
2 rounds.
Do you?
I like that one, Koza.
But I'm probably
Bigger the hat, the higher the
gonna be
praise.
The
coasting
bigger
a
the hat, the
hot
higher the
0.
praise.
Wait. Catch up with chat, CJ. What you talking about?
That's exactly what Ash just said. Because it said the bigger the hat, higher the praise. Hometown, what up,
we know you
hometown?
got
Hometown said, do I have to wear a dress?
She said what?
She said, do I have to wear a dress? So that's her answer.
Okay,
to the
okay.
question.
So we got a pull from Brooklyn Jeff.
Yeah, okay. Cool,
What you got,
cool.
Brooklyn?
What does keep it real means?
Oh shit.
Telling the truth.
Yeah, keeping it a buck.
No, I guess.
Yeah.
Telling the truth.
Telling
Yeah.
the truth, the whole
Being
truth, nothing but the
honest.
truth.
Okay,
Being
so
honest,
wait.
like
Hold on. I don't want to know the answer. The question is,
What does keep?
What does keeping it real mean? Really
what
mean?
does keeping it real really mean? Keeping it real.
Yeah, keep it real.
So hold on. I'm
It could be. It's so hard because keep it real could be like
Wait.
antagonistic.
What's your
I don't
age
know.
again?
What 40?
40.
Yeah.
What's your age again?
3.
Yeah, old niggas. Yo,
Oh,
what does keeping it real really mean? What's your final answer?
my final. What is keeping it real is like, it's like I said, keeping it a buck, like keeping it like. I don't know what do you want? It could be. I don't know what kind of like answer they're looking for because keeping it.
That's what I said. Being
Keeping
honest.
it real
See,
is just like yo when you
Tell the
when you
Big
if you
Joe
ask
said
somebody
keeping
to
it
keep
real,
it real,
meaning be
I mean like
honest.
yo
Be honest and tell the
like
truth.
keep it 100 with me.
Right,
You know what
okay.
I'm saying?
And
Like
you
no
say-
matter what.
Tell the truth.
Honest.
Being honest.
I
Coach-
can say that.
No, I know you can't say no, but okay.
Yeah,
So
Koza said unfiltered
Unfiltered
honesty.
honesty, even if it hurt. Yes.
okay, what you say?
Tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I agree. In a nutshell, we're all saying the same shit. Keeping it a buck.
Keep
Keeping it a buck. What you say, Ash? Keeping it a buck. What's number 1 answer?
Says being genuine.
Oh.
All
You
right.
both got that. You both
Let's
got that.
both. Yeah. Okay.
You didn't have to say it in that same exact tone.
That's
We all
35.
agree.
So what's the
It
second
means
one?
keeping it a buck.
35 points.
You on the board?
Yeah, I'm on the board, guys.
What's number 2 though?
2 is staying true to oneself.
Okay.
Okay.
That's 28.
Same thing.
3 is not pretend to be something that you're not.
Okay,
That's
that's
19 points.
who the fuck answered
4
this?
is honest and
Like, what?
integrity. And 5 is being straightforward and truthful.
You wanna know what's crazy about that question? All that mean the same shit.
The
All
same
of
shit,
the same
right.
shit. That's
All
what
that
I
means
mean.
the
That's what I'm
same.
saying.
Ash, your turn.
Being honest, being truthful, telling the truth.
Let's see what Ash got. Well, how much points you got?
35.
How much points you
I
got?
got
She over there calculating.
But
That's
how
how
she-
you know you fucked
I got-
up. She gotta add shit. That's how you know you
90.
fucked up.
Yeah.
90?
One
Yeah,
might
she
be
got-
doing
she got
selections.
35
Wait,
and
how you
40.
got 90 though?
35 and 40 should be.
Thir-
I got 10
35.
for the first one.
She got 10 for the first one.
10 for the first one, 45 for the second one.
Damn.
35 for the third
That's
one.
crazy.
Yeah, she was
That's
done.
crazy.
Yeah,
You gotta come correct next time.
It's okay.
90, yep.
This game
Cliff
is.
said, just don't
He
keep
said
it.
This game is weird.
He
Cliff said, just don't keep it real, like that girl that said, I don't like playing on my phone.
I don't like people playing on my
I don't like people playing on my phone.
Wait. Who said? What girl is that?
Cliff said that. I guess it's a
Wait,
social
come on.
media girl.
So-
So being genuine, like my boy Just Kit, is the definition of keeping it real.
So hold on.
So we doing selections, or we doing like open mic, first come first serve?
What you mean?
You gonna know once I say it. So the question is, name something you might buy at a bakery.
Hold on. Just to
Name
understand.
something you buy.
Here's
at a
the
bakery.
question, chat.
No,
Hold
name
on,
something
Brooklyn. The question is, name something
You might buy at a bakery.
you might buy at a bakery.
Cake. No, might. Meaning you thinking about it, but you ain't gonna buy it.
I had a something.
Name something you might buy at a bakery.
At a bakery.
What the
I got my answer. I got my answer. Lock the fuck in.
Like what?
Y'all not thinking. Y'all
Man,
not thinking like in the way the game is made.
Yo, I can't
That's what I'm
wrap
saying.
my head around
It's
it.
the overall answer.
So you say your answer first.
Nah, it's y'all. Y'all feuding. Y'all feuding right now.
Okay, so what she gonna say?
Nah, you ain't gonna say what she gonna say. What you got, sis?
Cake, but that's too obvious. Cake. Fuck it, because I did that last time. Fucked up. I'm gonna go with cake.
You might think about buying at a bakery
Right.
a muffin.
Muffin. Okay.
Cookies.
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 Okay.
What type of bakery? I'm about to say
This
bun-
is bakery, bro.
I'm about to say bun and cheese.
Bun and cheese. Nah, nigga.
Nigga, I
That's the blackest answer we heard all night. Bun and cheese, nigga. It ain't Easter,
was going
nigga.
bun and cheese. Nigga.
What you say, GK?
Foxy said cake,
I say
cookies, donuts,
I'm just gonna go
croissants,
cake.
and
Croissant.
bread.
Number one is cake.
Got that. What's the point?
Okay.
See, I almost changed
Mad
it.
Red
I
said
almost changed my
quiche.
answer. I
Number
almost
two.
changed.
Goes and said
What
vignettes.
was number two?
The beignets.
Cookies.
The
28
beignets.
points.
Cookies. Cookies
Cookies. Number two.
Cookie number two?
Number three is
Cake
donuts.
number one.
18 points.
Foxy Cat said donuts.
Number
Donut.
four is pastries.
Alright, so
I was gonna say
What's
pastries too.
what's the answer?
Number
Cake.
5 is bread. There was no. What you said? You said
Number
muffins?
one is
There's
cake.
No muffins.
No
on the board.
muffins.
Number one is cake.
I said that. I was about to
So-
change
Hold on.
it.
So
Technically, you
ridiculous.
lost. Technically, you lost, but we're gonna do a lightning round.
He said like that.
I'll make up the rules as you go.
Muffin
Nigga.
would be a pastry though.
Hold on, wait a minute. Here go the lightning
Muffins,
round.
not a pastry.
Here go the lightning round.
Cupcakes.
This game is
Watch
License.
this. No. Watch this. Watch this. You
rigged.
technically won, but if you agree to a lightning round, if he wins the next match, you guys are equal.
All right, I'm down.
Then
I
you
ain't
gotta go
scared.
to a fight.
Signed up.
Okay.
Yeah,
So if you get more points than her, the next round is equal,
Mm-hmm.
and then we got a 1-1.
Yeah,
Okay.
Because she
okay.
agrees.
I'm
Because the
ready.
queen did her thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
No, this game is crazy.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shuffle.
Are you sure
It
black
wasn't that-
people
it
made
was
this
simple.
game?
They didn't have to-
What I'm gonna do is
No.
I don't know.
They call- they call
White
it
people
Hood
made it for
Feud.
black people.
I feel like white people made it for black
I'm
people.
gonna let
Right, they
pick
called
the
it
card.
Hood Feud.
Yeah.
We
You
would
don't
come
get
up with
to
a
read it.
cooler
Give it to me.
name.
Yeah,
Or
I
some
don't.
shit
I
like
don't
that.
think.
You agree?
I mean, we all
I'm gonna let her pick the card, but she don't get to read it. She gives it to me.
Uh huh.
Okay. I'm gonna shuffle it a little bit.
Uh huh.
Code. Kid.
Yeah.
Chop. You gotta do something.
Big nets.
Yeah.
You gotta do something.
Vignettes.
We'll try. We'll try.
It's a pastry. It's like one of those little circle bread
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Like it's like an oval.
It's
bread.
bread.
Yeah.
It's fancy bread. It's
Fancy bread.
whatever you want to do. Okay.
Like you wouldn't normally see it at bodega. You gotta go to Williamsburg or some shit.
All right. You ready?
In
Ready.
Midtown Manhattan.
That's what you're saying, right, Jose? You feel me? It feels like
Okay. This is a good question.
All right.
Ooh.
Please, I need this.
This is a good one.
that. Yeah.
Remember, if he gets more points than you this round, it's 1-1. It's equal.
Even.
It's even. Then you gotta when we fight it out. The next one. If you lose this one, it's over for you.
Uh huh.
Renowned African American women leaders.
What the fuck is this?
Let me read it again. Let me read it again. Let me read it again. This is a good one. I like this.
Activists don't count.
I don't
Huh?
know.
Activists don't count.
I'm gonna read it again.
Bullshit.
Renowned African American women leaders.
Barack wife.
Hold on. Whatever your answer is, hold on.
Barack
Hold on. Everybody lock in.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody lock in.
Mm-hmm.
What you got?
Obama.
Wife. You're locked in. He
Michelle
said it twice. You're
Obama.
locked in. He said it twice. He's locked in. Can't change that.
I was about to say that.
What you got, sis?
Black
Sis.
leader. Look at me.
Come on now, we don't got all day. 5.
Ain't no hits. Ain't no
Harriet
hits.
Tubman.
Harriet Tubman.
That's cool.
Damn, you took Michelle Obama from me.
I mean, she a leader.
Here we go now.
Shit. She was doing
Number
that
1.
fitness thing for a little while.
Harriet Tubman.
Oh! Me!
This game is so fucking stupid.
Go
Get the fuck out of here. Yo, white people made this game, bro. White people made it.
Let me just read off the rest.
It's true.
Let me read
but
off
like,
the rest.
Right.
White
Number
people
2.
made this game, bro.
Rosa Parks.
I was gonna say that.
Yo, white people made this game, bro.
Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks sound like white people made this game.
Oh my god. Oh my god. He said he needed another drink.
Yeah. He said I'm going to go get me something.
Y'all
else to
think this
drink.
is funny? Watch number 3. Michelle Obama.
I'm telling you, bro.
You got some points. Michelle Obama.
Oh my god.
Hold on, number 4.
Madam C.J. Walker.
Lauren Hill.
Maya Angelou.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Number 5. This one, Shirley Chisholm.
Shirley Chisholm.
Chisholm, yeah. Let's do another one for fun.
Yeah.
Let's do another one for fun.
For fun.
For fun. Yeah, because you lost.
You want to do one so y'all can read
He
it.
said, fuck this.
You got a card right next to you.
Oh,
Nah, you go. My bad.
I want to do one so y'all can guess.
You want to do one?
Guess.
Yeah, okay. Here you go. Shuffle it. Do whatever you want to do.
Let me do it for y'all.
All right. You ready? The house won, baby. The queen did her thing.
Yeah. Round of applause. Round of applause.
That's that black girl magic right
Next
there.
time, let's play like Connect 4. A fucking checkers or chess or
Every
something.
man in this room is supposed to get this. Okay. Every black person is supposed to get this. Every person is supposed to get this. Y'all ready? Name a classic Eddie Murphy comedy film.
Come to America.
Damn.
Norbit.
Damn.
Come to America.
Eddie Professor.
Shit.
Yeah.
Let's go, Ash.
It's a good one. I'm sticking with Come to America though. It's on there. I know it's on there. It may not be number 1, but it's on there.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I took all the good ones.
Yeah, one more.
This
A
one,
boomerang.
Boomerang.
You ready
That's a
for
good
the
one.
answer?
Yeah.
So
Boomerang.
number 1 is Beverly Hills Cop.
Okay.
wow.
Axel Foley.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Coming to America.
Let's
Oh,
go.
that's popular.
Number 3
Yeah.
is Trading
I was gonna
Places.
say Coming to America.
Wow. Good places.
Number 4 is Harlem Nights. I'm mad y'all didn't get Harlem.
Wow. Wow.
And number 5 is The Nutty Professor.
Here's another one, Queen.
Let's go, Ash.
Here's
When
another one.
he said it, I was like, shit.
Nah, that's a good one. That was a good one. That was a good one.
Norbit's my favorite.
Here's another one, Queen.
All right, I got y'all. You ready?
I like this game. I like it.
Uncultured. That's
I'm
me.
done.
All right. Name a popular family vacation destination.
Jamaica.
Hawaii.
Yo.
Yeah. You can't write shit like that, nigga.
Yeah,
We got to clip. What time we in? We in an hour and 57. I'm clipping that.
Clip that right in the. Cool. I said Hawaii.
So
Hawaii's
you got
good.
Hawaii, Jamaica,
Hawaii's good though.
Cancun, and
Hawaii's a solid.
so unfortunately, none of y'all got it.
It's Miami.
Jamaica, Cancun, or Hawaii is crazy.
None of y'all got it.
Miami.
Bahamas is on there.
The first one is Disney World. Family vacation. Family vacation.
Oh, but look at hometown, Disney
Yes.
World.
Wow.
You got that one.
Wow.
The second one is the beach.
The beach.
The beach.
That's what you know who made this,
Any
right?
beach?
Not a
Yeah,
black
the beach.
person.
They ain't going to Coney Island Beach.
No, you know what
They
I'm
ain't
saying?
going to Coney Island Beach. That is not a vacation.
No.
That's a family.
No, the project's right there.
Projects there, Luna Park right here.
Ain't
The
that
crackhead
crazy?
bar linked this
Bro.
asking somebody to buy him in front.
Number 3 is
Generic,
National Parks.
generic
What the
beach.
hell? What?
National Parks, like
Excuse me.
This game is made by white people.
Yo, what's the name of this game? I'm gonna find out right now. 'cause I'm
Confused.
confused. I need to
And
find
number
out.
4, wait,
That's
number
how it's
4 is,
spelled
of
weird.
course, New York. A lot of
Yeah,
people in New
like
York.
Right.
that's
Okay.
crazy.
Here's another one.
And the 5 is camping sites.
No, we ain't campus.
Let me get in the middle.
CJ, load up
This is a good one for you.
the
Which one?
the Google Drive.
Got you.
I got another one for y'all. Who is a prominent producer in hip hop music?
It's not specified who sells this. It's white people.
I'm going Russell Simmons.
Kanye West.
Prominent producer in hip hop.
Producer threw me off.
Producer?
I shouldn't have said
Dr. Dre.
Pharrell? Dr. Dre?
Yeah.
He
Dr.
said Dr.
Dre.
Dre.
I said Pharrell.
You said.
Oh shit, he took Dr. Dre. What the hell is his name? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, yep.
What you said?
Kanye West.
I'm going with him, Timberlake.
And you
That was a
said.
good
I'm
one.
going Timberlake.
That was a
Him.
good one.
First I said Russell Simmons.
So the first one, he got that one, Dr. Dre.
Wow.
Sure.
The second
Thank
one is
you.
Kanye West.
Wow.
Third one is Pharrell.
Wow.
The fourth one is Timberland.
Yes.
That was a good
And the
list.
fifth one is DJ Premier. I don't know who that is.
Oh yeah.
I know
Rest in
Premier.
peace.
DJ
I know
Premier.
Premier.
Rest in
Yeah.
peace, DJ Premier, yeah.
I know Premier.
Damn, they didn't even mention what's that nigga name? Who's Bow Wow manager? Who's Bow Wow?
Jermaine Dupri.
Yeah, they didn't even put Jermaine Dupri
Yeah, you
on
got
there.
Jermaine Dupri. They don't got DJ
They
Khaled.
No,
put
so
Premier over.
You got last.
It's crazy.
All right, we're gonna do one more, then we go switch on to
All
another
right, this is a
game.
good one for y'all.
Okay,
Because I know y'all will know this artist. Name a famous Tupac Shakur song.
Dear Mama.
Fuck.
California Love.
It's a California Love.
Dear Mama.
Hit him up.
Damn,
Hit
I
him
was about
up.
to say hit him up.
Look at that.
This is a good one. This is a good one.
Dear Mama? You said Dear Mama, right?
Yeah,
Dear
we said
Mama,
that.
that's me.
You said California Love. You said Dear
No,
Mama.
I say Machiavelli.
That's a good one.
Hey, that's a good
Damn, how you letting
song.
the young blood beat to Machiavelli, son? Come on, Brooklyn Jeff.
Come get me.
Hail Mary.
Yo.
Oh, you said I get around. That's a good one.
What is it?
Hometown said, I'll get around.
I get it
You
right.
Supposed
That's
to
a
say
good one.
ambitions as a
You drawing a
writer.
blank right now, my nigga.
Right now, so I
Yeah, I mean, you can always agree with somebody who you agree with in the circle.
do it, hit him up.
Hit them up.
Mad Rel said, how do you want it?
How do you?
Oh, that was a
Oh,
good one too. Y'all ready? So number one is California Love.
California
Number two is Dear Mama.
come on,
Number
my
three
nigga.
is Changes.
Changes.
Number
Boom,
four
boom,
is
boom.
Keep Your Head Up.
Keep your head up.
Yeah.
Number five is Hit 'Em Up.
Hit them up. Who said hit them up?
I did.
You said Hit 'Em
Come
Up.
on, nigga.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like y'all get into one more.
All right, let me do one more.
You know what I
The
mean?
good ones is coming out. We had the crazy ones before.
Yeah, like these are better.
We did that one.
I got a good game lined up for us. Don't worry, we gotta
Okay,
get
now
something
this is
nice.
for y'all. Let's do this.
Okay.
Name a common spice used in Caribbean cuisine.
Scotch bonnets.
Adobo.
What you said?
Scotch bonnets.
Cayenne pepper.
Curry.
Oh no, Larry's.
Oh, that's a good one.
Larry's.
Yes, Larry's a good one too.
I'll let you keep Scotch bonnets, but I'm going to say curry.
Sazon. Yes, Sazon.
You see, when you say Caribbean cuisine as read the question again.
Name a common spice used in Caribbean cuisine.
That's what you said.
Yeah,
I said
Larry's.
Scotch bonnet, but I'm going to give you
Say
Scotch bonnet.
spice.
Spice.
Yeah, so cayenne pepper. Also.
A spice.
If you're gonna say cayenne pepper, I'm gonna have to stick with Scotch bonnet.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's
Yeah.
actually.
So I guess jerk spice, like
Say
spice.
That's a good one, too.
Spice.
If it's
They
not
said
like
or
Jerk,
spicy.
yeah, jerk is
Cat
good,
said
yes.
allspice.
Uh-huh.
Jerk.
Yeah, Laurie's is not spicy. It's just salty.
yeah, if it's a spice, but if it's, I guess not seasoning,
That's a good-
right?
that's a
But
damn
it's
good
seasoning
question.
spice, like seasoning spice.
But that's
like,
why I'm confused at what you
Yeah.
Once
Because I would say
Once I read
Larry's.
it off,
because I can't even say onion. It's in everything.
Once I read it up, y'all
Right.
get it. Y'all ready? Number one is Scotch bonnet peppers. Number
There
one.
you go.
Okay,
Fox.
so it's
I
spice.
love Scotch bonnet.
All spices too. Foxy said it. Foxy
Oh,
Cat.
Foxy!
Allspice.
Okay.
Yeah, she cooking.
Yeah,
Time.
She
she's
cooking.
chef, yeah.
Time.
Oh,
No,
I forgot
time.
about
Yes,
time.
yes.
Ginger.
Oh,
Oh, I love
And the last
ginger.
one is nutmeg.
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 Yo, how we forget nutmeg?
And it's about to be holiday time. It's holiday time right now. Like, nutmeg is being used in everybody's sweet potato
Oh, that's a
pies.
good one. Wait, I have one more. I
shit.
promise this last
Alright,
one.
We're gonna
last
do
one.
I
GK1
promise.
after this one.
GK1.
Name a popular beverage at a black family barbecue.
Henny.
Sorrow.
Coke 45.
Damn,
Name
black
a
family.
popular beverage at a
You
black
went too
family
yardy.
barbecue.
Okay, I went
Oh,
two
okay, we
yards.
said all alcohol.
I can't.
Yeah,
I
well,
can't-
that's
yeah.
Kool-Aid.
I know
Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
said
yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Damn.
He said Kool-Aid.
Beverage.
Cola.
Beverage meaning what? Like
Any type of drink at a
Drinks,
barbecue.
nigga?
Yeah,
Kool-Aid,
that would be
Any type of drink at a
Coke,
barbecue.
Henny
Pepsi.
count?
Yeah, I count. CNC.
I'm sticking to Coke 45. Fuck that.
I'm sticking with Henny.
I'm sticking
You
to a
said
Coke
Kool-Aid.
45.
Yeah, everybody love
What did you
Kool-Aid.
say?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, you said what?
Name a popular
Kool-Aid,
beverage.
Hennessy. You said
I said Henny, yeah. You can say we're Henny with me.
It's gonna be the most
Oh, yeah.
racist shit ever. I swear to God.
I'll say.
Hometown, Sweetie, that's a good one.
That's a
Sweet
good one.
tea,
But I feel like that's more
sweet
South.
Mad Rails with Coke.
Sweet
Like,
tea.
Oh, was that
Black,
quarter
yeah,
waters?
yeah,
The quarter
yeah.
waters?
I guess
Quarter waters? Koza, how
Right.
black are you, nigga?
Right.
What the fuck? Quarter waters, nigga?
Koza get me tight.
Jay-Z rapped about that.
Koza,
Yeah.
Koza get me tight.
So
Nigga.
number one is Sweet Tea. Hometown got it. Number
Wow.
Let's go hometown.
See, you see, there's something that
Yeah.
hometown understands about
Yeah.
this game that I don't understand about
Right,
this
right.
game.
two is Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid, let's go.
Kool-Aid was like,
Well, yeah, who going to a Thanksgiving meal eating Kool-Aid? That's like kind of mad black.
Number three is lemonade.
Me. I'm going
You
to
said
somebody
me.
else
Is lemonade.
for Kool-Aid for Thanksgiving.
Lemonade
You
is
better
crazy.
have
How was-
some.
Number
how
four is soda. You said soda.
How was Kool-Aid not
And number
number
five is
one?
any adult beverage. So Hennessy,
Henny. There you go. Okay,
beer.
so we still fall on the rank.
Yeah.
Any adult beverage.
Okay,
I was
Okay,
cool.
so y'all ready to kick it off for the next game?
Yeah.
That was
Go.
good.
Yeah, that was
I
fine,
like
right?
Yeah,
Hold it
GG.
down
That was
for the
fun.
squad.
That was a lot of fun.
Add that.
That was a lot of fun.
All right, so we're gonna go through a whole big game, something I made. Every picture is something different. Y'all know how we do.
I think you lost your black card, kid.
Nah,
Did you make anything, CJ?
I, you know.
So we do that after.
It comes and goes.
All right, so you said number one, yeah?
Yeah, GK1.
Okay.
First of all, pause as soon as it starts. We got a new entrance to the show.
How cool is that?
All right.
Put it on the big screen.
All right. Looks good.
This is us. Hold on. I put this in. I typed in the structure. I did everything. I wanted to look proper with our artwork and everything. So let me know how y'all like it. All right?
Uh-huh.
All right, go ahead.
Let's go.
I like that.
That was hard.
I feel like I'm gonna use that for like going on forward for like the next.
Okay.
So three of us. You know what I'm saying?
So just send it to
And
me.
we hit the red couch.
Yep.
And welcome to the game lounge.
Yeah,
She got a controller. She got a
Yeah,
controller.
we all got controllers.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a gamer. All right, so every question, every situation, I got something ready.
Okay.
Let's go. Who's the first rapper off the list?
My favorite?
No, off.
Oh. What?
Hold on.
What was the question?
Hold on. You do guess. You answer first. Of all these legendary rappers, who's the weakest one? Who you pulling off the list first?
Oh, who am I pulling off the
Who's
list?
the first one that's not making the list? Who you think that gotta go first? We got Eminem, DMX, Nas, and Jay-Z.
So me personally, on what I listen to, would I pull off of the list based on who I listen to a lot? It being that it would only make sense because they're already established, they already have a thing. I would say DMX. Yeah. That's me personally.
He crying already.
I wouldn't get rid of
I
Nas
see the tear. I
or
see the tear.
Jay-Z.
You see that? You see that? I put that hat.
Because they had the beef. I really enjoyed their beef. I think it was good.
DMX.
I love DMX.
Favorite rapper, bro.
But look at this list. This list is fucking crazy.
It is
The first one off is
Yeah,
DMX.
I'm not getting rid of Eminem.
Flesh of my
I'm
flesh,
not getting
blood
rid
of
of
my
Jay-Z.
blood.
I'm not getting rid of Nas.
What you really want from him?
I'm not getting rid of Jay-Z or Nas. And I'm not really getting rid of M. I don't understand. I don't know what you want me to do, but that's
What you
that's
getting rid of
crazy.
first?
I'm not
Try to
good.
be
That's
mad with you.
wild.
Now it's got to go.
That's fine. It's gonna be
Nas
a toss.
gotta go.
It was gonna be a toss up between Nas or
Okay.
DMX. So
Nas gotta go.
yeah,
Nas.
For me, it's Jay-Z.
yeah, you're nuts.
I could live without Jay-Z.
Fuck
I can live without Jay-Z.
You're tripping.
I'm not
Nah,
tripping.
you're crazy, man.
You know what? I'm not
That's
tripping.
crazy.
A lot of albums
But I'm
not
slipping.
listening to.
I'm falling.
I'm low-key dying over here,
Nah.
y'all.
DMX, nigga.
Jay-Z,
I like that,
Jay-Z.
man.
You like that?
Yeah,
But damn, DMX. Why you have to choose DMX though?
I don't want to, but that's the list
That's
you
the list.
gave me.
Yeah.
I'm not getting rid of M. I'm not
Yeah,
getting rid of
GK.
O.
Look. Foxy K said y'all tripping.
Nah,
Foxy said you tripping, bro.
not getting rid of. Not getting rid of M. Not getting rid of
Bring
old.
up, so?
Get rid of Nas.
Yeah.
You said GK don't jump on Kid. They know I'm a DMX fan, son. You
Yeah.
violating right now.
K said Eminem. No, excuse me, my bad.
Eminem.
K said Nas. I'm sorry.
No,
Said not gonna lie, Nas. Cody said Nas dipping first.
Capri said
Capri
Eminem.
said Eminem.
Hometown
said Nas.
Y'all know I'm clipping this, right?
I'm a huge Eminem fan.
Who you wanna go?
I guess y'all didn't know that.
Who would be my first to go?
I'm a
Jay-Z.
huge Eminem fan. Yeah.
Jay-Z. I can live without Jay-Z. He's not in a constant rotation for me.
Right. So okay. So now let's put them
I
in
mean,
order.
when you think about the past,
Why you gotta do that?
when you think about the
past, nobody asked for.
Nope.
Nobody asked for.
Now let's put them in order.
Number one.
Best to worst.
I'll answer the question first. Number one for me first is
Clearly.
DMX.
Clearly.
The last one is Jay-Z.
Okay.
The fight is between Nas and Eminem because I respect Nas more, but I listen to more Eminem.
Okay.
You see the difference now?
Yeah.
I respect Nas more. So I'm going to go off who I respect more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go DMX, Nas, Eminem, Jay-Z.
Yeah. Like Stillmatic was such a good album.
Yeah.
It was so that I used to listen to that shit.
So hold on though. Put them in
Crazy,
order.
bro.
From first to last.
It would be Eminem.
Uh-huh.
It would be Jay-Z, Nas, DMX.
Why stop doing that? Stop doing that, bro.
I like DMX.
That don't make no sense, bro.
Yeah.
You're 40 years old. That don't make no damn sense.
For me, it's M, DMX, Jay-Z, Nas.
I can respect that.
Same thing. I'll say that.
Okay.
It'll be JM, DMX, Nas.
Okay, long DMX not last. Ash, what you got?
I say Jay-Z, Eminem, DMX, and Nas.
Long as DMX not last, whatever you say. Nobody cares.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's move
That was
on.
a good one.
What made Koza? Let's get in with people.
He said M, J, DMX, Nas.
Gluttony, you said Eminem. Is Eminem the first one off
For
the
you.
list or your number one?
It's Jay-Z, M, DMX, Nas. Good one.
T-Y
Good.
said X,
MJ.
M, J, and then Nas.
Okay, very good. Yeah, yo.
Hometown, Jay-Z, DMX,
Eminem,
and Nas.
Okay.
Long as
That's my
hometown, I
pick.
fucks with DMX.
Yeah, I
not last.
fucks with that. That's fine.
Jay-Z, Nas, MDM. Oh,
Nas,
fuck.
MDMX.
Yes,
you
that's
doing? You
my
spreading
baby.
your bullshit?
That's my baby.
You at home spreading your fuckery all over the place.
Jay-Z, Nas,
I gotta come at you right now.
I want to know.
I don't even blame Foxy. I blame your ass right now. You over there with talking
I
about
wanna know what
DMX saying,
seven- I don't
"What
know
my
what
man
seven
is
is
wrong
that.
from a nigga." What you talking about, son?
Song.
That's the best song ever. What you talking about? Somebody let me know. Come on, they wildin' right now. Mama, nigga. Come on, nigga. Ah, nigga. You see why you not the co-host, nigga?
Stop being greedy.
Give to the needy. You know what I'm saying? You're not coming back no more. This your last day. This your last day.
Because I put DMX last. I don't know.
Yeah, you're not coming back no more.
It's,
You're not you had me when you said Superman over Goku, but now you wildin'.
Nah,
now you wildin'.
I didn't really
She didn't
agree
say
to that.
Jay-Z. She
I
said
just
Jay-Z
know
husband.
that's, you know, they
It's
say
all
that.
good though.
Damn.
Let's see what we got coming up next, co-host.
Here we go. Jump in. Alrighty.
What's the first one to go? Franchise-wise.
Oh.
You got Back to the Future, Star Wars, 007, The Dark Knight.
I've seen 007.
This
I
is-
have not seen The Dark Knight.
Wait, hold on. Pause right there, everybody. Stop. Yo, you summed up my whole feelings in 1 second. How you not? You wait, hold on. Wait a minute. I thought you was a real nigga. Are you from Brooklyn?
I don't want.
This nigga's from Memphis or some shit. I don't know. You from upstate?
I watch
You wear your Timbs with the laces tight.
Nah.
You one of those niggas.
Nah.
You never seen? There's 3 of them, nigga.
I never seen any of them, and they on my list. I just haven't got.
What do you mean? I don't want to hear that bullshit. The movies is 40 years old.
That's crazy, bro.
It's on your list, bro.
They like 10 years old. Them just
10?
came out like
10, bro. He tried me just now. He said 10.
Nah.
10.
when them shits came out.
A long time ago. Back in the day.
I
All right, so wait, hold on. We're gonna let the guests go first. What's the first movie that gotta go? That's the question.
What's the first movie you had?
Goated. I know. I put
Oh.
Goats up there. I put Goats up there. What's the first movie that the first trash off the list?
I like. I mean, I would say Back to the Future. There you go. That's an
Off
easy
the
one.
list?
Yeah, off the list.
Damn.
Marty McFly.
Look at Star
Marty
Wars.
McFly.
Star Wars is a whole like.
I'm not
It's
gonna
a
hold
whole.
you,
First
kid.
one was good to me.
Only the first one.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna get you.
like Star Wars 007 is a whole thing. Batman is a whole.
Hold on.
Like,
hold on. So
Back
Marty
to the Future is
McFly.
like 2 movies, right?
Three. Hold on. Get your facts right. Go watch the movies, bro. Michael J. Fox, okay? Get your Biff. You don't remember Biff?
Nobody's getting rid of Star Wars. No one's getting rid of 007.
You don't know that. You don't know that. Can I give you my list right now? Star Wars is gone, nigga.
That means you're not like.
I can live without.
Okay.
I can live without Star Wars.
So I haven't watched.
Give me Marty McFly.
I haven't watched Star Wars. I watched episode.
Okay, why are you
4.
here?
I watched episode 4.
Why is he on the game?
I watched episode 4.
Hold on, wait a minute.
No,
I'm about to come at this nigga. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
I watched the first Back to the Future and I watched episode 4. It was 4, 5, 6. That's the order it came out.
But you've never seen Dark Knight and you've never seen Star Wars.
No, me. Episode 4.
That's the only Star Wars you've seen.
And half of episode 5.
You don't count.
No, I do. I like Star Wars. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
No, I'm telling you.
It was awesome.
No.
Yeah, Luke Star.
No.
Yeah, nah.
Don't tell me about no
That was
Luke.
great.
Don't tell me about no
It
Luke.
was good.
This nigga right here pissing me off. He's making me mad right now.
I forget what episode it is, but the Darth Maul one, with the red face one.
Yes. So, CJ, what's your list? What's the first I gotta go?
I'm with Kid.
It's a long ass franchise.
Back to the Future
Back to
gotta
the
go,
Future.
man.
Exactly. This is just logical.
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
It's gone. Ash.
007.
Nah, 007 is so
Bond.
good.
James Bond, nigga.
Green Apple Martini, shaking not stirred.
Shaking not stirred, nigga.
It's like the movies are just like classic cool,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
cheesy
yeah.
cool. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's crazy.
It's like the other Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
you know what
like
I mean?
it's
I'm going, so I can't pick.
Nah, you gotta pick somebody,
No,
bro.
what?
Nah, we're not doing that tonight.
Jeff said,
we're not
no,
doing
I
that
can't.
tonight.
I
No. You showed up, you gotta answer, nigga. Fuck out of here. What you got, nigga?
And I mean delete out the universe.
It's gone.
Never made.
I can live without Star Wars. It's my first vote.
That's crazy.
It's
So
not
many,
crazy.
so many people.
That's not a hot take.
So many people will put you in the ground for that answer.
What you mean? I'd rather watch Back to the Future than fucking Star Wars, bro.
That's crazy. You
What you
haven't.
mean?
You didn't watch Star Wars.
I watch
then.
all the. I watch more Star Wars than you, nigga.
So how can you say that? Why do
Nah.
people love it so much?
Because
then?
because y'all niggas like powers all the time. I want to fast.
So you can't say that because I fucking recommended Death Note and you was like, oh, it's a brain anime. Oh yeah, oh nerds, oh you nerds, oh you brain guys. That's not a real anime. It's a talk show. Like, no, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. No, get the fuck out of here. No, Get the fuck out of here. I don't want to hear that shit. No.
I'm not trying to obliterate my enemy by writing a poem about him. Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out of here. I don't
You
like.
don't even gotta write the poem. Like, oh, you talking shit, fam?
Yeah, y'all
Yeah,
like
get outta
powers.
here.
You supposed to love Star Wars is like the
Nah.
epitome of powers. They say
Nah.
like Darth
It's
Maul
not.
could beat like
It's not.
fight Superman. Like he's mad strong. You know?
Why would you say
Yeah.
that? Why would you say
Because
that?
that's what they say. Apparently, the Force is mad
Who
strong.
the fuck is they, bro?
Like I don't know.
Who the fuck said
But
Darth Maul?
I just-
Nah, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Everybody stop.
No, people
I need
say,
everybody to
no,
stop.
People say Darth Maul.
I need everybody to stop.
If you re-
Hold on. Hold on. Wait a minute.
I heard.
He said some shit that don't even make sense.
Nah, I
Darth
heard.
Maul can take on Superman.
I heard
What is he
that.
gonna do?
I don't know.
Lightsaber him to death,
That's
bro?
What, people
What is he
say.
gonna do?
I don't know this.
My
I don't
nigga
know the
like,
series.
You
but
don't
I'm
believe
sure
that.
there's
You don't believe that.
fans.
You don't believe that. You don't believe that.
No, I do.
You don't. Darth Maul will take on Superman.
I don't know how strong the Force is. I don't
You
know.
don't-
You don't know how
stop.
strong that shit
Stop
is.
it, bro. Stop.
What you mean? Stop!
You poke the demon out.
You don't know how strong it is.
I told him, I leaned in.
I don't know.
What I'm
They
saying is,
apparently, they said
what
like
I'm saying
no.
is, this dumb
Wait,
shit
wait,
don't
wait,
even
wait.
make sense.
Wait.
Darth Maul
Wait,
to take on Superman is what I'm saying. Is what he's over here fighting with right now.
I heard. Oh, the Darth Vader. No, who's the strongest nigga?
Bro, they
Who's
put
the
Darth
strongest?
Vader up with
Who's
Batman,
who's stronger,
bro.
Vader or Maul?
Vader.
Vader is stronger, right?
Vader's strong, yeah.
Yeah. Because he's supposed to be mad strong. I don't know.
Look at Cliff. Cliff said
Call out the business.
I'm so mad. I don't even know how to start explaining myself. I don't even know.
I don't know. That's what people say.
First of all, let me tell you,
Huh?
Darth Vader is not Clark Kent's father. You know that's not gonna work.
But you see, But Superman is dependent on the sun.
NBC
No,
got
bro,
a deal for
no,
you?
bro, he's had one. Because if
Superman
you take him to a
fight
red,
gods,
if
bro.
you take him to a red sun,
Superman
he's
fight-
nothing.
Superman
He's
fight
like a
gods.
human, right?
Fight gods. Then he's not Superman. He's just mad.
He's just man.
He's just mad.
Yeah, I'm
I
around a
was gonna
red
say,
sun.
NBC
You
got
know what I'm saying?
nothing
Around, I give you that.
Right.
Around a red sun,
Yeah,
he's a
yeah,
regular
right.
nigga.
He's just a
But we
regular
talking about the
nigga.
nigga we call Superman.
Yeah.
Stop
Right.
the bullshit, bro.
But it's so.
No, stop the bullshit, bro. Stop it, bro.
But he has a weakness.
Stop it.
What is Darth? Is that Darth Vader has a weakness?
Everything that Superman can do is his weakness. I can rip you apart. I can speed blitz you. I got laser beams. You can't see me. Do I need to continue, my nigga?
I know, but kryptonite.
Darth Vader got kryptonite in his pocket.
You don't know
That's
what
what
he.
we doing
You don't
now?
know what he
That's
know.
what we doing.
You don't know.
That's what we
You don't
doing.
know what he know. He
lifesaver.
don't they
know?
don't they go around
Fuck
different
that.
planets and
Fuck that,
and
fuck that.
and
If
and
that
be
what
on
we're doing,
some
right?
freezer shit, right?
Do
Don't-
you know
don't-
that
don't
the new
mostly-
hold look
Vader
that
be
the
on some
new
freezer
writing of
shit, right?
Superman, their version of that kryptonite has no effect.
No effect.
You don't know that.
Oh,
They are writings of Superman where he's so elevated that kryptonite has no effect. So we're not doing that. Stop it. Stop it.
I told
Stop it,
you.
my guy. Cut
When
it
you
out.
said it,
You
I
said
said,
Darth
my
Vader
sweater
versus
right up
Superman,
here to
my
my
guy.
nose. It was
You
like,
got no
ooh.
talk point, my nigga.
He pressed the Superman
Like
button.
Superman woke up in the morning and they're like, yo, some nigga in Darth Vader's looking for you. He's like, yeah, I'm going to work. I'm about to go clock in.
I wish I could pull one of them Reddit
You can't
niggas
pull nothing,
to come.
man. No, they don't
to
pull
come,
nothing, bro.
to come talk.
What are you pulling, my nigga?
I don't know.
Why
I
are
don't
we
know.
even still
I don't
talking
know.
about this?
No. We can move.
This is
on.
crazy. This is crazy.
You really a Superman fan. That's
Bro,
crazy.
listen, I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
If you
how
mention,
many times you seen the recent movie? The recent Superman movie?
I've seen it like 3 times.
Damn. In theaters?
Once in theaters, 3 times at home.
Wow.
2 times
you
at home.
really
sorry.
a Superman fan. That's crazy.
Let me tell you something. Right now. Let me tell you something. Right. You looking at me? If you're gonna do it, we're gonna do it when you mention Superman, bro. Or I'm not gonna let nobody slide. I'm not letting Superman slide right now.
Okay.
Henry
That's why
Cavill
I
could be
actually
sitting
go
right
for
here.
Superman.
Alright.
And if he says Superman and shit, I'm arguing with that nigga and he played Superman.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not gonna happen right here.
GK,
It's
GK,
Yeah.
that's my nigga GK, MYO General. That's
General, what's going
that's
on?
my best
I appreciate
friend,
you, General.
Best friend for years. I know him at GK. That's my nigga GK.
I appreciate you for
GK
popping
Next
it.
slide, damn it.
What's the next slide? Because you said something.
He a Superman
Hold on,
fan too.
chat-
That's
chat-
why he
chat was saying
laughing.
a lot.
Let's
Chat
try
was
to
saying a
chat.
lot, so let me just catch
Yeah,
the chat.
let CJ do his thing. You good?
Foxy said Back to the Future was a classic. Kit said, T.Y. said Kit never seen Dark Knight is
Right, you
crazy.
see a brown door.
Okay.
Cliff said you're wilding because you're living in nostalgia of a childhood movie.
Who?
Cliff said this.
Who's living in nostalgia
I
of a
guess he's
childhood
talking
movie?
about.
He has to be talking about him.
Kit, yeah,
For me, Back to the Future was more like Back to the Lockers off the bird.
yeah.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Bigfoot said, "Big guy, you was absent last week. You're fired." Damn.
Damn, Bigfoot don't forget nothing. You're a motherfucker,
Wait,
yo.
no, I was here last week. Wasn't I? Yeah.
No.
Always here.
Damn,
He was here.
damn.
He was here.
Damn.
He was here. He was here.
I just felt the spit hit my bit. You're fired.
Yeah.
Damn, bro.
Yeah, that's fucked up. They remember.
Like,
Chat don't forget nothing.
Damn, that's crazy, bro.
Chat-
Damn.
Big Mouth don't figure that. Big Mouth.
Yo,
don't
Big
figure
Mouth.
that.
Yeah, Big Mouth.
Big
Straight
Mouth.
up.
Big Mouth figure nothing, bro.
That's my guy, Bigfoot, though. Bigfoot 52. He talk a lot of shit, but he show up.
Yeah, he said the new Superman was ass.
Yeah, he
We're
said
not
the
doing
big
that right
spit.
now.
We're not doing that today.
You just gave him wins. He said that. We're not doing that.
You saw that.
Oh,
Back
yeah,
to the
yeah.
Future 2 and 3?
Huh? I saw every Back to the Future, bro.
Don't count. 2 and 3 was mid. First one was the best one.
First one was the best one. Absolutely. There's no argument that. The first one was the best one. I feel like 2 and 3 was like capitalized on the
Yeah.
franchise.
Cliff ready to argue.
Absolutely.
Cliff ready to argue. He said this man said Superman can be God, which is wildest comment
Superman
I
can
ever
be
heard.
who?
God.
God.
I'm trying to get him started.
I said, y'all want to keep it the Superman button.
Hey,
when
Cliff, you
when
got
Kit
it.
said it, I said, ooh.
You got
My whole sweater went right here. I was like, ooh, he said
Well, he
hit
said
the Superman
Darth
button.
Vader,
No.
though.
Yeah.
It's not even like he said, like,
Oh, Big Brooklyn's in the chat.
Big
Brooklyn,
yeah,
my man.
He said, I'm just putting my kids back to the future.
I got
All
you,
three of
BT.
them. All 3 of y'all.
We're going to finish this game, then we're going to play CJ's game, then we're going to get to your game.
Yeah,
What we got?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The footage too. Yeah.
I have the footage. Cliff, shut up.
But
let me segue real quick.
But my nigga right here,
Yeah.
like I got something up on the TV right here.
Yeah.
Like, really, my nigga, like
Yeah.
yeah.
But let me segue
Let me
real
see
quick.
that.
Everybody, I got a big announcement.
What's up?
Starting this week. I mean, announcement this week.
Right.
Workshop Wednesdays is back on.
Woo!
And I got the build right here to show you.
Right.
6 o'clock, right?
6 p.m. from 6 to 8. What we used to do is Workshop Wednesdays.
Yes.
Where we got a double camera setup. I mean, before you leave, we got a
Yeah.
one on the board, what I'm building, and the instructions, and the one on me.
Yeah.
We build together.
Okay.
So starting this Wednesday again, we're starting Workshop Wednesday back up. Now GK done went out of the way and bought some extra shit.
No,
we leveling
extra,
up.
Extra.
Everybody remember the first time we did Workshop Wednesday.
I got Grandum.
We got Grandpa Gundam. He over there. He pulling up.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna show y'all the new build. We're gonna build a spaceship inside of a station.
Oh my god,
That's gonna be tough.
Oh god.
Damn, chat, y'all can't really see it. It's a spaceship inside the space station, and everything is mechanical. It moves.
Right.
So starting this Wednesday at 6 p.m., we're starting back up Workshop Wednesdays.
Elon Musk right here, man, building spaceships and shit.
What's this? I used to have a thing called Workshop Wednesdays where I build. And first time we build a Gundam. Starting this Wednesday at 6 o'clock, we're starting back again. We're going to build a whole spaceship and a space station and everything.
Wow, that's good. That's really cool.
How many pieces does it say? 446?
446
404. And this one has electrical pieces.
Ooh.
Wow.
Because stuff in the station moves by itself. And lights, it has lights that light up, and it's a fully blown.
But you can't call
really
you can't
cool.
call me because you're the illumination LED specialist, so you don't need me.
Like, I got this.
Oh.
So this Wednesday at Workshop Wednesday.
That's such a cool thing.
Yeah. We got it's Space Shuttle Space Exploration. DIY, do it yourself. We're
really
starting
awesome.
this Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Tune in.
Right. Okay.
Let's continue. Stop. This is
why
gonna be.
you doing this, son?
This is gonna be beautiful.
Why you doing this?
I ain't asked the question yet. Hold on. I didn't ask the question yet.
I feel
Where's
it,
my
I
cup?
feel it.
Damn, I'm almost out of shit. This is everything here is movie first. No comics, no cartoons, no animation.
Okay.
Movie. Everybody you see up here is live action. We
This
got.
third movie not out yet though.
Who's winning?
Hold on. We got Blade.
Two of them don't have a third movie yet.
Hold
though.
on. No, it's the whole franchise as a whole. It's Blade.
I want to know the question.
The
Nah, but
question.
they got 3 movies. I'm saying.
Bro, can I?
Okay,
Let me get it out. Let me get it out. He's excited. Here's the question.
Hold on, I got to correct you. Hold on.
Blade is going through the gauntlet starting with Ben Affleck's Batman.
Oh, he couldn't ban after Batman.
Hold on. We're going to see how many wins he stack up as he goes through the gauntlet. So the first fight is Blade versus Ben Affleck. Batman.
Before I answer this is movie Blade.
Movie.
Can you give me a refresher on Blade's powers and abilities?
He's half vampire, half human.
That's
Or he's
it.
a vampire that could he's a daywalker.
He's a daywalker.
So the things that kill your regular
Silver Bullet kill him.
Sunlight
Silver
don't kill him.
Sunlight don't kill him.
Silver
Garlic kill
Bullet.
him.
Silver Bullet is for werewolves, not vampires.
Okay, fine.
He's super strong, super fast.
Okay.
He regenerates.
Okay.
He has superb karate abilities. He's trained.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's above strength.
And his
Big
first
Brooklyn.
opponent is
killing
Batman.
Ben
Starting
Affleck.
the gauntlet.
Killing Ben Affleck.
The first opponent is
Okay,
Blade.
Ben Affleck. Because
Ben
not
Affleck.
comic Batman.
No.
I see.
Not Ben
I
Affleck.
see.
Everything here is live action.
Okay.
No comics.
Okay, so yeah.
So it's Blade versus Batman.
I'm with Big
Ben-
Brooklyn. I'm with Big Brooklyn.
What Big Brooklyn said, Jeff. I mean,
He said Blade versus Ben Affleck equal Blade whooping that ass.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Blade.
Okay.
Blade got it.
What you think, sis?
Blade.
What you think?
Blade.
What you think?
Blade.
Okay, I'm going Blade. So he gets past Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
Captain America.
And Captain America stomps him so
Severely.
hard. Captain America beats him into the fucking.
I don't agree.
Are you?
I don't necessarily
That's mad
agree.
crazy.
I don't
That's
necessarily
mad
agree.
crazy. Captain America is
I think he can
He's a
outfight Cap.
fast
Captain
tank.
America is
I think he
watching.
can outfight Cap,
No,
and I
he
think
can't.
he's strong enough to defend himself.
That's just saying that a vampire is stronger than the super serum.
Super soldier.
Yeah,
Super
super
soldier.
soldier, bro. What have you seen Blade do, son? Blade he's fast and shit.
All of his opponents are above average people. He's fighting vampires and demons.
Yeah, but Captain America would still beat those
He's
niggas like in the
superheroes,
dirt,
bro.
Like,
Like, he's
yeah, this is
superheroes
yeah,
are
but superhero.
But let's see what chat's saying.
Blade is a low tier superhero coasting.
So, Cliff said Blade will lose to Spider-Man and Black Panther. Big Brooklyn said Blade has all the vamp strength and none of the weaknesses.
There you go. Everything that a vampire is, he is with none of the weakness.
Okay, that's fine.
Mad
Captain
Wells.
America is still beating that ass.
Mad Wells, I
Yeah,
think
Cap
the
is
same thing.
cooking Blade. He's cooking
Katie
it, bro.
said, yeah, Blade. T.Y. said, Cap cooks.
Yeah, Cap cooks.
I
Cap
said, Big Brooklyn said, I
son.
disagree. Blade is violating Cap.
I think Blade's
Cliff
winning.
highly disagree that.
He won't kid,
Closer
no.
said Cap is cooking Blade.
If we talking about movie verse, I'm going with Blade.
You going with Blade?
Big Brooklyn said, nah, Blade is cooking Cap.
I don't know.
Cap is too noble. Blade don't give a fuck.
Cap ain't ever seen Black Panther.
Bigfoot said he not whooping Cap by. He not whooping Cap.
No, we talking about Blade, Rels. Yeah, it's Blade versus Cap.
Blade got past Batman, now it's Blade versus Cap.
Ain't ever seen Black Panther, and I'm thinking Blade and Black Panther about the same.
Yeah.
Good point.
Blade and Black Panther about the same.
Okay, Kaden said, nah, I think
don't
Blade
know,
will
man. I
cook
really
Cap.
don't know.
Cap is too noble, but also arrogant. He definitely get his
All
ass
right.
beat by
Okay,
Blade.
so let's vote.
I don't
Does
think
Blade get
so.
past Cap? He got past Batman. Does he get past Cap?
No.
I'm going Blade. I'm Team
going with
Blade.
Cap.
I'm going Cap.
I'm going with Cap, man. Cap, and on top of that, Cap is gonna be holding back.
Wow.
Cap is gonna be holding
What
back.
chat saying? Chat
Cap
count.
is not gonna be trying to kill him.
Who's saying
He gonna be
Blade
trying to
or
stop
who's
him.
saying Cap?
Yeah,
I'm
we
saying Blade.
Cap.
I'm going Blade.
We said Cap.
Cap.
Damn, Cap wins.
Koza said Cap, but Rel said that's Cap.
And the rest is just tomfoolery. at this
Wait,
point.
wait, hold on now. We talking about that Tom Holland Spider-Man?
Yeah.
I think Blade beating him.
No.
I think he's just
Spider-Man. I think not that Spider-Man.
Blade is not beating. He's not beating.
T'Challa.
No, he's not beating T'Challa.
No.
He's
T'Challa.
definitely not
He's not
beating
beating
Spider-Man.
T'Challa. I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Sense, gang.
I don't know about
The
that, yo.
web, he can swing him.
I might give y'all
What can
that.
he do?
He
I might
faster,
give
bro.
y'all that. I don't want to argue too much on that point.
Yeah, nah.
But the first two, Batman's done, and so's Captain America.
Yeah. I guess that Batman don't have the prep time like everybody
Batman's
say,
done,
right?
and so's Captain America.
Everyone loves saying that prep time shit.
Bigfoot said Blade couldn't even get through the shield.
Yeah, he can't get through
You don't
the
have to get
shield.
through the
That's
shield.
what I'm saying.
Blade's
yo.
faster than him.
No, he's not.
Bigfoot said,
How do
nah,
you
he
know
definitely
that?
not fucking.
Even
with
if
Black
he's
Panther.
faster, like I feel like he's a
faster than
super
Cap.
soldier, so he can see him and
think
react.
Blade is
to
faster
him.
Nah, bro, because Blade also regenerate.
I think Blade is definitely faster than Cap, but he can't.
He's not
And he
gonna-
can fight. Blade is a martial artist, bro.
Yo, Cap is so strong. You're
Nah,
underestimating
I'm
how
not
strong-
underestimating Cap. I know who Cap. One of my favorite heroes is Cap.
Yeah.
But I think in a random encounter, this is all random
I've
encounters.
never seen Blade speed like that. Like how y'all saying he's so much faster. Like I've
He's
never
faster
seen
in martial
like,
arts, but not
vampire-
like if a straight
physics.
sprint. He's not sprinting
Right. I
faster
give you
than
that.
Cap.
I can argue with that.
Because on
I
a
can
straight
argue with
run,
that. Okay.
Cap is on your ass.
But Blade also not really
Blade
getting
can
tired
phase in
either.
and out and do certain
Blade
shit.
ain't getting tired either. He's not getting tired either.
Nah.
He
So
can-
how he be so weak sometimes in his fucking?
What you
like,
mean so weak?
When he be
But fighting who? Who made him weak? He beat Dracula. Let's be real.
King of Vampires.
He beat Dracula.
I feel like he be hurting. So.
Bro, when he was hurt, bro got shot up and all that and
Cliff
ended up
said-
in a pool of blood and he was good after that.
Cliff said
Back
Blade
in the
is
fight.
stronger and faster.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm telling you.
That's what he feel, yeah.
Blade is beating Cap, bro.
Koza says Spider-Man
guess-
is the final boss in this whole situation.
I think Black Panther's the final boss. I
Nah,
think Blade can get past
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Nah, Spider-Man.
Here's the reason why. Blade can cut and chop and hurt Spider-Man. He's not getting past that vibranium suit.
Blade can't touch
can't touch him.
Spider-Man.
You gotta be able to touch him
Personally,
first.
you gotta be
Spider
able.
sense-
But I think Blade is not a regular
Versatility.
speed
Blade-
person. He's fast.
Blade. That don't
Blade is
matter.
fast.
It don't matter that the fucking spider sense make you move on your own.
I don't know. I'm going Blade all the way up to Black Panther.
Kitty said why Batman's on this list. Fact, Kitty.
Why Batman is on this list? That's funny.
All right, we see. So we can all agree that one.
Nah, Captain
Blade-
America
Blade-
is gonna.
Blade is beating
Get the fuck
Batman,
outta
but the
here.
rest of it, nah, we got a problem.
What happens is I just didn't know you had so much fucking belief in Blade.
Nah, but this is why I put the movie verse, not the comics.
The
movie
I
version.
suppose, yeah.
That's how I balanced it out.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
I guess
If
so.
I went comics, then it's a whole different battle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
Everybody talk about Spider-Man.
Spider-Man is ultimate
too fast.
final boss.
Nah,
He's cooking
nah.
Blade.
Nah,
Spider-Man
not
number one,
Tom
period.
Holland. Not Tom Holland.
What?
Spider-Man.
Oh my god.
Not Tom Holland.
Tom Holland's a beast.
Nah, not Tom Holland.
Tom Holland a beast.
I'm talking. T'Challa is whooping his ass.
No, he's not.
That vibranium suit, that sword, not doing nothing.
I know he's not. Any hits that Spider-Man receives he's receiving them because it's not doing nothing.
That's bullshit.
Anything
He got a
that's
sword.
life-threatening.
That sword. That's a sword. Get out of here.
He's gonna be
Get
dodging
outta
that
here.
shit.
Get out of here.
Crazy?
Get out of here.
Just like this over
Get out of
his
here.
whole
Get out of
face.
here.
Yeah, saying he gonna be
All right.
dodging, catching the sword
wait,
like
okay,
this.
so boom.
Snapping his shit.
So
like, you
boom.
know what I'm saying?
So Blade is 2-2.
One.
I would give him a.
He's beating this side.
I would give
I'd say
him
he's
a
only
maybe.
beating Batman, not
Nah,
Cap.
he's beating Cap.
We all
Cap,
beating Cap. is
I
whooping
would
his
say
ass.
I would say Cap is 50-50. If you want to give him
beat Cap.
50, so he's like a 1.5.
All right.
1.5.
All right, let's see what we got next then. This is a good one. Would you rather get rid of sports or music?
Sports.
Damn.
Yeah,
I'm
bias
a
is-
whole DJ, bro. I can't get rid of music. Like,
Music is way too
Emotion,
important.
like,
Music is way too more important, and people get hurt from sports. No one gets hurt from music. Nobody.
We can just go into this.
I mean,
It's
yeah,
sport.
I know,
Careful.
like carpal tunnel,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
shit like
It's
fingers.
no, I was just saying
Yeah,
the
shit like
heavy
that.
metal headband
Yeah,
dudes and they in the
yeah.
mosh pit swinging.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
true.
they hurting each other.
But
just
I'm getting
listen
rid
to
of
music,
sports.
bro.
I'm getting rid of sports.
Sports one. Sports is loser, I mean.
Yeah, sports lost.
Let's just move to the next one.
Yeah, I know. Next one. That was easy.
Who's the first guy gotta go?
Who has to go?
Who's the first one off the list? We got Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, John Cena, and Shawn Michaels.
Damn. Oh, that's
Stone Cold can go easy.
What?
Nah,
yes,
You
Stone
bugging. You
Yeah.
bugging. You bugging.
Stone
For
Cold.
me,
Stone Cold.
For me,
ass, yeah,
for me,
bro.
the first nigga out is John Cena.
Nah, John Cena guy.
I don't
He's
really
talented
like
on
him,
all
but I know
levels.
people like him.
I'm not talking about what people like. I'm talking about for me.
He's talented on all levels.
That's great.
I like John Cena
I
over
do too,
316.
That's
Stone
crazy
Cold
work.
Steve
Talking about like as like
Really?
Koza is hilarious. I see Shawn, Undertaker, and Stone Cold.
See,
Why
watch that
is
kid
there
get out.
nobody
He's
in
like,
the
"Can't get
Bible?
out."
Koza, you hilarious for that.
I know. How can we see John Cena?
There's nobody there. I forgot to put
I know.
him
He
there.
should have been a great. It should have been great.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't get rid of switching music. Come on.
You could.
DX?
I know.
Nah. This bold ass could go.
Nah. Damn, I don't know.
You wild for that.
Nah, I think I'm gonna get rid of
wild as
Cena.
fuck
I
for
think I'm gonna
that.
get rid of Cena. I think I'm gonna get rid of Cena.
I'm going Cena gotta go.
I think I'm gonna get rid of Cena.
Y'all gonna hate me.
I think so.
You going Shawn Michaels?
No, not
too.
Shawn
He
Michaels,
gotta
bro.
go, bro.
Nah. Shawn
Sweet
Michaels.
chin music?
Nah, you can't. You can't. Nah, you can't.
Who you got, Jeff?
Yo, Stone Cold.
Nah, you gotta pick, nigga.
The Rock forever's been my number one. Stone Cold was always my number two, and Undertaker's
The
been
Rock's my
my
number
three.
one. I mean, Stone Cold's my number one. That's my
So
guy.
it's
Damn, but what about Shawn Michaels?
I'm
Shawn Michaels is always like
Remember that, son? You was a kid.
7, 8, 9. I'm like, ooh, all right.
Michaels is
If we go
like-
longevity,
I fuck with Triple H
Nah.
more than
Whatever
Shawn
you wanna
Michaels.
go
That's
with.
crazy, right?
Who's the
Like,
first one off the list?
it's between HBK and Cena for me.
Which one gotta go? You gotta pick one.
Gotta go
Nah, Undertaker can't go BT.
Nah, Undertaker can't.
Undertaker is like, nah.
Undertaker got longevity.
Yeah.
Hell nah.
You going HBK?
WrestleMania God?
I'm
Yeah,
like going HBK.
that shit was
You
chill.
keep it John
like, his
Cena,
shit-
nigga?
His
John
intro
Cena
coming out the fucking.
Wow.
It take like legit 6 minutes for him to. He only do the whole intro.
Son, when I was a kid, I didn't think he was human.
No.
Made Koza said, look what Koza said.
Nah, I think
Koza said, let's judge this on entrance, franchise.
Finishers, and longevity.
Mhm.
Okay.
Other shows.
So
Okay.
entrances, oh
HBK
my
has
god,
the-
Undertaker
it's like-
best
yeah,
entrance.
yeah.
Undertaker best entrance.
Undertaker #1, then HBK gotta be 2 on entrances.
Yeah.
Stone Cold just come running through with that glass.
Foxy said,
Didn't he come out on a motorcycle one time?
Foxy said Cena gotta go.
Yeah, he came out on a
Bro came out
motorcycle.
with a truck and moved the ring.
Yeah. So Austin, right? Yeah. So I would say Cena is the weakest. And in terms of entrances, he got a good
Yeah,
open.
no HBK slender or loud. I feel you,
Foxy
Foxy.
is crazy.
I feel you, Foxy. I feel you.
But I don't know.
Cash,
Shawn
what's
Michaels-
up, 90?
Shawn
Hey,
Michaels
guys,
didn't
yeah,
really
what's
have
up, bro?
anything. Like back then, it was a
I kinda
little
understand what
different.
you're saying.
You know
I
what I'm
understand
saying?
what
Shawn
you're saying.
Michaels, it was like limitations back then. Like they started to like really develop in a soap opera, you know, outside kind of
I
shit. You know what
understand
I'm
what you're saying.
saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
so, it's hard.
HBK was like the sex symbol at the time when he was
Whoa,
in it,
whoa,
but then
whoa.
after
Yeah.
a while, Val Venus kind of became the sex
But he was just
symbol.
kinda like
he was in the
extra.
shower with every one of the girls.
BT Gamer said
Val
Cena.
Venus.
Val, yeah.
BT Gamer said Cena is the GOAT.
No.
Nah, get him out of here.
No.
Get him out of
His
here.
acting ability is amazing.
Nah, get him out of here.
All right, that's what we got next.
He's the,
Down to the old
he's,
levels.
he's the second one other than The Rock to actually do movies and still be relevant.
Who?
Cena.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're talking about outside of that, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. For that, I'll
On
say
this
to go
list,
wild,
it's
to go
Cena
wild.
then Stone Cold. In terms of movies.
Cena and Stone Cold. Okay,
Stone
so that
Cold
was
been in a
just
few
for-
movies.
that
You
was
want to
for-
talk about movies?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the last
I like them in Longest
category
Yard.
you're gonna do it?
He did a few. He got a few. He's starring a few, actually.
Mm.
What was the last category
What Cliff
that
picked?
Koza
Cliff
said?
picked?
It was entrances.
Entrances, finishers, and longevity.
So the finishers. I love Undertaker finisher. Was it Tombstone?
Nah, the Stone Cold Stunner is the shit.
Because Kane's was chokeslam.
Yeah.
Stone Cold Stunner is the shit.
Yeah,
Stone
you
Cold
stunned
Stunner.
anybody, it was cool. Kick him in the nuts, hit him
Yeah,
with
the
the
Stone Cold Stunner was
Stunner
the
was
shit.
also high school too.
Rosa
So,
said
yeah.
Cena is Dookie Booty.
That's my boy Peacemaker.
Wow.
Peacemaker is making some waves on the DC side, though.
Who?
Peacemaker.
Oh, no, that's a good show.
Peacemaker, yeah,
It's a good
yeah.
show.
Fire.
It's a good show. Shit's fire. Yeah,
This
facts.
is a good actor, man. I don't know.
He's not bad. He came a long way.
Yeah.
Came a long way. I actually met him. Shook his hand and everything.
Oh, yeah?
He used to come down to NBC all the time when I used to work there.
Oh, that shit had me hard.
This
He
nigga
was stocked then.
hand is humongous.
Yeah.
Humongous.
You always have that smirk on his face, too, right?
He's a cool dude, though. I ain't gonna front. He cool people. All right, let's see what we got next.
He just always require like permission. Hey, ask me. Don't
Right.
just
Yeah, he cool.
run
He
up
cool.
on me with the phone. Hey, Cena, can I take a picture?
Yeah, he cool.
Yeah.
Bro.
By the time I saw him, he's already in the building and settled and all that.
Right.
Pause. Fight Gauntlet. Master Splinter.
Oh. I don't know.
Hold on.
What's
Hold
that
on.
fame
Hold
law?
on.
That's
Hold
fame law.
on. Master Splinter, his first opponent is the Green Arrow.
He killing Green Arrow.
I think Green Arrow's done too.
Yeah, he gonna call the roll on his
Yeah,
ass.
he does over. Then his second opponent is Fei Long from Street Fighter.
He gonna whoop Fei Long ass
He
too.
go for the lines.
He's Master Splinter.
I'm not too sure about that one.
I think he beats all.
Street
son.
Fighter people is above average strength. They kick down trees and
I
shit.
hear you.
I think he
But-
beats all, son.
Master Splinter is
Yeah.
a mutated rat.
Let me see what
He
chat
gets
saying.
shot.
Let's see what
Yeah,
chat
yeah.
saying.
Bullets?
Yeah,
We all know he
I
gets past Arrow.
He gets shot. It's
Yeah.
over. He ain't getting no bullets now.
It's
Oh,
a
Master
sweep.
Splinter?
Splinter sweeping all of them.
See,
son.
Matt
He
Arell.
been shot before, yeah.
Look, Matt Arell
the
said.
Turtles especially.
Look,
been
Matt
shot.
Arell said Fei Long got it. I think that's a
Fei
fight.
Long.
It's a fight.
Nah. Splinter gonna whoop that ass. He gonna try that little Bruce Lee flyer kick shit, and he just gonna grab that ankle and Master C
I can
his
go-
ass
I
out of here.
can go spin on that
Get your
one.
ass out of here.
I can go spin on that one. I can go spin on that one.
I guess.
So Splinter cleared the first two.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So where we going with
Fei
Punisher?
Long-
I know Master
Punisher.
And now we got guns and bombs and long distance.
Right, that's the thing. Punisher is a destructive fighter.
Punisher is mad different.
He's a destructive fighter. Nothing between shooting and bombs and all of that shit. He's going for the kill.
It would have to be plot armor to make Splinter win.
Right.
You got a rocket launcher.
Not really, because if he can get close to you like anybody else could, he's not the first time somebody ran up on him.
Yeah.
But why would he even get close to? How can he close the gap on Green Arrow? Like how?
That's true too, because
When the
A-Cash.
wolf, like he's in that rat
Yeah, he's a
form,
rat.
He gets under shit.
He's still a rat.
My thing for it is with Punisher, he has to get to him fast and hit and bust his neck.
But he meant still.
Nah, he's fast. Remember, he could go rat mode.
Yeah,
Right.
He can go full on rat mode.
Yeah.
If he gets close to him and chop him,
You talking
Punisher's
about
going
fighting abilities? It's Spinner. Long distance abilities, it's Punisher.
Right.
If he
Question-
can get a couple of shots
Question
off,
was Master Splinter versus everybody.
yeah.
Yeah, so
it's a gauntlet.
Yeah,
So it's
Master
a gauntlet,
Splinter
yeah.
versus everyone.
and then Batman last person.
Yeah,
So Master
starting
Splinter
with
versus
Green
Batman.
Arrow and then Fei Long.
He can beat Batman. Like,
I think he
fighting
can.
ability?
I think he's gonna
Yes.
whoop his ass.
I think he'll whoop his ass.
Wow, that's actually crazy.
I think Batman would have a problem against
Yo,
Punisher.
how strong is this fucking rat, bro?
Kinda strong.
He's mutated.
Bro, he's
That was
trained
so
the turtles.
That mean a rat is strong as a human.
Yes.
That's
Not just
what the
strong.
fuck. He's not like
Nah.
strong like Superman. Like
No, not Superman.
Yeah.
but
It's also-
he's mutated from all that shit that they
like
had.
a rat
Like the
can't
turtle-
beat me now.
No.
But a mutated rat, I can scrap with. Like how strong
A
can you?
mutated rat might chest check your shit, break your whole shit right in here.
I'm
bro.
not sure how tall
Especially a
he
New
is.
York rat, bro. You know what's up.
There's different versions of them.
Yo,
Them
that's big. That Big Ben come out like this on your ass.
Oh, that's
Suck
mad
it.
funny, yo.
Damn,
That's
bro.
mad funny.
Mad
Okay.
Rel said Koza said Punisher lighting him up.
Yeah, I think.
But here's the
Punisher-
thing. He's been shot at before.
Yeah. And
Being
he's-
shot at is not a shocking thing for him.
No,
Nah,
he been
No.
shot, he been stabbed, he been all that. He's still
Right.
fighting, bro.
And he be deflecting that shit with his staff.
Son got hands.
He's fighting Shredder and still having Shredder sweat a little
But
bit.
Batman had a problem with Shredder.
Right.
Batman didn't even beat Shredder.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Batman and Shredder fought.
that's-
And Batman didn't even beat Shredder full on.
So
It's
damn,
crazy.
yeah, that's a good question. So
And I think Splinter is better than Shredder.
I do too.
So that means Splinter would take Batman.
On the prepared
it's usually
fight.
when Splinter takes some bullshit to like overpower him crazy. You know what I mean?
Chat says, let's see what chat
That's
says
a
about.
good. That's a really good comparison. Yeah.
BK Dragon, welcome in.
Because said Punisher the only one that has a chance against Splinter, to be honest. Ooh.
No,
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
because
like-
everybody else coming out to hand, and he's taking everybody out hand to hand.
And Punisher is a human, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just a vigilante.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're all humans, except for Splinter.
So Splinter is probably
Right.
gonna win. Yeah.
Punisher is too much, Big Brooklyn said. Rel says Splinter beat Green Arrow and Fei Long, now Punisher, then Batman. Oh, saying who's the question?
So what's his weakness then?
Okay. And BK
I mean, he
Dragon,
can-
yeah, what's
not
up, bro?
Sure, what's good, BK?
Like
BK
that.
Dragon's
Like,
in the
he was
building.
shooting. You know what I'm saying?
Foxy said, I mean, New York City rats are stronger than humans. So
Damn
that-
right. Damn right.
And she knows what's up. She knows what's going on. That's why you said you wanted to square up,
Look,
but I'm like,
see,
nah,
Big Brooklyn said it the best. Hand to hand,
Splinter is cooking all
facts.
of them.
Hand to hand,
Yeah.
Splinter's cooking all.
All right,
BK
fair,
Dragon Splinter trumps all, pretty much.
fair. All right.
Batman traveled and was trained by Ra's al Ghul after climbing the
Splinter's cooking Ra's al Ghul too.
mountain. Dang.
I think Splinter's cooking him too. So what we got? That might have been the last one.
Okay.
CJ, what you got for us?
Yep, I got some cool shit.
All right, cool.
What you think about that game right there?
That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Got some cool shit. Hold on. I'm gonna get up out of there. Get up out of there.
I'm gonna send you the intro.
Okay. All right. So you know how I do.
Yeah, let's start some fuckery now.
Yeah. I'm not. I didn't do too much. I didn't do no fuckeries for him this time. It's something cool though.
Okay, let's see what you got.
I want to turn just kick off and have him pissed off and hating us. Go to plus 200. Yes, sir.
I'll be
Yes, sir.
fresh. I'll be fresh.
Yes, indeed.
That's
Your
the
boy.
boy.
That's
That's
your boy.
CJ the DJ.
Yours truly. Queen of the show. Melanated
Queen of the show.
Monet. Yes, indeed. And then our featuring our special guest,
My man.
Justkitt is in the building.
Hey,
Dropping
hey.
bombs on Justkitt.
Hey, let's go.
Game Lounge is affiliated with Art Club, Bridge Crew Gaming, Made Mafia, and of course yours truly,
CJ the DJ.
Yes, indeed. Let's play our new game called Who the Fuck Is That?
Oh wow, we're doing this again.
Guess the person in the silhouette.
Who's that Pokemon?
Basically,
What
yeah,
people?
yeah.
Okay.
The Game Lounge is Who the Fuck Is That? For this game, you need to turn some lights on.
There you go.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's better. That's better. Let's begin.
Snoop.
That's Snoop Dogg. That's Snoop Dogg. That's Snoop Dogg.
Who the fuck is that?
Snoop Dogg. He said it.
That's Snoop.
Yeah.
Snoop is everything.
Snoop's everything.
If it's on the west side, Snoop is it.
Right. So the answer is Snoop Dogg, y'all.
Let's see what chat say. Okay, hey, yeah, they say Snoop. They say Snoop. That's Ninja Gaiden. That's Ryu Hayabusa. Fuck you.
Damn.
Ryu Hayabusa. You know why?
Hayabusa?
This right here gave it away. 3 right there.
Nice.
And the scarf.
Okay. He says, Ryu Hayabusa. Motorcycle name.
Hayabusa.
Answer is, like GK said,
Let's see what chat. Let's see. Hometown said Hometown T said Deadpool. KK then said Deadpool.
They all said Snoop Dogg though.
Yeah, they got Snoop Dogg. They got Snoop Dogg.
It's a Jigglypuff from above. Right. So from Ninja Gaiden. Okay. So that's. I got you.
That's Corrin. That's the Dragon Ball Kitty.
Yeah, Purin.
That's the Dragon Ball Kitty.
Purin.
I don't remember the name, but it's the Dragon Ball Kitty. That's the Dragon Ball Kitty. Fuck you. That's the Dragon Ball Kitty. That's the gray cat from Dragon Ball. The gray, the purple gray shit. Yeah, what he said. Yeah, whatever the fuck. That's that.
It's the blue.
That's not the old. That's not the old white one with the staff. It's the other one. The younger one. I know who I'm talking about. I'm Puar.
Is it Puar?
Yes, I know who I'm talking about. Corrin is the old nigga.
Okay. The cat from Dragon Ball Z.
Broke Nation. Look at Broke Nation.
Puar. And he said Corrin first. Corrin's the Senzu Bean cat.
Yes, the old white nigga.
Yeah.
He never opened his eyes.
Never.
And his DBZ cat too.
DBZ cat. Who the
Answer
fuck is that?
Who the fuck is that?
Okay.
That's what Johnny Anderson.
BK Dragon said I got it right.
Oh, that's
from Toy Story.
I don't.
No.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see it.
Oh, shit, yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
After you said it,
I didn't know.
I didn't know
up until she said it.
I didn't know either. When she
I
said
didn't
it,
know up until you said it. So you got that.
Okay,
You
yeah,
got
you
that.
got it.
From Toy Story.
That's different from Toy Story.
When you
Absolutely.
said it, I'm like, okay, I can see that now. I can see that now.
It's the other show.
It might be Root and Toot and Cowboy.
Yeah.
I had that one. That's my favorite.
Answer is Jesse.
There you go. You got that. That was you.
Root and Toot and Cowboy.
I got no idea.
That robot from that
I got no idea.
The robot from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Futurama. The robot from Futurama.
I'm not gonna lie.
It's not Bender.
It's not Bender. I got no idea though. I'm not gonna lie.
Nigga name from TMNT.
Yeah,
The robot. What's that fuck nigga?
I know if y'all see the hint, y'all gonna get it. So I just
Stone Cold, maybe.
Mike Tyson Punch Out.
Mike Tyson Punch Out might be right.
Brooklyn.
I'm not gonna
Is that
claim that.
Punch Out? Is that a Punch Out silhouette? Really?
Retro says Bunch Out.
He got the pixels.
From Turtles in Time. Yeah, right. That's what I was thinking. Foxy.
The nigga with the bullshit over here.
Yeah,
I know you're talking about. Krang.
Yeah,
Krang.
That was Craig. It looked like Craig.
Not Debo.
Buzz Lightyears.
Nah, that ain't Buzz Lightyear.
I don't know, man.
Let's see what the hint is.
Craig.
Okay, Mike Tyson.
Okay, that's Mike Tyson.
Iron Mike
Damn,
Tyson.
That was right.
Okay.
There you go. See?
Fucking Punch Out. Crazy.
Retro and I'm gonna go see right now.
Damn, y'all know the pixels, huh?
Yeah, they know the pixels,
They know
my
the
nigga.
pixels, son.
Yeah, there you go.
Dr. Doom.
Where's Cliff?
That's Cliff.
I'm gonna go with Doom on that one.
Retro and Big Brooklyn guy.
Yeah,
Cole said I didn't want to say. Cole says Doom.
Damn, Doom lighting up the place. She's crazy.
Brook Nation Doc Doom, Big Brooklyn Doc Doom.
They gonna
Look what the hit is though. Well, as y'all also said, Dr. Doom.
Dr. Doom.
This shit Cliff Homeboy is crazy.
What the?
What?
Oh, Neil.
No, with the
Damn.
cape? No.
Yeah.
No, that's
Neo.
not a cape. That's the jacket.
That's the jacket, the
Oh,
black
the jacket.
jacket.
Absolutely right. That is Neo. That's the
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
from the first
Yeah,
Neo, from the
episode,
first
Matrix
movie.
1.
Matrix.
When he was shooting at him and he was doing the shit.
The hit is Bullet Dodger.
Yeah, he got it. Cliff, Kid
Let's
got
go,
it.
kid. Let's go,
Yes,
kid.
sir.
Let's see what chat's saying. Yup, Neo. Yup, they got it. Broke
Who
Nation,
the fuck
Neo.
is that? Neo.
Yup. Yup.
That's good. No, that's
Who the fuck is that?
Mega Man X.
Bass. Bass, whatever you want to call him. Bass or Bass
What?
from Mega Man. That's Bass.
It's a Mega Man character. I
It's
don't know the
Bass or
name.
Bass.
It's a Mega Man character.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
A Mega Man character. His
It's a
name
Mega
is
Man.
Bass.
That's
He's purple and black.
You know how I know it's a Mega Man character? Look at the shoes and the blaster.
And his dog, his name is Treble.
The shoes and the blaster is Mega Man all day.
I think it's base, right? Oh, yeah.
Zero. That's not zero.
Bass.
That's not zero.
Bass.
He's the anti-Mega Man.
That's not zero.
Bass and Treble.
I know enough to know it's not zero.
He's
It's
the
a Mega
anti-
Man character
He's
though.
the anti-Mega Man, and like Kid said,
I don't even know who that is, but just by the shoes, I knew that was Mega Man.
Neo is a bullet dodger. This nigga Broke Nation.
Yeah.
Neo is a bullet dodger now.
YN, bro. YN.
I hate him.
YN shit.
I hate him.
Shit, bro.
Oh, everybody said base, of course. Oh, Big Brooklyn said 0X.
No,
BT
zero.
Games said 0X too.
No zero, guys.
No
It's
zero.
Bass.
Yeah,
That was
DK Dragon was on point with that rule.
Before zero, guys. Zero wasn't even a thing.
She-Hulk?
She-Hulk.
Absolutely.
No, but the hand kind of messed up though.
Nah, I don't know if that's
That's a
She-Hulk
strong
though.
it is,
lady.
with the- with
That's
that-
a
with that-
strong
The
lady.
hair looked like She-Hulk.
That's
Yeah,
a strong
She-Hulk,
lady. That's
She-Hulk.
She-Hulk.
That's her
That's
gloves. She
not-
rock gloves. That's
Okay.
rock
Yeah,
gloves.
that's
So,
not Wonder Woman.
I'm gonna be honest,
would
I don't.
doubt
It's
that's
not Wonder Woman.
That's
She-Hulk because
She-Hulk,
they
'cause
said
it's
it,
barefoot.
but
Look, it's barefoot.
before they said it, I had no idea.
Okay.
That foot is very bare.
So you say
The
she
gloves
Hulk?
threw me off, but now I'm like, oh yeah, she do wear gloves. She do wear
So,
gloves.
Man said Janet Jackson.
Hometown says Janet Jackson.
Ah, that's fucking
Hometown-
funny.
Hometown with
Broke
the
Nation says C Viper.
She can't wear gloves.
C Viper.
That's not a bad guess. The
It's
hair,
like-
I can see that.
That could be a rose. Right?
Okay. All right. Man said Janet
Oh, C
Jackson.
Viper.
Crazy. So okay.
It's not C Viper, but I
no,
can
no,
see
no,
that.
No, it's not Viper.
So here's the hint. Since y'all kind of conflicted on
Green
answers.
Lady.
Fire Ice God.
What the fuck?
Who the fuck is that?
That's
Street Fighter?
No, Phoenix.
that's
is Yuri?
Starfire.
Oh,
That's Starfire.
Is she ice? No,
I don't
she's
even think
not.
that's Starfire,
No,
but it,
a fire and ice god.
What's Yuri's brother name, son?
What from what
Yuri?
what mythology?
yeah, what mythology? Give us something else.
Fire Ice God. Fighting game.
Street Fighter. I forgot his name.
Fighting
though.
game.
Oh, the black.
What's his name? His brother, bro. Yuri's brother. Or something like
That's
that.
What's his name?
I don't know his name.
The blue
Cliff said
and
Street
red
Fighter
guy?
3.
That's Urian.
Cliff says Street Fighter 3 Resurrection.
No, that's
Oh,
that's
the boss in that
Gil.
game.
That's Gil.
Yeah,
What's his name?
Gil.
Gil.
Oh, boss. He got that
Not my saying.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I did not. I don't.
Not-
I don't
yeah,
remember
Okay,
that.
last
Oh,
one,
man.
y'all.
Crazy.
Last one, y'all. Last one.
They got stars.
Raiden.
Raiden.
Rated from Mortal Kombat.
That's Raiden. That's Lord Raiden.
Why the fuck he got a staff?
Why he got the hat for?
I put the staff there.
Try
to
to trick us. He tried to
Oh,
trick us.
Why
okay.
make people think like,
Yeah.
you know, Ghost of Yotai
Yeah.
or Sun Wukong
That's
or some shit.
that would have
Raiden.
been a good one. Yeah, that should have been a good one if it
But
was.
everybody just said, yeah, it's fucking rated.
Yeah, once we saw the hat.
Oh, it's the
Thunder God is the
monkey. Oh shit. Not a man. Nah.
Answer is rated.
Raiden.
Good
That's
shit,
what I
man.
thought.
Good shit.
That was fun. That was
That
a
was
lot of
fun.
fun. That was a great segment.
You guys playing? Good chat. Good
I think
comment.
we got one more. We got time for one more.
Yeah.
We got one more for my guy BT Gamer.
Okay, cool. This one?
Yeah. Now this one's cooked up by a guy, BT Gamer. He's in the chat right now.
Right, BT Gamer.
So you know we do people who send stuff.
Segments. That's really cool.
Voltron versus the Rangers.
Yeah, but it's the
What
the
Rangers
Zeo.
are these?
The
Zeo, yes.
I swear we did this before. On Buggy.
Never
did Voltron versus.
I feel like we did too.
We did.
I don't really watch Voltron.
I'm gonna go Voltron.
You gonna really?
Yeah, I am.
What about
They be killing dudes in Voltron, right?
Huh?
Combine their powers. Power Rangers do that.
I'm going Voltron, man.
Voltron still?
I'm going Voltron.
I want to say Power Rangers.
Three of you on the couch is so cute. That's fun. That's Bigfoot.
I hate Bigfoot. He already fired me.
I'm gonna go Voltron.
I don't really know, but I'm gonna go Power Rangers because
I'm
I
gonna go
don't know. Voltron is just.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm a rock with Power Rangers.
I feel like Power Rangers
It is
is
what it
way better.
Nah, BT Game. I didn't skip anything. It's just not in order how
I
you
used
said
to
it.
watch some Voltron, like the old Voltron. I don't know about
The
this
last Voltron cartoon that I watched, these niggas is cosmic, okay?
Mm.
They flying around in space and shit.
Right.
Oh.
KK this time I'm gonna go
Voltron.
Power Rangers.
KK 's
Fair
a Power
Jones
Ranger.
Power Rangers.
Alright,
Broke
so-
Nation Power Rangers. Y'all seen Green Ranger? Facts.
I know.
Not this Green Ranger.
If you're talking about
What about
Ranger
what about
versus
White
the
Ranger?
Voltron
White
Force
Ranger, son?
as like the humans,
Yeah.
then the Power Rangers. If you're talking about like Zord for Zord, I'm gonna go
Voltron.
Voltron.
Really?
The Megazords.
yes,
Yeah,
Megazord,
Zords?
yes.
Yeah,
I think it's more
Megazords
advanced.
are more like Transformers.
It's more advanced. It's more advanced.
Oh.
It's more lucid.
Power Rangers is more like
Exactly.
fucking Voltron
Exactly.
is just.
But if you're talking about
Oh,
Ranger,
slam
like the
shit.
pilots versus the pilots, then the Rangers are more well equipped for one-on-one combat.
Oh yeah.
By
Yeah.
far.
They run down. They
By far.
They cut class and whoop your ass. Like,
Yeah, but and they
type
got that
shit.
suit on too.
Mhm.
They're by far. But Zord for Zord, I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah.
All right. Harry Potter versus.
That's over here is Percy
not
Jackson.
Harry. Who the fuck
Percy
is
Jackson, and that's Harry Potter friend.
That's Harry Potter.
That's
friend.
what's his name again? The other guy.
The other guy, Foxy. What's this guy name?
Ron.
And
I'm gonna go Percy Jackson.
Percy Jackson. I guess.
Percy Jackson is half a god.
God, he's a god.
He's a half a god. His father is Poseidon, if I'm not mistaken.
Percy fucking Jackson.
You know the Zeus got mad kids.
Yeah.
He's one of Poseidon's kids.
Really?
He's half god. You never heard of the Percy Jackson? They had 2 movies about it.
Oh, shit.
Poseidon
Yeah.
Poseidon is the god of
It's oceans.
Yeah, the water. Yeah, the
because
ocean.
Ares is the god of
He's
war.
the god version of.
Kratos trying to
He's the
take
god
title.
version of Aquaman, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go Percy Jackson.
That's not even a fair matchup.
It's not, I don't think it is.
That's a half god versus someone with
a
Yeah.
school kid. Like,
Yeah,
a
school kid, right, right.
That can move.
Like
brooms.
even his physical is just above.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
Not
crazy.
really a fair fight.
He's a demigod.
Basically.
You should have put Poseidon's son against like Zagreus or something like
You
that.
got
You know what I mean?
Black Widow versus Catwoman. I think we did this one before too, didn't we?
Don't Black Woman got serum or something? I think I said Black Woman.
Catwoman?
I mean, Black Widow.
Black
serum.
Widow? I'm going Black Widow.
Black Widow has a serum, right?
She's a super soldier female, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, Catwoman in trouble because she's just straight human.
Basically.
It'll be a good fight, though. But
It'll definitely be a good fight.
Catwoman don't really get into fights.
No, she
like
can
that's
fight.
not.
Yeah,
She can fight.
She gets away.
But she
Her
don't.
thing is
fight.
robberies.
Yeah,
bank
her thing
robberies,
is like
jewel heist.
being quiet.
I'm not
and
disagreeing with
sneaking
anything you guys
past,
say.
like-
I think overall, Black Widow's way more
Black Widow
adept
shoot
into
her.
one-on-one combat.
Yeah.
I think
Black
she'll take her
Widow.
out.
Yeah, 100%.
And she got the electrical shocks.
Yeah.
She got some sort of serum shit going on, right?
100%.
Yeah,
Catwoman does
of
have some lives.
Everybody
Yeah.
else is saying the same thing. Percy. Then they went into Black Widow. They're all saying Black Widow. I love Selena, but Black Widow got it.
Yeah.
All she could do is really scratch. She don't really have nothing.
I mean, she could fight.
Big Rookie said
You know what I'm
Catwoman
saying?
got
But
9
not
lives.
like
though.
Black Widow on that level.
She got little gadgets though.
Catwoman
She do got her little
getting
shit,
shot.
you know what I'm
Catwoman
Catwoman.
getting
Dirty Dan, what it do, bro?
Yeah, buddy. But Big Brooklyn said, "Who's a better thief?"
Thief?
Yeah.
Catwoman.
Yeah,
that's,
Catwoman.
That's literally her expertise.
Yeah, that's what she
Yeah.
do. She
Get in and get out unnoticed.
Exactly.
She be in the museums
yeah.
night. Every
Yeah.
other night she in another museum.
This is actually a decent fight, actually.
Oh, shit.
I don't know White Ranger's ability. I'm being honest.
White Ranger
gonna
versus-
whoop that ass on Master Chief.
You think so? Without the Zord?
Huh?
Without the Zord? No Zord.
He matched.
Master Chief got some
Yo,
guns,
son, I don't know. Them Rangers be matched
I'm not gonna
strong,
lie to you.
son.
That Master Chief, the suit itself is
I
the
don't
suit itself that he
know.
wears
Yeah.
is a few $100.
It's science versus
And he
magic.
runs around in that shit regular.
Yeah.
He ain't no
He not
regular
like a
nigga.
human, and that nigga is like tall as hell.
He's a super soldier.
Yeah, he's like,
He gotta be a
what, he's
super
like
soldier.
7'2"?
Call it for it. He's a super soldier.
Mad tall.
Yeah, Cliff said Chief getting fucked up. I feel you, because
White
you
Ranger
just a White
packing up
Ranger
nigga.
fan, though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with White Ranger for real though. But I don't think it's as easy as y'all want to make
But I
it.
mean, he can get shot at, though, right?
Who?
He shot at.
Who?
White Ranger. Big Brother
They're
said-
wearing
White
the
Ranger
suit
pack
too.
up.
The suit ain't
The
normal.
armor shit going, the
Yeah,
plate,
they're like-
pew, pew,
Yeah,
all that shit.
I'm gonna go White Ranger.
Yeah.
But I think it's a decent fight though.
Yeah, don't his shit, don't his vest
Yeah,
give
but-
him more power?
Yeah,
or
but
some
Master
shit?
Chief is in the armor as well. That's futuristic shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that sword,
That ain't no
that
regular
White
shit.
Ranger sword is dangerous, though,
I
bro.
don't
I
know.
kind of think the tech from the future versus the power coin is almost.
Power sword. That power sword.
Equal.
I would say so. To be
What
honest
is
with you.
their power?
But
What
here's
is
the thing.
Power Rangers' power.
The
Like,
Power
what is that?
Rangers are humans in a suit.
Yeah.
Master Chief is a super soldier in a suit.
He's a super soldier, not
Yes,
a human.
no, he's a super soldier.
Yeah, he's super
He's
soldier.
not a regular person. He's a super soldier in a futuristic suit.
Yeah.
I don't think this fight is with no Zord. It's not as easy as y'all want to make
Yeah, it
it.
was hand in hand.
It's not as easy as I want to make it
That's true. Nah, maybe,
because Master Chief is stronger than a putty.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I think
but I don't think Master Chief got the karate hands.
But he's a stronger,
martial
he's a
arts.
stronger
Yeah.
defendant.
But he would
Yeah.
shoot the
It's more
shit
like
out
a
of him.
military person fighting a karate person.
Yeah.
It would depend on if
Usually
he could.
military people come out on top. They're resilient and they can last
He
long.
might just slam him. I ain't gonna lie.
That's actually
Yeah.
a fairer fight than you
I
guys
think-
want to give credit to.
I think Master Chief can outlast Tommy. Tommy will get tired faster.
Yeah, because don't they?
I'm still
don't
gonna
they
give it
lose,
to the
they
White
lose
Ranger.
They energy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
When they
You
take
get
too
tired
much
as regular.
damage,
You don't gotta
they
regen
turn
and none of
back
that.
to a
Right,
human.
right.
You don't
I think
exactly.
And they
I think
can't
he'll
morph again.
out-tire
They
him.
can't like immediately
It's
morph
a
back.
hard
so.
fight. I'm off top. I'm gonna go Tommy.
I don't know the science.
I'll go
between the
60-40.
Power Rangers shit,
Yeah,
so I don't
60-40
know.
Tommy.
60-40 sounds good. 60 Tommy, 40.
Master Chief, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that
60-40
sounds right.
Tommy.
I might go the other way.
60-40 Master Chief.
60-40 minutes.
I wouldn't even argue with that.
No, it's not all. It's not
No,
arguing about that,
no. I think that fight is way closer than people want to give it credit for.
Right.
That's a good one. Master Chief.
Oh shit.
Nemesis.
I'm Nemesis.
Nemesis versus Michael Myers.
Nemesis.
It's gonna be Nemesis.
Nemesis is
But what is Michael Myers?
walking this
Not even a
nigga.
But
dog walk.
what
He wouldn't even
is
see
Michael Myers? Because he's not human.
He's human.
Right?
Michael Myers is human.
He's just a human. He can live, he just living in, like in a crib,
Nemesis
and
is
big
he
strong
just
nigga.
come out of. He's just a big strong nigga.
Big strong. nigga.
Nemesis
Dog
is
walking.
Dog walking. ain't
He's
the
gonna
same.
rocket launcher and blow this nigga to smithereens, bro. It's over.
It's
with.
crazy.
So that's
He always
fine.
come
It's
back
the
and Michael
Nemesis
Myers
then.
can't die.
They put his ass to a
Okay.
wood chip and we ain't
Because
seen him
that's what I
yet.
thought. I thought Michael Myers was on some like
He got shot by a
apparition
sniper,
or
bro.
something. Like he's
Yeah,
the type
that's a
of
sniper,
apparition.
not a fucking rocket launcher, bro. Like this nigga
Everybody-
Nemesis carries a rocket launcher everywhere.
Everybody, it's attached to him, isn't it?
No,
You can take it off.
he can take it off.
That big shit. You know,
Yeah, click, take that shit right off, and now he got the little octopus noodle
Yeah,
arm
the,
and
right.
shit.
Yeah, yeah,
disgusting noodle arm.
Everybody basically say Nemesis.
Right.
Yeah. He's gonna blow him to smithereens. with
Michael
that big
Myers
ass
is
rocket
immortal,
launcher,
right?
bro.
That's what I thought. Big
No,
Brooklyn,
he's human.
Yeah. But okay,
He's human.
I
He's
know,
actually
I know.
human. He's a big, strong dude
He-
with mental illness, so he don't feel
Yeah.
pain regularly.
But even if he was,
Oh.
even
But
if he
he
was
is human.
immortal,
So damn,
even
he
if
just,
he was immortal, he still can get blown to pieces, bro. Like
Right.
Okay,
Nemesis
yeah,
don't
yeah,
care to
that's
kill
true.
you. He just want to get you away from him.
That's true.
Get you out of here.
Alright.
Nemesis
if he
said, look,
physically see you're taken
Fear
out, the
Jones
target
said,
is cleared.
Yeah.
Move on to the next person. Where's Jill?
Fear Jones said, Nemesis is Michael Myers times 10.
Yes. Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
so-
Okay. So yeah, basically.
You know who would be a good fight for
For Nemesis?
Nemesis, and I still think he would lose. Like one of the Gears of General Ram.
Oh, from
Yes.
Gears of War.
Gears
Yes.
of War. I think Ram will whoop his ass.
Or Arbiter from Halo.
Whoop his ass too. I think Ram and Arbiter is a better fight.
Yeah.
That's a better fight.
That can actually happen. Killer Instinct, bro.
They had it in Kill Instinct.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. You know what
That
I'm
could
talking
actually happen.
Hold on, we got
It's in your
ads.
ads.
So Let's wait.
BT Gamer ads, don't move on, please. All right, we'll give him a minute.
Yeah, give him a minute to get back in.
Rom, who do you favor? Rom or
Arbiter?
Arbiter.
Why we like this?
Rom is savage, Rico. He's like
But the reason why I'm gonna go Arbiter is more mobile with that
that
blade.
lazy, yeah. But Rom, he summons all of that the black
krills.
the krill, the black
krills.
the bees. I call them the black bees.
That is actually a point.
And once he goes into that like super
And
mode,
he has more of a stronger body.
Yeah.
But I'm still gonna
He's a
go to
tank.
Arbiter because that Blake can slice them limbs.
Yeah.
And he's more mobile.
Yeah. And the gun and the blade turns into a gun too.
Big Brooklyn says Rom.
Yeah, I would go Rom too. Nemesis
3.
He's on 3. He's on 3.
Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. That's the name of the game.
Yeah.
And I beat that game.
Yeah, good game.
Good
Even
game.
the remake was fucking phenomenal.
This nigga Nemesis would just pop out at random. You don't know where he was.
Anyway, you be walking down the casual hallway, la down.
Yeah,
I have
the way
not-
the game
I
is
have
played,
not
He
played
grabbed
you
that
don't
Joe
game.
by the
know
neck,
when
lifted
he's
her
gonna
ass in
pop
the air.
out.
all
I'm
that
mad
shit.
good on playing that.
He just pops out. And you gotta survive. You gotta
I
run,
do not
hide.
like horror
Yeah,
games.
anxiety fuck with you.
Yeah, I'm playing right now the Outlast Trials, which is really fun, but it's like you play with your friends. You know what I mean? I would recommend y'all get that shit.
Outlast Trials?
Outlast Trials is mad fun.
The first one? Like
No,
the first one's pretty good.
Yeah, there's like 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
I haven't played
I
any
played
of
two.
that.
I think the first one was the best one.
Yeah. Nah, I'm like.
Okay,
So
See,
we
I'm
all
good-
agree
I'm like
Nemesis
good on
walks
that.
through.
Like,
Easy.
Mad serious.
It
What else you
is,
got?
yo, and I'm like, I don't really do well with horror. Yeah,
Let's see what else we got.
The multiplayer.
I don't even know.
John,
Wow.
what?
Oh my God!
Washing him. Son.
Why?
No, we say Negan from Tekken. That'll probably be a good fight.
Not even that. Not even that.
Nah.
Nah,
John Wick
He ain't
is
even that bad.
He's not superhuman. He's just
You
got-
know what's
Like a
crazy?
dog walking.
I haven't seen that
dog
movie.
walking. He is dog walking. He is John Wick's dog walking.
And it's 4 John
He's gonna
Wick
kick him
movies.
in
You ain't
stage
seen no
transition
John
to
Wick?
a
I
fucking
haven't
next
seen
movie.
no John Wick.
Dog
What is
walking.
wrong with y'all?
Pistol, bro. With a
Yo,
pistol.
What the fuck is
the
this,
premise
yo?
of the movie didn't
Nigga
draw
don't got no
me
gun.
in,
He got
yo.
Lucille with the bat.
Let's see what chat's saying.
The first movie was the best movie, hands down. I don't know about the others.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
He's whooping his ass.
The
Something
premise-
terrible.
the
Foxy's laughing.
The premise of
It should've
John
been
Wick.
John Wick versus
We having
Neo.
a movie
That would've been a
week.
good fight.
John Wick
Make you watch
himself, right?
That's a cakewalk,
Yeah.
though. John Wick is a cakewalk. This is
Against Neo's
Neo versus Neo.
but John,
Neo?
himself.
Matrix.
Neo.
Neo, yeah.
He's
Dog
dog walking,
walking.
bro. He's fucking
Dog walking.
Superman in the Matrix.
Yeah, basically dog walking.
He's literally flying at bullet speed.
Y'all better. This would have been
and
better.
fucking people up.
It would have been better if you did like Wick versus the nigga that
What's
was
his name? Jason Statham or something like that.
Jason-
Nah,
no,
I'm
that
gonna
was
tell you.
the
No,
nigga
no,
that
no.
was- That was like.
I got somebody
like,
who's
when
gonna
they
bust
kidnapped
John Wick's
his daughter.
ass.
What was that shit?
Taken.
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 Oh,
Yeah.
Liam Neeson.
Oh,
That's
Liam
my nigga,
Neeson.
like-
Yeah,
John Wick
that would
beat
have been
him
better.
and straight up shoot John. I'm gonna tell y'all who could take
Lil
John Wick
son,
if y'all
Liam
seen the
Neeson.
movie. Y'all seen Equilibrium?
Talking about Denzel Washington.
No, Equilibrium
That's
is
Equalizer.
Christian Bale.
He said John Wick.
It's the
Okay,
Matrix
so
before
John
the
Wick
Matrix.
versus-
Oh.
Equilibrium,
Wick versus
they
Neo,
are he's winning. Human, no superpowers, but he's winning.
Wick, come on, man.
Let's just move on to the next one.
And
I
then
know.
Big Brooklyn said Wick versus Neo. BT Games said John Wick versus Negan. I don't think Negan has a chance at all.
The Fantastic Four versus
The Teen Titans.
Oh.
Teen Titans. If you talking about that movie version, Teen Titans.
Oh, that movie version, yeah. But the regular real ones,
Who will
no.
fight? Who will fight who though? I know Cyborg fighting Thing.
Yeah, Cyborg is fighting this.
First of all,
for sure.
It's 5 versus 4. They got an extra
Yeah.
hand.
So it'll be 2. It'll probably be the Cyborg and Beast Boy.
Then you got
versus the
Raven.
Thing.
Then you got Raven. All that rubber shit don't matter to her.
Yeah, Raven is actually one of the strongest.
Then
I
you
don't,
got-
I don't think Cyborg is strong enough for things.
I know Raven is
I think
mad
You
strong.
got Raven.
I think
Raven is dumb
Melt 'em.
strong, bro.
Burn 'em.
strongest on the team.
Raven is the
When
then you got
Raven-
Beast Boy.
if Raven
He can
don't
turn
give a
into something
fuck-
that can fight you.
Yeah, but Johnny
I think
is
thinking him out
pretty
here,
fast, bro, and he has power for Cinder level of sun.
That's
You
true.
got an alien
That's
there,
true.
too.
He and he can breathe out of space.
You also got an alien.
Starfire.
Starfire is an alien.
I think Starfire and Raven were really going to carry.
Starfire and Raven
They
is
gonna
going
carry
is
them.
going to carry.
Yeah,
They can't. Yeah.
Beast Boy as well. Beast Boy as well. Because Beast Boy's ultimate.
Fan
But,
I
but
agree.
let me add to this too, because we gotta factor into everything. Reed Richards is smart as shit.
Yeah.
and I don't think anybody on that team
can match that
can
intellect.
match that intellect.
Yeah, but
only
in,
Batman
in,
and
in,
Batman ain't there.
in a random encounter, you ain't got time to this nigga shooting and beaming and magic. and that
Yeah,
shit.
his mind is working all the time.
Bro,
What do
you know what magic is? I could put you in the death realm in no time. You the smartest nigga on the team. Now you're 10 universes over.
But remember, he got mad inventions and shit. You know
what you gonna do in the random encounter? 10 universes over.
Oh, 10 universes over.
What you gonna do? I could poof you there.
talking
I could
about
put you in the middle
Oh,
of hell.
Raven.
Raven? Yeah, Raven could really.
Yeah, how much does that take for power though?
She could do a lot, bro.
Raven is very strong. She's the strongest person on the team.
Then you got Starfire.
Starfire.
And then you got Cyborg.
Energy Blast.
And then you got Beast Boy who could turn into a monster. I'm going Titans.
I think their powers is
Starfire
crazy.
would go toe to toe with Johnny, but
Johnny could like burn somebody.
Yeah,
to
but
death
also
easy,
then you got
son.
Raven again. I could just get rid of him.
Yeah.
I could just turn that fire off.
It's hard to catch her.
I could just turn that fire off.
But those ice batarangs ain't gonna do shit.
No.
They're not doing shit.
Sue could turn invisible, but she's not that strong.
No,
she's not.
After you go invisible, what are you gonna do?
I mean, according to the movie, she did stop Galactus.
You think Starfire could take?
But he put
I know,
this version of that.
Do you think Starfire could take Human Torch Supernova?
I don't think it's just if I could take Starfire. I think Raven is the key.
Raven would be the key. Raven
Starfire's
will
an
probably
alien. She can't
teleport.
She's a soul. It's
Uh,
gonna be hard to take her down.
The Human Torch when he's going
that's not
supernova
strong enough to
type
withstand
shit.
You could get rid of it.
sunburn.
She would
sun
put him in the
level
middle of hell.
Kelvin.
Yeah.
Go
Kelvin
supernova
levels of
all you
sunburn.
want.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna go Teen Titans to be honest with you.
Yeah, Teen Titans.
Versus this version of the movies. This version.
This version, yeah, they'll lose.
I'm gonna go Teen Titans.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Titans as well.
Jack and Daxter.
Oh yeah.
Jack and Daxter smoking Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, I'm going Jack and Daxter.
Jack be wild one.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Not a bad matchup though.
No,
not
a bad matchup at all.
It's easy for them to either get mixed up with each other too.
Yeah,
it look
absolutely,
like
absolutely.
Daxter is
his pet up there.
Yeah, it's grown.
Yeah.
I'm not.
It's not a
familiar-
bad matchup, but I'm gonna go
Going with Jack.
Going with Jack.
Not familiar with these PS2 games.
No?
You don't know Jack and Daxter?
No, I know them, but I just never played them.
I'm going Jack and Daxter. They also seem more well adapted for fighting.
Jack and Daxter.
They say Ratchet and Clank.
Ratchet and Clank over Jack and Dax. That's crazy.
Ratchet and Clank is crazy though.
Ratchet and Clank
Ratchet and get washed. Bro, that nigga Jack and Daxter.
Ratchet has guns for days.
You know how to fight? Yeah, gun specialist. He carrying
Facts.
big shit.
But Clank
Clank
is
too.
the gun specialist. He's the men basically like the inventory.
That's true.
Okay.
It's his whole bag.
That's true. It's not a bad matchup at all.
Okay,
No.
but
It's not a bad
Ratchet
matchup
is
at
the
all.
inventor. He's the one that builds, right?
Yeah.
I think he got intelligence over there for sure.
Who?
Way more smarter than him.
Who?
Yeah.
Ratchet's smarter than him.
I can actually go 50-50 on this
Ratchet
one.
like Dr. Stone.
Yeah.
This can go almost 50-50.
This is a 50-50
It's a
fight.
50-50 battle. This is
I
a
think
good
it's
one.
more of who can get the best of who faster.
But I think if it goes to hands, Jackson Daxter's winning.
Yeah, because then.
Like if I run up on you type shit,
Clank
Jackson
can't fight.
Daxter.
No, Clank don't
Jack
fight.
actually know how to
Clank's-
handle guns and like.
Exactly, exactly. He's more physically capable.
Yeah.
Right.
Clank is a fucking backpack.
It might be a
Yeah.
60-40 for me.
I still would leave it 50-50 because it's a matter of who can get the best of who faster.
Who can do what? 50-50 works for me.
Right.
All right, so this is the 4-way battle.
2v2? Or just
No, everybody free for all. Let me see if I can see what he
Bottom
said
left.
right.
Who is that? That's
Who's that?
fucking.
Who's the
Power
first one to
Rangers?
go?
That's bottom left. Who's that bottom left?
I don't know.
That's Jason.
Jason X.
Jason X, yeah.
Jason X is, I ain't gonna
I
lie.
never seen that in
He
here.
powerful.
Damn.
Nah, he the first one going.
Is that who's that?
I don't know.
That's
He
Swamp
the,
Man.
it's Wolverine, Jason X, Swamp Thing, and Dracula.
Wow.
Swamp Thing.
Jason's the
Swamp
first
Thing.
one out of here.
Obviously.
Is he?
Wolverine
Nah,
stands
Jason
for
X
sure.
is crazy.
Nobody.
Swamp
He's the first
Thing?
one out of here.
Jason X is
Wolverine.
crazy.
Swamp Thing is near God.
Obviously,
He's
no
like
one.
Earth God.
No one is beating
Controls
Wolverine.
nature.
Damn.
Right.
Not,
Nobody's beating Wolverine.
I don't know
y'all.
if Swamp Thing might be able to.
Who.
BK Dragon says
Swamp
Swamp Thing
Thing
is a
Controls
force.
nature, my guy. He's nature force.
Okay. So can you kill him?
Not really. He's gonna come back. Type shit.
So he's
Your
gonna
plant.
He said
come
pretty
back.
much-
Read the plant.
He's a plant, basically.
Pretty much one
He's
has to
tapped
walk
into
away
Earth.
from
He
this
got
fight.
roots, and you know
So
what I mean?
basically, all of these dudes are immortal on some shit.
Almost,
Jason
yeah.
is the first one. You could pop his head off at the end of the fight
Wolverine's doing that quickly.
quickly. Jason's going first.
Okay, Jason.
Dracula could try to kill Wolverine.
Dracula's immortal.
I think he'll just.
But once you pop
blitz
his
him.
head off too, he's gonna have to fight.
I think he's on the blitzing. I think Wolverine will blitz him real
Really?
quick.
No one ever said that. If you decapitate a fucking
Your head don't grow
vampire.
back immediately like that.
It don't make but that it's
Stab,
still alive.
fine. Stab him in the heart. Wolverine can do that easy.
He is metal.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think the first one to be going is Jason.
I
think Swamp Thing is winning. He's too much to fight.
A-Cat says Dracula may beat Wolverine. Dracula wins.
Nah.
Bill Jones
But
said Wolverine second to last, then Dracula.
He's a Swamp Thing, right? Originally, what is he? A human.
Originally. Until he became Swamp Thing.
So he's not nature.
Yes,
He's
he is.
something.
No, he's nature.
How did he become that?
Whatever his power, he's infused with nature.
He's infused with it. But he's not nature, so he's not like Summertime.
Yeah, bro, but chopping his head off and shit like that ain't
He's like
ain't doing it.
he's like the Earth version of Storm.
He's like, you know, Mother Nature?
Mm-hmm.
He's the closest thing to Father Nature.
Oh.
Basically. You're not getting rid of him just by chopping him up
Storm
like
is
that.
more than just a weather witch.
I don't know. Yeah, this fight's gonna be mad long.
I think
son.
Swamp
This
Thing
fight
is
gonna
winning.
be
I think
thousands of years, bro.
You gotta just destroy that whole swamp.
I think
Bro said the fight will go on forever.
It's a long fight.
I'm
Wolverine
going with
has
Swamp
the
Thing.
healing
I think
factor
Swamp Thing is
and
taking
he
it.
has the metal skeleton.
Yeah. See,
Everybody else has
Wolverine doesn't have destructive power. None of these people have, except for like Swamp Thing,
Thing.
has destructive
Right.
power.
Yeah.
Huh.
I think it's not a matter of who would die. It's
Look,
more a matter of who
Bigfoot
would
put it
best-
in there.
best-
Bigfoot put it in. Swamp Thing's ability. CJ, read that for a quick.
The Swamp Thing's abilities include complete control over plant life, chlorokinesis,
Yes.
Superhuman strength,
rapid regeneration, and
and immortality. He wins,
I just
bro.
googled this. And rivals, every Marvel hero had to team up alone with Fantastic Four to beat Dracula. Okay. Swamp Thing can actually take them out.
Oh, really? Every Marvel hero had to team up with the Fantastic Four just to beat Dracula's?
In Marvel Rivals.
What?
Yeah.
That's Marvel Rivals.
In Marvel Rivals. I don't know how true this is.
I didn't know Dracula.
I'm sticking to Swamp Thing all the way.
Yeah, it's tough.
I'm sticking to Swamp
How
Thing.
would you kill him? You gotta destroy the whole swamp, right?
He's like tethered to the swamp.
So
where he was originated.
his weakness is fire.
Basically, yeah.
Basically fire.
No one.
Okay, so what would happen if you burn Wolverine?
Nothing.
Exactly.
He coming back like next week.
Right, but I can still melt your skin off momentarily. You're done.
Next week he back.
He froze into a statue.
Who's burning Wolverine though?
What do you mean?
He said, "What if I no?"
But his
Wolverine
skin
can
is
burn.
burnable. Wolverine's skin is not impenetrable.
Yeah,
No,
but why
it
would
just
why would
regenerates.
he get on fire if he lights the Swamp Thing on fire?
Grab you and put you right back in. The whole nature is me. Where you going?
You can't fight him in his home turf.
You can't fight Swamp Thing in the
Change
swamp.
settings,
Thing. Not
literally.
happening.
In the desert, yeah, something
He
is
has
tough.
home
You gotta
field
change
advantage
Swamp Thing
everywhere.
Anywhere there's greenery and shit.
In the desert, he could. Fight him in the desert. Like,
He's
And,
tapped
and
into
Swamp Thing is
all
in Dracula's
nature.
lair. It's over.
And it's crazy because you need nature. You
Swamp
need
Thing
nature.
tapped into all
Yes,
nature.
and you need
He fights
nature.
Swamp Thing in
So
the
at
wintertime.
the end of the
It's still nature in the winter,
Yeah.
bro.
you can't
What
really
you mean?
beat
There's still
that.
nature in the winter, bro.
Yo, beating Swamp Thing is like basically killing yourself because you need nature. Anyway.
I'm going with Swamp Thing. I'm voting for Swamp Thing all the
You
way.
can't really kill him, being that you can't isolate.
I think
him.
the first person out is Swamp Thing. Second person out, that's where the fight. The last person out is Jason. He's done.
yeah, he's going first.
Swamp Thing.
The second
wins.
person out down become down to Wolverine or
Wolverine and
Dracula,
Dracula,
and I think
and I think
immediately
it's Dracula.
Wolverine will win
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess Wolverine.
because there's nothing that he's doing to stop Wolverine, chopping him up, whatever.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm going Swamp Thing, Wolverine, Dracula, Jason.
Yeah.
That's my lineup.
That's true. I guess so.
I agree to that lineup.
Yeah. Because even if
Look, they even said it. Swamp Thing don't have blood to empower Dracula. He can't bite him. He's a fucking tree.
That's
He's
true.
a plant.
It's
Yeah.
over.
He's a plant.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
It's over.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's a hard fight. You'd have to blow up the planet to kill Swamp Thing.
You can't get rid of him. I've even seen DC movies where they go to find him because they need him.
Yeah, that's
He's
true.
like pinnacle part of getting rid of what we got going on, right? We need Swamp Thing.
You
get
need
what I'm
Swamp
saying?
Thing, yeah. That's good. That's
Basically,
good.
he's Father Nature.
That was nice, man. Good stuff. That was good.
All right,
That was
chat.
BT, right?
Oh, for sure.
All right,
who
chat.
walks away? Swamp Thing.
Swamp Thing.
Yeah, he walks away.
I think he's the first one out, and then Wolverine,
Yo, the Diggs, what up, homie?
and
How
then
you doing,
Dracula,
bro?
and
Yeah.
Jason X is he's the bottom of the pile. Cause he don't regen. Once you chop his head off, that's it.
Right.
He may not be dead, but he's out of the fight.
He's out of the fight.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Chop his legs off. He may not be dead, but he's out of the fight.
Yeah, for sure.
And everybody else that's strong enough to just rip him apart.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And everybody is also strong enough to regen from what he can do to them.
Yeah.
He got
So
no
he-
win.
yeah,
he got no win.
It's clear.
He got no win.
That's a clear one. You should have put like.
Yo, Diggs, what up, baby?
You should have put Phoenix in that.
Phoenix would have
Phoenix would have smoked all of them.
smoked all of them.
I'm trying to think, or Storm or somebody. You know, I don't know. Swamp Thing is just so.
Storm and Swamp Man would
So-
have had been a long fight because, well, not long, but it would have been
Yeah,
a good
it would have
fight.
been a good
Storm
fight.
and Swamp
you know
Thing
what
would have been a
mean?
good fight.
Yeah,
I think that would have.
That's like a stalemate
That's
almost.
kind of,
Almost.
sort of,
It's like
kind
a
of,
stalemate.
sort
She
of.
could just freeze the whole planet.
But why
Yeah, she
would
can.
she? Because she'll kill herself. Why would she?
Not
do
really.
You can't freeze the whole planet.
Can't
You
freeze the
need, you
whole
need some
planet. You
fruits
need-
and veggies
You
too.
need oxygen. You know what I mean?
She
Like,
can make it rain for a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, he
Wash
said
up little
Groot.
section, right?
He said Groot. Groot versus Swamp Thing.
I don't know who
I'm
has
still going
more
Swamp Thing,
control
Swamp Thing.
over.
I'm
Yeah,
going
I think
Swamp
Swamp
Thing.
Thing has.
He has
greater
more
control.
environmental
Groot's not
control.
godlike.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah, like
Nah.
Swamp Thing can like terraform a planet, right?
Type shit.
Yeah.
Type shit. Yeah, he's.
I don't
Swamp
think
Thing is like
Groot
immortal,
can
but he's the
terraform.
closest thing to like godlike.
Yeah, yeah,
Like Superman, he's not a god, but he's
yeah.
more or less rivaling that
Yeah.
level. You get what I'm saying?
Right. All right.
So Superman versus Swamp
Okay. Huh?
Thing. Superman versus Swamp Thing.
Superman versus Swamp Thing, like strength wise, is
why you
Superman.
hitting Superman button back here?
Why did
I don't know
why
why
did
he-
you ask that?
I don't know
I
why
ain't
you
touched
want to
that
do it.
Superman all today.
I'm going
He
Super.
hit the Superman button and put his hand down. Like,
I'm going Superman, motherfucker. Fuck you. All right, so chat, we're getting ready to wrap it up. Appreciate it. We're gonna go around the room as usual, and I'm gonna kick it off, starting right here and bring it around.
mm-hmm.
Brooklyn Jeff, sign yourself out, please.
BK Jeff is always a good time to be in here.
Woo!
Everybody have a good night.
Appreciate you, my brother. Ash Ketchum.
Your boy Ash Catcher Moon, man. I had a splendid time. Met my boy Justkitt for the first time. Nice meeting you, bro.
Yo.
I mean, good vibes. It was a
Yeah.
great time, you know.
Always, man.
Appreciate you.
Always.
And before we close out the back panel, please.
Go to the stream. I had a good time. It's nothing more me.
Hey.
And before me and the co-host kick it on out, our special guest today.
Yes.
Talk to the people, sign yourself out, sir.
Just Kit, thank you for having me here, guys.
Of course,
I
of
really
course.
man.
Appreciate you for
Thanks
coming, my
man.
brother.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun. You know, I appreciate the interview, and the games after was pretty good.
I appreciate you,
Really
my
good.
brother.
I really like it.
CJ the DJ.
All right. As I always say, this is an understatement to say that this is just a good show. It's a phenomenal show. It's a lit show. Happy 500, bro. Happy 500 followers. And
We
he's
are
doing it.
technically 503. We started the show with 499, and now we're 503.
I'm tired of you letting people hanging in. That's my brother hanging in the end.
Yes,
Let me
yes,
hang
my
in the
bad,
end.
my bad.
Nope, no,
My
fuck your hands.
My
up
bad.
now.
Come on,
No,
Dabby.
no.
Come on
Fuck
now.
your chicken slap his ass.
Appreciate you. You both the crowd with you. I appreciate everybody that hit the follow button today.
Yes,
And I love
yes.
y'all. Continue saying what you
Yes, as always, it's nothing but a good time at the Game Lounge. You guys make sure you pop in every Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Definitely check out our website, gamelounge.live, to see all of our stuff on our shop and all of the new upcoming episodes. Also, Discord is up and running, so you
Yes.
guys go to the website, tap in with our Discord, be a part of the community.
Make sure
be
you
a part
join
of
the Discord,
family.
guys.
And Kit, appreciate you coming. Don't be a stranger. Pop in here. You in Brooklyn, so you might as well come hang out with us, bro.
Yes, sir. It's always a good
At that
time.
point, kick it over to you.
Yes. So before we move on, remember again, starting this Wednesday,
Right.
Workshop Wednesday's back up and running.
Yes.
From 6 to 8. So if y'all see me streaming at 2 and 3 and 4, that's just GK.
Yeah.
Workshop Wednesday from 6 to 8.
Yeah.
We're going to start building this bad boy right here.
Right.
Okay? Otherwise from that, I want to pay a special thanks to my special guest right here, Just Kit.
Mhm.
It was a pleasure meeting you for the first time. You know, we support each other, and You coming here got me past that 500.
Right,
So I definitely appreciate you. Thank you for coming in. And please,
absolutely, man. Big
please,
shout out to my
from
community.
here,
Thank you for showing up, guys. I really
from
appreciate
everybody
you.
at the Game Lounge and my whole family here. Don't let this be the last time.
Nah,
you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
We got room for you, brother. Just make sure you show up.
Yeah,
you feel
that's
me?
it. We'll be here again.
So
Definitely.
we got more liquor to drink, and we're gonna smoke some more weed.
So someone hit BT Game to drop some bars. So before you leave, why not just give the people some bars?
Okay.
500.
So this is about to be lit. I got my special guest, Just Kitt. So before we split, GK's gonna rip. And I ain't gonna lie, this is how GK's gonna say, hey chat, goodbye. AK. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? It's your boy, Golden Crush 200, aka Mr. 200.
And we out, y'all.
We out.